In a residence, someone calls the young master of the place to come upstairs. Thus, Honger is also summoned to greet the new guest. Before entering, a maid explains that these are Honger's quarters, so she will leave to avoid interrupting the young master's enjoyment. Without delay, the boy enters the room and introduces himself with a smile as Chu Liang. However, on her bed, Honger skips introductions and remarks that the young master is quite interesting. She recalled that the messenger said Liang wanted to see her in her natural state when she woke up so he could enjoy it more. Because of this, Honger initially thought of the boy as someone who liked to intimidate others, but this introduction changed her perspective slightly. Now the girl feels comfortable granting the young master's wish to see her natural beauty. Setting aside her nickname, she decides to reveal her personal name, Yi Nian Hong. In response, the young master reflects and comments in his own way that her name is elegant. As a result, she is pleased that the boy liked it and moves toward Lan. Without delay, she throws herself on the boy, and Liang explains that this is his first time coming to a place like this. Since he is very young, his seniors always forbade him, but still, Liang is already 17 years old. Of course, this is not a problem for Nian Hong, who declares that after tonight, Liang will definitely be an adult. The young master on his part is impressed since it's the first time he has met someone so well endowed. Getting straight to the point, Nian Hong starts flirting and says she will teach the boy a lesson. However, before anything happens, Liang makes it clear that he doesn't have much experience and might mess something up. Naturally, this statement ruins the mood, and Nian Hong feels a bit annoyed at the boy's lack of enthusiasm. So the girl invites Liang to drink and relax because after letting go of these constraints, they can proceed. Liang agrees to the proposal and decides to go all in, and after a few drinks, the young master's personality completely changes. Now he not only refrains from asking for understanding if he makes mistakes, but he also promises to give Miss Hong the best experience she has ever had. In response, the girl questions if the young master is truly certain about this sudden confidence. With that, the protagonist says that even though his skills may not be great, he can make up for it by using accessories. This leaves Nian Hong slightly worried, as she has no experience with such things. Feeling somewhat embarrassed, she wonders if there's something wrong with the room because usually her clients don't think twice before proceeding. In this case, she considers treating it as an opportunity to broaden her horizons. Then she says she can't believe the young master is joking. Because of this, she approaches to look for the accessories, but Liang says he will show her. At that moment, the protagonist reaches into his pants and prepares to pull something out, leaving Nian Hong completely flustered. However, what was hidden inside his garment is just a gold bar. Naturally, the girl finds no sense in using a gold bar as one of the accessories. Because it's such a thick object, Nian Hong becomes irritated and declares that she won't play along anymore. In response, the protagonist asks if she's rejecting the accessory, and she obviously replies that she is. Changing the subject, the boy points outside the window, claiming there's a wild animal approaching. Curious, the girl looks to see what it is, and Liang doesn't hesitate to strike Nian Hong's head with a gold bar. At that moment, green smoke starts rising from her head, and slowly she begins to transform. Angry for being deceived, she decides to remove her mask and stop pretending. Transforming into a giant spider, she declares she will kill the boy who dared to attack her from behind. However, the protagonist insists that it doesn't count as a sneak attack. That's because it's his first time as a demon exorcist. With that, the Spider Girl becomes his greatest opponent so far, and he reminds her that she allowed him to use accessories. Naturally, none of this logic makes sense to the demon girl, who just grows angrier. Then she announces that she will tear the boy apart with her soul annihilation technique. In response, the protagonist remains unfazed but clarifies that he's no nerd. As he reveals his powers, the boy asks if the demon knows about the sword cultivators of Mount Shu. He said someone risked their life to report that there was a monster pretending to be human in this brothel. Because of this, the hero received orders from the sect to kill demons and eliminate all evil in the region. Introducing himself as a disciple of the mountain sect, the hero declares that he will fulfill his mission. Faced with the threat, the demon girl asserts that she will not let the boy escape alive. However, before attacking, she remembers that he mentioned the Shu Mountain sect. Understanding that the Shu sect specializes in demon-killing techniques, she realizes she might be in serious trouble. Therefore, she thinks she must use a move to trap the boy and try to buy some time. Without delay, she launches a massive blue web toward our protagonist. As the web closes in, the girl takes the opportunity to run away as quickly as possible. However, our hero wouldn't let such a fragile web stop him, so he activates his sword art. With just one strike, he releases a beam of light that pierces through the demon woman's chest. Nian Hong had spent hundreds of years cultivating to achieve this form, and it hadn't even been a year since she entered human territory. But as she questions if this would be the end, our hero doesn't stop attacking. Naturally, the fight spittles out of the room, and the entire brothel witnesses the massive destruction. When the demon's body falls to the first floor, many ordinary citizens are injured. The floor collapses, and the crowd is shocked to discover a pile of human bones hidden beneath it. In this situation, one man at the scene quickly realized that this was the brothel's main attraction, and another woman stood up to alert the authorities. Amidst this, a boy commented that his brother was very lucky, as he had been waiting for a chance to meet Nian Hong. Suddenly, Liang's powers begin to flow through him, and he feels a wave of justice that makes him not want to return to this place. From all floors, people were desperate to see what had happened and the body of the defeated monster. But along with the hero's energy, the monster's spirit had not yet dissipated. In fact, her spirit was floating upward, making it seem as though she was still alive. However, to shatter her hope, Niang Hong hears the hero calling her attention. With an intimidating gaze, he stretches out his hand to capture the fleeing demon from the brothel. Naturally, Niang Hong panics and thinks the boy actually intends to absorb her spirit. She considers this highly unethical and tries to plead for mercy, but the hero ignores her and claims his reward. In any case, the boy's first direct battle against a demon of the same realm was rather boring for him. The demon's most powerful ability was her illusionary art, but fortunately, the hero had a golden demon sealing block. Now, with the demonic soul of this spider, all that's left is to cultivate his newfound power. This part involves focusing and meditating, which is definitely the boy's favorite reward. So in his own mind, in his meditation room, the protagonist approaches a spiritual tower called the White Pagoda. Liang always feels a bit excited when he comes here, so he doesn't hesitate to enter. The hero had collected the soul of a demon from the third cultivation realm, and for the first time he doesn't know what he will gain by refining it. Last time, even a small demon's soul that couldn't be molded was refined into a magical weapon like the demon revealing block. This time, the boy hopes to obtain an even better treasure than the last. Therefore, after holding back his excitement for a moment, he presses the refinement button on the power forge. After a few seconds of processing, an item called the Demon Binding Rope is given to Liang. When used against an enemy, it can be reinforced with True Sky. The Demon Binding Rope will automatically place a rigid binding on the opponent. While rendering the enemy incapable of fighting, it destroys their psychological defenses and can even unlock a hidden personality. This, in fact, is a much better treasure than he expected. Thus, with the sealing block and the Demon Binding Rope combined, Liang believes capturing demons will be very easy. However, as a poor man's happiness doesn't last long, something begins to call the hero back to the real world, leaving him no choice but to return. Through a carrier pigeon, a message from the sect arrives for the protagonist. Upon opening the message, the word urgent was highlighted multiple times, and the writer mentioned that the master had an important matter to address. Liang panicked because for his lazy master to write so many words, it must mean something truly significant had happened. As he left the brothel, the hero couldn't avoid the gratitude of the staff, which made him a bit embarrassed. Nonetheless, Liang was relieved they didn't charge him for the damages to the establishment, and soon he arrived at Shu Mountain. After showing his sect token, the hero quickly went to his master and asked about the reason for the summons. However, he quickly realized that it didn't seem to be anything serious. Yet seeing his master's state, Liang thought she should seriously pay more attention to her condition, especially as she was drunk. Our protagonist's name is Chu Liang, and he is a sword cultivator of Shu Mountain returning to the sect. When he arrived, he noticed that the idle clouds and the lake's shadows looked quite different from usual. Reflecting on this, he realized it had already been half a year since he came to this world. 6 months ago, the hero was just another average high school graduate in China. That morning, his mother had asked where the province's top scholar was headed. In response, Chu told her not to tease him and explained that the results of the entrance exams had been released, so he needed to meet some friends. His mother merely told him to be careful on the streets, and the boy said he knew that already. However, as he left, he got distracted wanting to inform her that he wouldn't be back for dinner. At the least expected moment, his mother's advice ironically became the cause of his death. The most terrifying part for him was that his soul had been transferred to a strange, otherworldly place. In this world, demons and ghosts were abundant, and the power of gods and spirits immense. Thanks to the suppression by the many immortal sects of the 9 heavens and 10 earths, they could maintain peace. And all of this happened because of that reckless driver who held a grudge against the boy. For a long time, the hero's soul wandered in the void until it finally found a body. Initially, he was worried about clashing with the consciousness of the body's original owner, but in an instant, his mind fully took over. When he opened his eyes, the original body's thoughts began flooding his mind. Realizing he had experienced soul transference, Liang was confused, wondering if he had somehow killed the rightful owner of the body. However, he felt there was certainly something wrong with this whole situation. First, the alley next to his house wasn't big enough to accommodate a truck, and second, nothing made sense. It seemed as if he had traveled through space and time in a cosmic leap, leaving Liang increasingly nervous about the possibilities. Back in reality, the hero began feeling a strange pain throughout his body, especially in his head. Inevitably, the memories of the body's original owner surfaced, showing that his entire family had been killed by demons when he was young. One of these demons, after killing the boy's father, found where the child was hiding. Upon finding him, the demon grinned and moved to devour the boy. That day, the little boy was crying in terror, and the monster could barely contain its excitement at the sight of such a small piece of flesh. Just thinking about it, the monster was already drooling. It believed devouring the boy would be even more delicious. However, at the exact moment when the hero was about to be eaten, he was saved by his master, who who arrived just in time. Her first words to the boy were to reassure him not to be afraid, and the original owner of the body began crying with relief. The woman, who would later become his master, insisted that the child was safe now, but the little boy wouldn't stop crying. In any case, the warrior realized the boy had cultivation potential when she touched him, and so she invited Liang to follow her. Having no other choice but to seek revenge on those damned monsters, the little boy agreed. From that moment, the original owner of the body began his cultivation journey with all his might. The original owner was very dedicated to cultivation from a young age because he inevitably realized his master wouldn't be much help. While the master told the boy not to overexert himself, he insisted on practicing and staying focused. This was because the boy was determined to face monsters as soon as possible, and his training truly showed results. However, being so young, the realm transitions made his heart unstable, and at a certain point, Liang experienced a crisis. As a result, his advancement failed and the boy's soul dissipated, making way for the new host. Fortunately for the hero, he realized at least he wasn't the cause of the original owner's death. Nevertheless, after a sigh of relief, the protagonist panicked as he realized this was a world filled with demons and monsters. Especially after seeing the memories of the original body, the reality hit our hero even harder. But having grown up in China, he quickly understood that fear comes from a lack of firepower. So to gain more firepower, the idea was clear: to become as strong as possible. Liang, someone with aptitude for cultivation, landed in one of the best immortal recipes, which was already a good start. Even better than that was the immense white tower the hero found within his soul. This wasn't something present in the memories of the body's original owner, making it seem like it belonged to the boy himself. The first time the hero saw the white tower, his mind was flooded with knowledge and the rewards it offered for killing demons. Initially, the protagonist didn't dare to hunt large demons and only sought out lantern ghosts. Lantern ghosts are a type of malevolent spirit born of resentment, but their main function is to float and collide with people at night. When they strike, the lantern ghost disappears and the person hit becomes at least mildly ill. Thus, compared to cultivators, these aren't very threatening enemies. In fact, they're so weak it's almost adorable to watch them try to defend themselves. However, refining a lantern ghost yields a K-rib pill, which aids in cultivation. Once the hero accidentally encountered a stone spirit doing something wrong, and after breaking many swords, he managed to defeat it. After refining it, the white tower gave the boy his first surprise. This was the demon sealing block, which immediately reveals the identity of any disguised demon. Treasures and divine abilities are incredibly precious in the cultivation world, as are pills. For this reason, unlike others, our hero has a significant advantage as he only needs to defeat demons to obtain rare items. Thus, the boy entered a logical loop of killing demons out of fear of them, and naturally, all of his panic disappeared. Ironically, after the soul transfer, the protagonist unintentionally fulfilled some of the original body's wishes. Now, returning to the present, the protagonist arrives at the sect after flying through the entire night. From high above the clouds, he observes the silver sword peak of the Shu Mountain sect. Inside, the vastness looks as it always does. As he walks through, the hero remembers his master's rare 23-word letter summoning him urgently. Given his master's lazy nature, he assumes the matter must be very serious. So to respect the gravity of the meeting, Liang decides to tidy himself up a bit before entering. After making himself look slightly better, he steps into his master's chamber and introduces himself. However, all he finds is the same drunk woman lying on the couch, complaining about the noise. The woman in question is named Ding Feng, and despite summoning her disciple, she doesn't seem too pleased that he arrived in the middle of the night. In response, our hero reminds her of the paper origami message that demanded his immediate presence. After thinking for a moment, the master remembers and explains that the day before, the sect leader summoned the Peak Masters for a meeting. He announced preparations for the Chu Mountain Summit, held once every 10 years. However, there's a catch. In this tournament, the disciples from various peaks also compete for the position of chief disciple. Because of this, Ding Feng mentioned she couldn't stand the arrogance of Wang Xueling. She informed Liang that Wang had claimed the chief disciple position would belong to his Jade Sword peak. This infuriated Ding Feng because that old man genuinely believed that out of the 36 peaks, only his was superior. Naturally, the master wasn't going to let that slide, and after some heated debate, the two made a bet. If the disciple from Jade Sword Peak wins the chief disciple position, she will give him the Spirit Phoenix Blood Jade. But if her disciple from Silver Sword Peak wins the chief disciple position, Wang Xueling will have to give up his position as head to her. In any case, the master was looking for the boy, and with that explanation, she asked which disciples they should choose to compete. At this point, our hero pointed out that Silver Sword Peak only has him as a disciple, and that was exactly what the master wanted to hear from the boy's mouth. To compel him to participate, Ding Feng clapped her hands, praising the hero's initiative, but Liang was far from confident. Faced with the situation, the protagonist pondered for a moment, trying to find a way out of this predicament. He explained that there were many renowned individuals in the Golden Core realm who were more likely to become chief disciples. As for him, He had only reached the divine intention realm a few days ago. That being said, the boy had no idea what his master was thinking, considering the chief disciple position represented the face of Shu Mountain's generation. The intensity of the competition was beyond words. Regarding the peak leader position, it is held by the most prestigious and powerful individual among the 36 peaks. If the 4 elders of the major mountain cities cannot become sect leader, the peak leader becomes the primary candidate. In this context, the master suddenly wanted him, a weak and solitary disciple, to compete for such an important position. Empress Feng was known for being a skilled fighter, but also for having a volatile temper, which is why she was never allowed to take disciples. Eventually, she descended the mountain to rescue an apprentice herself, likely finding the task too tedious to take on another. In any case, Ding Feng reassured her apprentice not to stress too much since he still had 6 months to prepare. She added that if he secured the chief disciple position, she, as his master, would not treat him unfairly. She promised that if she became the peak leader, there would be nothing she couldn't give him. While the master spoke about his desires, the boy couldn't stop staring at her chest. This behavior, however, was perceived as disrespect toward her orders and her as a person. The protagonist quickly explained himself, saying it was all a misunderstanding. Since the Spirit Phoenix Blood Jade was already part of the bet, the protagonist stated he had no choice but to accept. He declared he would prepare but asked his master not to blame him or hold a grudge if he failed. Realizing Liang was actually looking at the jade, she affirmed it wasn't a problem. Regardless, she asked her apprentice to handle the matter, as the resources they would gain if they succeeded would be substantial. At that moment, she proposed splitting the benefits at a ratio of 70 to 30. Obviously, our hero wasn't thrilled with the unfairness, but he knew better than to complain. The protagonist left his master's chamber somewhat disturbed. Even several steps away from her residence, Feng's laughter could still be heard. In any case, the hero wondered if it was possible to improve his strength enough to compete with top-tier golden core cultivators in just 6 months. Unlike others, he had the White Tower as a resource, so the boy believed it was worth trying. For now, though, he headed to the Sword Exchange Pavilion to submit the demon-slaying mission he completed yesterday. It was explained that within the sect, disciples obtained resources through mission assignments at the Exchange Pavilion. Before long, our hero approached the site along with many other disciples. Beneath the Supreme Palace were numerous important sect entrances, the busiest places for those coming and going. The Sword Exchange Pavilion was located at one of these entrances. The name Sword Exchange Pavilion came from the sword coins used internally in Shushan. In the cultivation world, the value of rare items couldn't be measured in gold coins, so the most valuable spiritual stones became currency. Within the sect, this currency was also minted as spiritual stones and was initially called Mantu coins before being replaced by butterfly coins. Today, they had been optimized into simple sword coins, containing a unique sword aura within them. After receiving the reward, the second floor was where disciples sought new missions and interacted with elders and executives. To avoid drawing the attention of his troublesome master, our hero always tries to be quite charismatic with the executives. After being praised for the speed with which he completed the mission, Liang gave credit to the elder for the instructions provided. However, the elder had no intention of letting the hero leave before they played a board game. In response, our hero said he won last time purely by luck, understanding that it had left the elder dissatisfied. Regardless, the executive informed him that he had been thinking for a long time and found a way to break Liang's strategy, calling him my boy. Before the game began, they agreed that if Liang won again, he would receive some insider information. Half an hour later, however, events unfolded just like last time, and Master Shen couldn't believe his bad luck as he lost again. Despite this, the elder wasn't upset and accepted the defeat without any issues. However, he remarked that although the protagonist appeared innocent, his personality changed entirely during the game. Shen admitted that he could no longer compare himself to young people, and our hero humbly reiterated that his win was pure luck. Nonetheless, complimenting this elder further, Liang knew the real reason he had come was to request a new mission. The protagonist explained that there were many missions related to the spiritual realm and that he wanted guidance on which one to choose. Given that Liang had a preference for demon-slaying missions, Shen pointed to a particular mission on the 3rd floor on the shelves. Using his magical power, Shen brought it to the table for the boy to review. Upon examining the request, Liang saw that it was an exorcism in Zhu City at the residence of Manhwa. The 3 realms are the divine realm, followed by the earthly realm, and lastly, the human realm. In the human realm, cultivation focuses on self-improvement, including body refinement and ki condensation through spiritual cultivation. In the earthly realm, cultivation shifts to external goals, such as golden elixirs and the 5 elements alongside the psychic aspects of the Tao. In the divine realm, cultivation centers entirely on the Tao, cultivating celestial essence to attain profound understanding. It is said there are 3 main teachings: Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, though other martial arts, demons, and sects also exist. The Shu Mountain sect, on the other hand, requires work in exchange for resources, and while this seems challenging, it is designed to train disciples. Disciples who do not reach the spiritual intent realm are not permitted to take missions outside the mountain and can only complete minor tasks. For those above this level, they are considered skilled when traveling the martial world but unremarkable within the sect. The cases disciples most enjoy involving demon slaying are those tied to wealthy families and mysterious incidents. This is because demons are rare in cities and villages, and such missions often come with added perks of visiting large cities. Wealthy families are generous, making it evident that Shen had helped the protagonist choose this mission wisely. Upon arriving at the location, the family patriarch greeted the protagonist and Liang humbly stated he was always at the service of the people. As the man led the hero to the appropriate spot, the boy conversed with the family. Inside the residence, one of the patriarch's daughters served tea to Liang, who expressed his gratitude. Changing the subject, the patriarch commented that with a young hero like him in the Shu Mountain sect, they would surely be fine. In response, the protagonist reassured Ming that there was no need to worry about the matter. The boy suggested they begin by discussing the specific situation. Ming explained that for generations, the Ming family had been known for their good deeds, so he didn't understand the reason for these strange events. 3 days ago, there were eerie and frightening cat screams outside the mansion. 2 days ago, those cat screams were heard in the family garden as well. A household servant witnessed the demonic creature with an overwhelming aura of bloodthirst. Yesterday, the cat screams reached the courtyard, leaving everyone in despair. Given these developments, Ming said that if they didn't stop the monster, it was likely it would enter the residence today and kill someone. Liang, on the other hand, thought the patriarch acted swiftly, as by the second day he had already gone to the temple seeking help. It is noted that prosperous temples and monasteries often have strong connections with powerful sects. This Taoist temple outside Xingju City has ties with Shu Mountain, which expedited the request to the exchange pavilion. Combining this information with what Mr. Ming explained about the situation, this creature, which only appears at night and moves gradually, doesn't seem like a demon. However, it could very well be a ghost, and if this creature reaches a certain level of cultivation, its intelligence could rival that of humans. Only ghosts with low cultivation, having experienced death and lacking spiritual wisdom, would be driven by resentment. It's likely that this monstrous cat is such a case, potentially the spirit of a dead cat. With this in mind, our hero asks if, in the past few days, anyone in the household killed a cat. In response, Ming asserts no, explaining that his family has great love for animals and has always cared for strays. In that case, the protagonist requests permission to investigate the mansion before preparing a proper exorcism. Naturally, the patriarch expresses his gratitude, to which Liang replies that he's only doing the bare minimum. After their conversation, our hero spends the entire afternoon examining the Ming mansion's surroundings. Later, at the mansion, the patriarch thanks the boy for his work, and Liang appreciates the man's kindness. At that moment, a girl rushes into the residence, apologizing for her abruptness. She informs Ming that his wife isn't feeling well and asks him not to blame young Master Chu. The patriarch quickly excuses himself and announces he will check on his wife first. He hurries off with the girl who brought the news, leaving the hero impressed by Ming's bond with his wife. One of the girls nearby explains that her master and the matriarch have been married for 10 years and are deeply in love. Another remarks that it's a pity Ming cannot have children, noting that even with concubines offering themselves, he never accepted. The two tearfully agree that only a woman as beautiful and kind-hearted as the master's wife deserves such profound love. Moments later, Ming returns and apologizes for keeping the protagonist waiting, who inquires about his wife's condition. The patriarch explains that his wife is merely suffering disturbances caused by malevolent spirits. In response, our hero vows to do his best to eliminate the monster. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blows open the banquet hall's door, startling everyone. Seeing this, Ming warns that it is a sign of the monster's return. Quickly, our hero moves outside the dining hall and begins using his powers. He senses a strong yin energy, indicating the presence of a ghostly creature, but is also mixed with a potent demonic aura. Liang turns to warn that something strange is at play and that citizens should hide, but no one is left in sight. Everyone had already taken cover, much to Liang's relief. Given how fast they ran, the hero believes they will remain safe, even if the entire city is invaded. Returning to the main issue, the protagonist begins channeling some of his energy through his bracelet. At the same moment, he forms a magical sword and points it toward the malevolent spirit perched on the roof. Upon closer inspection, the boy notices something peculiar about the creature. Not only does it resemble the spirit of a child, but it also seems demonic and formed from the death of a beast. Each of these types already holds significant presence among ghosts individually. Yet standing before our hero is clearly a spirit fused with 3 layers of resentment and numerous enhancements. The malevolent spirit was causing a tremendous racket but became startled upon noticing our hero and attempted to flee. However, Liang wasn't about to let that cat escape so easily, so he summoned his light sword. Quickly, the hero hurled the sword at the cat's spirit, but the demon narrowly dodged the attack. In retaliation, the cat leaped to strike Liang with its sharp claws. Incredibly, the cat managed to scratch the protagonist successfully. But the hero remained unfazed and continued controlling his aura sword from a distance. At the moment, the spirit was entirely distracted. The attack struck with precision. Finally, the cat was slashed across its belly, beginning to bleed profusely in pain. With the attack, the spirit grew even more hostile toward our hero's presence, and Liang quickly realized that this wasn't good. This was because the buff from the malevolent spirit triggered its childlike traits, making it stronger the more damage it sustained. Now, considering that the sword attack wasn't enough to kill the cat, it was likely much more powerful than before. Ultimately, the spirit's greatest strength was its immense speed. To counter this, our hero pulled his secret weapon from his spatial rift, one that would prove to be of great help. Resembling a whip, the weapon began to coil around itself until it tied the cat's spirit with numerous knots. In the end, the best way to handle agile enemies was through control, and with great effort, Liang managed to win. Fortunately, he had the spirit-binding rope obtained from the White Tower, but it wasn't a magical tool that guaranteed success. In truth, it was a tool designed specifically for close range, but since it didn't ensure accuracy, a counterattack from the spirit could have ended the fight. Moreover, if Liang didn't remain calm and focused, the cat could break free from the bindings. Nonetheless, the hero believed that defeating this spirit would boost his confidence for future battles. Because of this, he decided to release the cat and face it one-on-one again. Though it seemed like a reckless choice, Liang was now far more focused, and as soon as he detected an attack from the spirit, he countered immediately. With that, the battle came to an end, but the hero compared it to his first mission against the spider demon. Reflecting on it, he realized that dealing with this buffed cat spirit was much more challenging. However, the protagonist didn't have a second to reflect, as all the mansion's residents appeared to celebrate him. This startled Liang, impressed by the family's efficiency in vanishing and reappearing so suddenly. The next morning, a girl informed Liang that the master had sent her to invite him to the celebratory banquet. Since the young hero had spent the night at the mansion, she offered to assist him in changing clothes. However, our protagonist declined without hesitation, saying he could take care of himself, leaving the servant to reluctantly excuse herself. After she left, the hero began to ponder something he needed to confirm before attending the banquet. This matter, of course, concerned Lady Ming, who had yet to appear. Because of this, the protagonist knocked on the lady's door and she asked who was there. In response, the hero introduced himself as Chu Lian, stating that he came to check on Lady Ming's health. Hearing this, the lady was pleased that the Shu Mountain hero was there, but she wasn't ready to receive visitors. This made the hero wonder why her attitude was so different from the patriarchs and question why she was avoiding him. Regardless, he mentioned he had heard of her illness, and using Shu Mountain's secret techniques, he might be able to help. Additionally, Liang stated he could wait as long as needed and visit her when she was ready. Apologizing for making the family's savior wait, the lady quickly went to the door and opened it to receive Chu Liang. She then invited the boy inside, stating that she would trust him from that moment onward. Once the protagonist entered her quarters, the lady adjusted the lighting. Without delay, she prepared tea for her guests, explaining that she was just a bit surprised. The lady mentioned that after the hero dealt with a monster the previous night, she already felt much better. Hearing this, the protagonist remarked that he wished to discuss something about the cat spirit from last night. This surprised the lady, but Liang reassured her that it was merely speculation. Considering how unusual the spirit was, it had left the boy deep in thought. Thus, the protagonist questioned why the malevolent spirit had come to the family's residence. The lady, feeling slightly pressured, replied that the ghost was simply doing what ghosts do, tormenting people. However, the hero pointed out that if it were a vengeful spirit, its first target would have been someone seeking revenge against. And if it were a child's spirit, its first action would have been to seek out its mother. Yet the cat ghost had spent 3 entire days at the residence without harming anyone. Liang concluded that it seemed as though the spirit had been searching for something, which greatly irritated the lady. With that, the hero explained that he had also been thinking about this, as the patriarch had made it clear that the Ming family was known for their kindness. The patriarch had also stated they had never harmed animals, so the protagonist suggested that the spirit was indeed searching for its mother. Furthermore, because it was a demonic spirit, its mother must also be a demon, and ever since the cat appeared, Lady Ming had been hiding. Liang made his point clear, but Lady Ming simply laughed. She tried to mock the crazy idea that she might be an infiltrating demon. However, the protagonist remained unfazed and said the truth would come out sooner or later. At this, the lady could no longer endure the accusations and stood up angrily. It said that when a demon reveals its true form, it voluntarily emits demonic energy. Still, the hero asked the lady to sit so they could talk calmly. Meanwhile, she kept thinking it was impossible for the cultivator before her to have a demon revealing tool. After analyzing all his traits, she thought he wasn't much of a threat, though she knew Shu Mountain possessed such items. Still, she doubted the sect would allow a junior disciple to carry something so valuable. The lady asked if the hero had a mirror that reveals demons, and Liang straightforwardly replied that he did not. However, he mentioned having something quite similar, and for a moment, they stared at each other in silence. Just as the hero was about to use his secret distraction technique, unexpectedly, the lady did the same. This left both a bit embarrassed and unsure of how to proceed. Regardless, the lady declared she wouldn't waste any more time with him and revealed that the candle lit earlier was incense laced with poison. She said that if the protagonist wanted the antidote, he would need to leave the Ming residence without causing trouble. In response, Liang explained that before even entering, he had prepared for attacks by suppressing his breathing and internal energy. Thus, he said the illusionary poison had no effect on him. Lady Ming was quite impressed with the caution the boy had exercised so far. In this case, she confessed that she had never harmed anyone and only wanted to live peacefully with her husband. However, the hero explained that it wouldn't be appropriate for a Shu Mountain apprentice to turn a blind eye after discovering an infiltrating demon. With no other choice, the lady attacked with a serpent's power, complaining about Liang pressuring her so much. Still, our hero easily defended himself with his sword, but the serpent's energy coiled around the blade. As they clashed to determine who would prevail, the lady once again asked if the hero could just let this go. Receiving no answer, she launched another attack, this time with her sharp claws. Liang stood still, waiting for the attack, and dodged at the last second as she tried to slash him. He then retrieved his sealing whip from a compartment. With a swift motion, he launched the whip at the infiltrating demon from behind. She narrowly avoided it, but something about the whip seemed strange to her. She quickly realized that the cord following her wasn't ordinary, but it was too late to react. The whip had already begun coiling around her body. Within seconds, the lady was completely restrained by the cords, just as the cat spirit had been. Captured, she began crying and asked what the boy intended to do next. However, Liang refused to answer, standing imposingly with the whip in hand. Seeing this, the lady pleaded with Liang to kill her quickly and without suffering. But our hero grew distressed as he had no intention of harming her. In this case, the lady grew flustered, suspecting there might be another reason for him binding her this way. At that moment, Mr. Ming entered, having heard strange noises from the room and wanting to check on his wife. Upon entering, he was met with an awkward scene. His wife tied up by the hero. Initially confused, he struggled to understand how the situation had come to this. But soon, the patriarch realized he had walked in at an inappropriate time. Liang immediately denied any wrongdoing, explaining it was all a misunderstanding, and despite his embarrassment, asked Mr. Ming to stay. Again, the patriarch begins to wallow in sadness over what he has just witnessed, but he says that if his wife is happy, he will be too. However, the protagonist reaffirms that the gentleman arrived at just the right moment. In this case, the patriarch thinks that the young hero wants the two of them as his secret lovers. Faced with this, the protagonist can no longer endure the misunderstanding and shouts for everyone to calm down. Without delay, he states that he truly has no bad intentions, which is why the boy hands the rope to Mr. Ming. In response, even without understanding what happened, the patriarch asks the protagonist to free his wife from the restraints. However, Liang asks the gentleman to listen to him first because what he is about to say is nothing but the truth. Thus, the boy explains that the restrictions on the young lady's body cannot be removed at this time. This is because she is, in fact, a demon in disguise. Initially, the patriarch trembles at this information, but he believes it is impossible and that the accusations are unfounded. Thus, Liang states that if the girl's husband does not believe him, he has a way to prove it once and for all. However, the young lady obviously does not want her identity to be revealed in this way. So she decides to confess herself, but says she has always been afraid to speak the truth. In front of her husband, the girl begins to transform into her original demonic form to demonstrate what she is saying. But unexpectedly, the patriarch does not condemn her. Instead, he embraces her, saying that he does not care. Because of this, Mrs. Ming affirms that not all demons are as evil as the rumors claim. To explain, she shares that she lived in the mountains outside the city with her parents and older brother since she was young. And even as a demon, she never harmed a single human life, living that way for 100 years until one day she met her husband. Naturally, she believes that Mr. Ming would not remember such an ordinary event as saving a cat in the mountains 20 years ago. However, the patriarch clearly remembers that day as if it were yesterday. At that time, the girl was not yet well developed in her cultivation and encountered some ferocious wolves. She fought for her life and barely escaped because while fleeing, she was caught in a hunter's trap. But at the moment, she thought she would never see her parents and older brother again. A small boy passed by and helped the young lady with all the compassion in the world. Faced with this, the patriarch says he remembers and originally intended to take the kitten home, but once healed, she ran away. From then on, Miss Ming began cultivating tirelessly until she learned the shape-shifting technique to become human. However, the girl did not even have the courage to tell her older brother, so she secretly left the mountain to enjoy the city. She never expected to meet her savior again so quickly. At that moment, the young lady recognized the face of that boy who had now grown significantly, though he still looked the same. The patriarch, in turn, commented that he thought that had been their first meeting and never imagined it was their second. Later, all of it felt like a dream for the couple, and the patriarch fell in love with the girl. In the end, the two got married, and Liang could not contain her happiness about living as a human until one day she became pregnant. This statement, of course, left the patriarch completely stunned because he thought the young lady was sterile. Then his wife explained that she could conceive but did not dare because she would transform during childbirth. Thus, carrying a demon fetus, she lied to her husband, saying she was returning to her parents' home. But in reality, she secretly went to the mountains and underwent an abortion with much sorrow. This revelation left Mr. Ming utterly shaken, and he questioned, while crying, why she had not told him sooner. This is because because through so many years of love, he could never throw everything away simply because his wife was a demon. In this case, the girl says she is already happy to have had so many years with her husband, but she believes she can no longer continue running from her fate in this way. Thus, she goes to the hero and tells the boy that if he wants to torture or kill her, he should do it now. However, Mr. Ming shouts for the young lady not to do it and says that if any punishment is to be given, he should be the one to receive it. With that, he steps in front of his wife, preventing the protagonist and begging for mercy. In this case, the hero thinks that it is highly condemned in human society for humans to live with demons, and killing the two will be justified. Moreover, killing demons benefits him due to the White Tower, but if he decides to forgive them, he might receive the wealth of the Ming family. It is said that even for an ordinary rich person, the accumulated fortune of variations is not easy to obtain. For this reason, from a general rational perspective, either choice will be a profitable option. But judging by the expression the hero displays, the couple believes they are about to meet their end very soon. Then the protagonist reaffirms that they are misunderstanding the situation, as he is no devout monk of the dragon cult. Initially, the couple does not understand what the young hero is trying to say. But to prove his point, Liang quickly unties the ropes from the young lady's body. He explains that using the rope was his last resort because he could no longer endure the poison. Next, the boy says that if the young lady truly never harmed anyone, they can both accompany him to the mountain gate. However, he warns that he is not doing this to cause harm, but rather to resolve matters. This is because if the young lady does nothing, she will only see her husband lose everything he has. But if she decides to return with the hero to Shu Mountain, he will ensure she obtains a title. This statement is enough to completely change the girl's demeanor, leaving her very excited. Faced with this, she asks if what the young hero is saying is really true, and Mr. Ming begins to think he is losing his wife to the protagonist. Logically, the girl does not understand her husband's behavior or what he is thinking, but this sense that he misunderstood something makes her very irritated. In any case, she warns that a title is a very serious matter for creatures like her and something her husband will not understand. The request to obtain a title is different from the stories circulating in the mortal world about monsters and spirits seeking titles. Granting a title to a monster does not mean following the ancient practice of legitimizing a monster's status. Rather, it means officially recognizing a monster as capable of coexisting with humans. This is similar to receiving citizenship, but there are ways to identify imposters. A monster without official recognition is like an irregular resident, and when caught, they can face severe consequences. It is said that once a wild monster was discovered infiltrating a human cultivator city and was executed on the spot. For this reason, the young lady has been so careful until now, fearing being discovered as a monster. The power to grant titles is only given to human kingdoms and the 9 celestial sects. However, a certificate from the 9 sects is far out of reach, and common monsters have no chance of obtaining one. Compared to the 9 celestial sects, the level below them is the 10 earthly sects, but they do not have the power to grant titles. The current human dynasty is called the Yu Dynasty, and for over 600 years, the country has been in a period of peace and prosperity. However, each monster living within human cities can represent a hidden threat. Whether in the imperial court or the 9 celestial sects, granting a title is equivalent to endorsing the monster. And if that monster causes chaos in the future, those who granted the title will bear the responsibility. But even the disciples of sects capable of granting citizenship rarely bother with such matters. This is because upon encountering these monsters, regardless of their nature, it is easier to exterminate them. However, fortunately, the man who exposed the young lady's identity is the young hero Chu Liang. Thus, she kneels and expresses her gratitude, saying that to her, this favor is akin to a rebirth. And faced with such great kindness, the girl says she does not know how to repay it. Therefore, she can only express her gratitude along with her husband, but Liang does not think it necessary to go so far and feels embarrassed. Mr. Ming, on the other hand, states that he will repay the favor by offering all the family's assets. But the hero refuses because he knows the man has a large family to support. The young lady then offers Liang her 2 maids as bed attendants for dual cultivation. However, the hero once again declines, as he is still too young and innocent to engage in such practices. After dealing with the matters at the Ming household, the protagonist returned to the sect with the young lady and her husband to grant her the title. However, disciples like the boy do not have the authority to do so and need their master's approval. Fortunately, the hero's master is a very just person, and with her support, the celestial peak is compelled to accept. Thus, after undergoing a series of processes like divination and introspection, it was confirmed that the young lady was a benevolent monster. After completing the process, she finally received her title and was able to return home with her husband. From now on, she will regularly visit Shu Mountain to receive guidance and advice on other matters. Meanwhile, the hero locked himself in a small room, immersing himself in cultivation. This room, of course, is located within the White Tower, where the protagonist prepares to receive his new reward. Every time Liang goes on a demon-killing mission, he grows stronger, so he can barely wait to refine the cat spirit. At the moment the hero touches the activation sensor for the reward, a golden light begins to emanate. From this light, the boy receives a talisman of the demon cat spirit. It is said that by using this talisman, the bearer gains the powers of a cat, increasing speed and other attributes for 20 minutes. However, there may be side effects such as uncontrollably licking the palm of one's hand. Because of this, the protagonist thinks that of all the rewards he has received, this is the most useless. In any case, he considers that even though it is a disappointing tool, it might still possess considerable power, and if he uses the talisman in a critical moment, it could prove to be very helpful. Changing the subject, the boy notices that something is happening outside again. Therefore, he returns to the real world, encountering a massive messenger gazelle on his back. Knowing that this is an official messenger from the immortal sects, the protagonist becomes very excited. Within the mortal sect of the New Heavens, there once existed a group called the Celestial Pivot Pavilion. This pavilion specializes in divination and future predictions, being the closest to the celestial secrets of the world. Although they are not skilled in combat, they are respected by great powers, and being part of the New Heavens is the best proof of this. The secondary role of the Celestial Pivot Pavilion is to collect strange stories from the mortal world and distribute them to the Seven Stars Mansion Gazette monthly. For hundreds of years, the Seven Stars Mansion Gazette has become popular worldwide. From the highest heavens to the lowliest streets, even children in the marketplace eagerly discuss it. In this way, the importance of the message arriving for our hero becomes clear, and he expresses his gratitude. Without delay, the protagonist begins to see the major events that occurred in the cultivation world this month. First, he decides to check if there were any changes in the rankings of the 10,000 Human Treasures Register. The 10,000 Treasures Register is a main ranking list that records all the treasures of the world. However, most changes occur among lower-level treasures, as the high-value ones typically remain at the top. The treasure in the first position is called the Demon Ceiling Tower, but, unfortunately, it is now lost under Shu Mountain's custody. This is sad because, at its peak, the Shu Mountain sect managed to rank the highest position among the 9 heavens. In the end, everything depends on the existence of the Demon Ceiling Tower to function. However, 50 years ago, due to a major incident, Shu Mountain lost its supreme resource. This led to the sect's decline later, and to this day, several sects that were once weaker have surpassed Shu Mountain in terms of strength. At this moment, voices questioning whether the sect deserves its place among the 9 heavens are growing louder. But the hero understands that now is not the time to dwell on this, it is time to keep moving forward. In the second position on the 10,000 Treasures Register is the 7-star sword, held by the Celestial Pivot Pavilion. Liang, for his part, knows that the first artifact is just a name, but the Pivot Pavilion's artifact produces incredible effects. Meanwhile, the Celestial Point Pavilion remains detached from worldly conflicts and does not participate in martial disputes. For this reason, the 7-star sword has not been used for many years. The last recorded use of it was 100 years ago when the demon Gui Shufi of the Ghost Beast sect was awakened. They attempted to launch a surprise attack on the Celestial Point Pavilion, forcing the master to face hundreds of challenges. However, the moment the 7-star sword was unsheathed, it completely subdued the demon. The energy released by the sword alone was enough to wipe out 300 demonic cultivators from the land. With her swordsmanship, the master of the Celestial Point Pavilion cut down all the beasts, eliminating Gaishu's entire direct lineage. Because of this, Liang thinks the power of this divine sword is terrifying, but rumors suggest that every time it is drawn, a price is paid. In this case, the hero believes there must be some hidden secrets that outsiders are unaware of. Moving on to the next on the list, in the third position of the Celestial Treasures is the Bagua Celestial Mirror. It belongs to the mystic hidden Immortal Mountain, one of the 9 heavens, and is said to have descended directly from the deities. There is a rumor that the Bagua Mirror is ranked below the 7-star sword only because the list was made by the Pivot Pavilion. But upon reading all this, Liang understands that these treasures are far beyond his current reach. Thus, he starts looking for something he might be able to acquire, and suddenly, the boy notices a rather familiar treasure. After analyzing it for a bit, he begins to recognize a rather ordinary glow from the artifact. Soon he realizes it is the blood jade of the Phoenix Spirit, which belongs to his master. For this reason, the hero understands why it seems so familiar. He had never seen the full appearance of the jade. But upon realizing he sees such a powerful treasure every day, the hero begins to question the idea of artifacts being far removed from his reality. Regardless, at the moment, the treasure register still cannot provide useful information for the boy. Therefore, he decides to look at the content of the next section, and it seems many important events have occurred. It is said that the chief disciple of the mystic hidden Immortal Mountain has just emerged from seclusion. During the Battle of Mount Furnace, they fought against the Dark King sect and killed the Silver King, leaving only the Purple Marquis. The Dark King sect had grown strong in recent years, but with the death of one of its leaders, their advance has stabilized. With this, the protagonist becomes curious about how the master of the Dark sect will respond. Moving on to the next news, in Sanju Valley, an earthly sect, a disciple named Lu Yo has drawn attention for her relentless nature. It is said that within just 1 month, she eradicated 3 organizations of witchcraft and malice. The valley itself relied on these organizations, but with Liu Yo being so combative against evil, Liang wonders if it will remain silent. Changing the subject, there's one last piece of news about Shushan in the Nine Provinces Chronicles. The master Wang Zhuanling of the Shushan sect managed to single-handedly kill a sea dragon in the Eastern Sea that had been causing trouble. But the protagonist quickly realizes that this cultivator belongs to the Jade Sword Peak. This happens to be the place his master despises the most, making the hero quite anxious. Suddenly, an explosion makes a loud noise in the boy's room. This explosion was caused by the protagonist's master, who was leaving again for a few more days. Of course, Liang was not worried about her well-being, but rather about the trouble she might cause with her enemies. Regardless, time is running out, so Liang believes he should hurry to submit the mission he completed. As he approaches, the hero decides to look at the Seven Stars Mansion Gazette, where the best gossip is found. In the Gazette, it is reported that Emperor Yu visited the Ascending Dragon Academy to find a husband for his daughter Jing Yang. However, Zhang Chen refused the proposal, giving the flimsy excuse that personal matters might interfere with his studies. The Ascending Dragon Academy is the best Confucian academy and is supported by the imperial court, ranking among the top in the 10 kingdoms. As the chief disciple, Zhang Chen has a bright future, whether as a cultivator or serving the court, but with this refusal, everything becomes unpredictable. In addition to the Emperor, the Lord of Thunder Fortress is also looking for a marriage partner for his daughter. He is willing to offer 10 precious treasures as a dowry for his daughter Huangling's husband, but no one from the 9 provinces has accepted. The reason is that Huangling warned that anyone who marries her must have a higher cultivation level or risk being killed by her mammoth. Thus, the hero believes that the young lady has quite a strong personality. In the next news, unexpectedly, the gossip column also includes something about Shu Mountain. This month, there is a figure known as Fairy Jiang, or by her personal name, Jiang Yubai, in the region. It is said that she was seen dining with Feng Chao Yang from the Tian Wang sect at the Drunken Moon Tower. There seems to be a serious and suspicious relationship between the two, as nothing has been confirmed so far. Besides our hero, other people are reading the same news, and the frustration over their relationship is evident. Suddenly, many people start arguing, with some believing the boy is unworthy and others thinking he is. In any case, the hero is not going to involve himself in this, especially since he now needs to head to the exchange pavilion. At the moment, Liang has no more than 20 sword coins, which is not enough to sustain himself. With the money he has, the Danding Hall is the only place where the protagonist can afford to spend. But unfortunately, after spending all the hard-earned money, the boy manages to acquire only 4 pills. In any case, Liang does not let this discourage him, as he knows it will be enough to break through the mid-stage of the Divine Mind realm. Compared to other disciples, he can save his coins and exchange them only for pills, which is advantageous. During missions, the hero only needs to worry about killing demons and heading to the White Tower. At the Sword Exchange Pavilion, this time Liang decides to take on a mission alone. But after some time, he realizes he has encountered another minor issue. This is because in the secret missions of the Divine Mind realm, the options are virtually endless. At this moment, someone shouts that they need one more member for a mission to gather the human-faced Jade Essence Flower. This came at just the right time, as they needed a companion in the Divine Mind realm. With such a good lineup and a generous reward, it naturally caught attention. This made Liang curious about what this human-faced Jade Essence Flower was. Moreover, what intrigued the boy most was the idea of facing countless ferocious beasts in the jungle. Obviously, the more people required for a mission, the greater the challenge, and the greater the challenge, the more monsters will be present. This means that it is an excellent mission for acquiring resources to exchange at the White Tower. Thus, the protagonist decides to join the group for the mission and humbly asks to join. With this, the cultivators form a good first impression of our hero. The one advertising the vacancy welcomes the hero and praises the boy, saying he seems to be an expert. Liang, for his part, does not understand all this hospitality, but now it is time to officially sign up for the mission. Without delay, the leader introduces himself as Linbei and asks them to discuss things while walking. In response, our hero also introduces himself, followed by introductions to all the other members. Faced with this, Senior Fang Ting says there is no need to be so formal and suggests Liang call him older brother. The person next to him is junior sister Xu Ziqian, and the disciple at the back is named Lu Ren. Although they belong to different peaks, they are all Shu Mountain disciples, so Fang Ting warmly welcomes the hero. Now that everyone has greeted each other, Linbei calls on the protagonist to set off. Along the way, Linbei mentions that they are disciples of Yujian Peak and asks which peak the hero belongs to. In response, the protagonist states that he is from Yinjian Peak, which leaves everyone stunned. Unfortunately, the revelation causes a noticeable discomfort among the group members. This is because Shu Mountain disciples are like one big family, except for Yinjian Peak and Yujian Peak. The 5 points of Shu Mountain are dedicated to the art of the sword and have shared the same ancestry since ancient times. However, in this generation, 2 masters with conflicting personalities began a rivalry, the hero's master and Wang Zhuanling. The 2 masters openly display their differences, and naturally their disciples follow their example. especially recently since the bet between the two has spread across the entire mountain. Thus, it is natural for the atmosphere between the two peaks to be terrible, and Linbei considers removing his hand from the boy's shoulder. The same happens with the other group members, but they think suddenly changing their attitude would be inappropriate. In any case, Linbei decides not to change his friendly demeanor toward the boy. They mention having heard that Yinjian Peak has only one disciple, and both comment on what an incredible coincidence this is. Moreover, since everyone has already received their mission assignments, Linbei says they must proceed whether they like it or not. Pixu, on the other hand, believes the protagonist is not a good person, and Fang Ting says they will need her more than ever for the mission. Thus, the three disciples can no longer tolerate the situation and walk ahead of the two boys, demonstrating their change in attitude. With this, Linbei explains that it is natural for this to happen due to the relationship between the two peaks. But Liang states that as long as there are monsters to fight, everything is fine, and the boy agrees. To explain the mission details, Linbei informs them that Fang will be leading the team since he is in the early stage of the Golden Core realm. He adds that even though Fang is just one stage ahead of the others, it marks the distinction between the human realm and the earthly realm. Regarding the younger sister, Linbei explains that most of them are mainly there to accompany her, as it is her first mission. The girl's brother is Xu Ziyang from Yujian Peak, and since he has been in seclusion recently, they were tasked with accompanying her. Hearing this, Lian comments that he recognizes the name and recalls that in recent years, the sect has been losing influence. However, when it comes to prominent figures of this generation, two names stand out: Jiang Yubai and Xu Ziyang. Hearing this, Linbei is delighted that his elder brother still holds some prestige. Changing the subject, Linbei says their situation is similar to Xu's, as they are also joining seniors to gain experience. With this, he asks which senior accompanied Liang on his first mission, but the hero responds that he has always completed missions alone. This revelation is enough to leave Linbei in shock. In light of this, he praises the hero greatly, making Liang start to feel abnormal. This is because it is said that cultivators usually complete missions in groups until the end of the spiritual intent domain. Liang understands the logic, as hunting alone takes more time and yields fewer results. In this case, Linbei suggests they form a group again for future missions, but the hero knows this is not a good idea. Nearly forgetting, Linbei introduces Lu Ren, the last group member, who is similar to them in terms of strength. Linbei informs them that the mission will take place near Zhenin Mountain, and that, even though there may be some demons, Feng will exterminate them. Regardless, their plan is to venture into a specific area on the outskirts of the territory and gather the flower at the right opportunity. This is the general situation of the mission, and Linbei says they can discuss the rest of the plan along the way. Thus, Liang states that he understands what is necessary but remains curious about these demonic beasts in the forest. At the edge of Tongtian Peak, the group is getting closer to the flower, and Statue begins to use her powers. With some magical gestures, she points to the sky, and suddenly, a massive bird begins to approach. Quickly, it lands close to Xu, and the two embrace warmly, showing how much they missed each other. Meanwhile, the hero feels quite envious that a girl of similar age has the money for such a luxurious pet. Regardless, Xu calls all the group members to climb onto her mount. Everyone, except for the hero, since, although she does not refuse his presence, she does not invite him either. Liang immediately notices the girl's judgmental glances, but he decides he will ride the bird regardless of what this young lady might be thinking. With that, Linbei helps the boy climb aboard, and the hero can barely contain his excitement to hunt demons. For a long and distant journey, riding on a sword certainly provides great speed. It is said that flying over mountains on a sword is both agile and thrilling, but the image it leaves for ordinary people is not good, and it is normal for cultivators to end up tired and very cold. In moments like these, having a mount is truly fantastic. At this moment, Linbei announces that they have arrived at the border of Zhenin Mountain, which lies between the southern and central domains. Spanning 800 miles, an imposing barrier separates the two lands, and within it are vast valleys with dense forests. It is said to be home to countless demons and legendary monsters, but Linbei assures them there is nothing to fear. This is because the location they are heading to this time is not too dangerous, as it is on the outskirts of the mountain in a small jungle. It is said that the flower supposedly grows in pairs, but when it was discovered, it was not yet mature, so the mission was passed on. However, our hero begins to find Linbei somewhat inconvenient for not having stopped talking the entire time. The protagonist thinks there might be a possibility he hasn't considered yet, this being that the boy isn't actually friendly, but rather just a chatterbox. With this, Liang suspects the reason the three cultivators are sitting so far ahead might be to isolate Linbei, not him. Half an hour later, the group finally arrives at the forest where the flower is located, and Xu bids farewell to her mount. Feng warns of the dangers in the area, which is why they will proceed on foot. He then explains that the forest vegetation is filled with miasma, so the group must hold their breath to move forward. To conserve his cultivation energy, Feng assigns the three warriors to clear the path ahead. Linbei thinks that holding one's breath is not an issue, but without breathing, it is impossible to reposition one's true essence. In this situation, true ki will be limited and very precious, but if they encounter any monsters, someone will need to take action. As the highest level cultivator among them, Feng must conserve his essence to deal with the most powerful enemies. Meanwhile, Su, as it is her first mission, naturally won't be tasked with anything tei important. Thus, Linbei believes that his senior brother's strategy is very well thought out. But suddenly, our hero grabs everyone's attention by saying he has a better suggestion for the plan to clear the path. Logically, everyone has a bad feeling, suspecting that the boy might have some malicious intention. However, the protagonist simply states that he can handle clearing the path and killing the demons on his own. Faced with this, Linbei is completely shocked as he knows there are many unforeseen dangers in this area. In dangerous situations like this, the more energy preserved, the higher the chance of avoiding peril, which is why no one volunteers like that. It is precisely for this reason that senior brother Feng proposed a fair rotation plan. Thus, when Chu Lang mentioned his objections, the first thing that came to mind was that he was trying to find a way to escape. But Linbei did not expect to see a smiling and warm-hearted disciple in front of him. With that, he begins to reflect on the boy's decision to clear the path alone with beginner-level cultivation. Soon, the warrior feels bad for having thought the hero had bad intentions. Therefore, Linbei tries to warn the hero that they may need to stay on this path for several hours. Linbei adds more arguments, but Chu Lang is completely confident, saying that if his energy runs out, he will retreat. Thus, with his humble cultivation, the boy states that he may not be of much help, but he will still try to contribute as much as possible. This attitude astonishes all the group members, impressed by the boy's courage and kindness. In any case, the leader decides not to argue, as daylight is fading and they need to reach the mountain as soon as possible. However, he warns that if the boy's energy drops to half, it will be time to switch with another cultivator. At this moment, it is extremely important that no one becomes completely exhausted, and the hero understands the concern. The girl in the group, on the other hand, recalls having opposed the protagonist earlier. This was because her master had always taken good care of her. When she advanced to the profound intent realm, her master gifted her the bird as a present. To the girl, her master was one of the most important people in her family, and she knew very well what he thought of people like Liang. Naturally, she had subtly shown her hostility toward the hero. When she allowed Liang to ride the mount, she isolated herself out of resentment, but now the same boy is taking responsibility for the entire team. Faced with this, Xu thinks the hero has clearly been trying to build relationships with everyone all this time. In this case, she realizes that her earlier behavior of isolating him was not right at all. Liang, on the other hand, sees this not as helping, but as an opportunity to earn all the rewards for himself. However, for Xu, the hero now no longer seemed like a bad person, but rather someone beautiful with a kind smile. Thus, it is clear she begins to see the boy as a good person. For this reason, she decides she must find a way to repay the favor he is doing for the team. Without delay, she approaches the hero and calls for his attention. Unexpectedly, the girl offers 3 keep pills to the hero to use during his mission. Naturally, Liang feels a bit confused, as these are very valuable items that restore true energy. Regardless, he believes that such valuable pills should be used for cultivation, not just to recover from fatigue. So even though it is a good item, the protagonist tries to refuse but quickly realizes his mistake. This is because the young girl was doing this to apologize for feeling so bad about the way she had treated Liang. Thus, the hero sees no other choice but to accept, which makes Xu quite happy. Heading to his path-clearing mission, Liang summons his sword. Still, he remains confused about why the team's attitude toward him has changed so much. On Zhennanyu Mountain, the miasma released by the demons becomes increasingly dense. Amid this, a light lantern is activated to protect the group of cultivators from the poison. Moving ahead, the hero begins to extend his divine sense, and soon the entire environment transforms for him into a calm lagoon. However, in this calm, he can now perceive the signs the surrounding demons are giving. At the precise moment a monster is discovered, it reveals itself to attack the group. It is a carnivorous plant-type demon, advancing to devour its first victim. But Liang defends Xu and unexpectedly defeats it with a single sword strike. Despite this, in its last breath, the demon releases a significant amount of venom toward the girl. It almost didn't hit Xu, but at that moment, many others appeared to attack as a group. Once again, Liang destroys them with his sword in a single strike. After half an hour in the forest, Liang had already dealt with at least 10 carnivorous plant monsters, demonstrating the danger of the place. Having advanced further, the leader Feng called the group to rest for a while. Promptly, the hero asked if Xu had been hurt during the fight, but the girl smiled and said no. Feng explained that even though Chu Lang was clearing everything, they still kept their guard up. For this reason, even with true Kai and strength preserved, it was necessary to rest their minds. For cultivators, essence, energy, and spirit were indispensable, so Feng ordered everyone to recover for the time being. Meanwhile, Linbei, now quite friendly with Chu Liang, asked if his companion was alright. Liang explained that thanks to the pills given by his elder sister, he had managed to stay in good condition. However, knowing Linbei's talkative nature, Liang cut him off before he could say anything else because he wanted to meditate. In his mind, the hero thought it was a good time to make the most of the pills. This was because with the White Tower nearby, he could easily recover his expenditures by killing some lantern monsters. As usual, the protagonist left his offerings in the White Tower to receive his reward. What he received in return was a powder made from hundreds of flowers. It was said that if applied correctly, this essence could neutralize 100 types of poison. Additionally, the bodies of those treated would be left with a wonderful rose fragrance. Meanwhile, the inexperienced junior sister Xu was filled with doubts in her mind. Being a girl who loved cleanliness, she wondered if she would really sit on the dirty ground to meditate. Due to her weak strength, she continued conserving all her abilities, but so far she had contributed nothing. With this, the girl kept mulling over such thoughts in her head. Suddenly, she heard a noise in the woods that frightened her greatly. From within the woods, something was approaching, and as it drew nearer to Xu, the girl broke out in a cold sweat. With a high jump, the creature revealed itself to be nothing more than a simple frog. However, for Xu, encountering a frog was as bad as facing a terrible monster. Quickly, she fled as far as she could from the animal. Trembling and with tears in her eyes, she realized she had failed to detect the frog because it wasn't a demonic creature. The group leader suddenly became alarmed and called out for his little sister. He shouted for her to be careful because a monster was approaching, and at that moment, Liang was unavailable. Before anyone could react, one of the carnivorous plants grabbed Xu's leg. To defend his junior sister, Feng used his powers to quickly eliminate the monster. Even though he succeeded, the attack was far more powerful than necessary. The noise of the destruction startled the hero awake from his cultivation in the White Tower. All the warriors promptly rushed toward Xu to assist in her healing. Liang, for his part, still didn't understand what had happened, but he now knew the true power of a golden core expert. Without delay, the young girl activated her cultivation to use healing arts. She didn't worry much, thinking such a minor injury would be easily treated. Unfortunately for her, she was wrong, as instead of healing, the venom only spread further. At that moment, Xe realized the seriousness of her injury, as the demonic flower had not only wounded her, but also injected venom into her leg. Faced with this, all of her teammates were in disbelief. Feng commented that the vine flowers in this forest were usually harmless, but apparently the one that attacked Xu was a mutation. Realizing how bad the situation was, Linbai pulled out some detoxifying pills they had prepared. However, he knew they were only meant to combat the miasma in the forest, and unfortunately, no one had an antidote for the purple vine flower. Thus, the boy suggested there was only one way to resolve this, and Feng questioned what Linbai had in mind. As expected, the solution Linbai proposed was utterly ridiculous. He offered to suck out the venom himself. Of course, Feng didn't accept, not because it was a bad method, but because Linbai lacked the cultivation strength to withstand the venom. And that is why he also offers to suck the poison from Xu's leg as the strongest cultivator among the five. Amid all this commotion, Xin grows increasingly anxious and desperate. But as if the situation wasn't already complicated enough, the last cultivator in the group also states his opinion, claiming that he should be the one to suck out the poison. With these three adult men standing before her with questionable intentions, Xu becomes utterly desperate. However, to their misfortune, our hero raises his hand, drawing everyone's attention. In response, they ask if Liang also wants to help extract the poison. But he quickly explains that everyone misunderstood because he has a medicine that can cure the poison of the purple flower. Naturally, the reactions of the guys are not as cheerful as Xu's. Still, even though it's not a remedy specifically for poison, Liang believes it might have some effect. In response, Linbai, once again pretending to be concerned, points out that since it's not a dedicated antidote, there might be some risks. And for that reason, he asks once more if Xu wouldn't prefer him to handle it, but the girl runs away without even looking back. Frustrating the pervert's plan, the girl asks how the remedy should be used, and Liang explains that half should be taken orally and the other half applied externally. Gradually, Xu starts to gain more and more trust in our hero, who becomes quite embarrassed. Then Linbai changes his mind and asks to at least help apply the remedy, which Xu obviously refuses. After applying it as our hero instructed, the girl uses her recovery technique. Within seconds of treatment, she begins to notice a fragrance in the air. The scent is so refreshing that Xu starts to feel light and as if she's floating. Gradually, the fragrance grows stronger, making her feel surrounded by roses. However, this overwhelming scent begins to feel strange, and the girl notices the shift. She starts being pulled into the countless flowers and even loses the ability to breathe. Unfortunately, the girl wakes up but feels desperate as she realizes she almost completely succumbed to the strange scent. In response, our hero feels happy that his medicine apparently worked. When looking at the protagonist, however, Xu notices that the boy also emits a bit of that strange fragrance. Faced with Liang's concern for her, the girl begins to think of him as someone handsome and pleasant smelling. In this case, the first thought that comes to her mind is that the scent she's experiencing might actually be Liang's. Still, she thinks she might be mistaken, and our hero feels confused by Xu's strange reaction. Thus, he grabs the girl and shakes her in an attempt to get her to quickly explain how she's feeling. Of course, she doesn't appreciate this at all, even though she's already feeling better. But despite the boy's inappropriate attitude, Xu remains embarrassed and tries to calm herself. In any case, the girl asks how she can repay the favor, but Liang states that the pill from earlier was more than enough. In response, Xu explains that compared to the medicine, that pill was nothing. But our hero insists he doesn't want anything in return because to him, they are sibling disciples. In this case, Xu shyly asks if they are friends, Since Liang doesn't deny it, she feels delighted to consider him her friend from now on. Linbei, on the other hand, questions why our hero is carrying such a medicine. The protagonist responds that it's always better to be prepared just in case. Changing the subject, Feng decides to continue the journey now that Su has recovered. Contrary to the group's expectations, Liang has no problem taking risks again. This causes all the cultivators to grow even fonder of our hero. Half an hour later, Liang is disappointed to have only found 2 small demon flowers on this journey. But as the group keeps walking, they soon encounter a place with more miasma than usual. Faced with this, Feng shouts that they are close to their destination and cannot afford to waste any more time. As previously established, Liang continues at the front to clear the path, and the sense of danger grows stronger. In his intrusive thoughts, Linbei imagines that in such an isolated place, the echo must be excellent. So he decides to test the forest reverberation with a small shout. This causes Linbei to be harshly judged by his companions for the irresponsibility of potentially attracting monsters. Feng, meanwhile, comments that according to the guide, the flowers should be a valley away, but the path will become more dangerous. Without delay, all the cultivators descend the hill and continue toward their destination. But as they get closer, Liang thinks that it's far too quiet for a place full of monsters. Thus, the boy suspects that this must be the territory of a very powerful monster. At the moment the group comes face to face with their target, the flower begins to grow, transforming into a massive bud. Feng quickly realizes they have found the target and asks everyone to prepare for the harvesting operation. With the group in agreement, Liang believes the most dangerous phase is about to begin. When the enormous flower turns toward the warriors, Linbei starts to feel scared. Feng is also nervous, but as the leader of the group, he tells everyone to remain calm, explaining that the plant only reacts to its surroundings. He continues, stating that when the night's light falls, the plant will bloom, and until then, the group must act with caution. Regarding the human-faced jade flower, everyone has already gained a general understanding. The hero knows this is an extraordinary creature that loses its spiritual essence if harvested at the wrong moment. Based on what they know, the flower exhibits highly defensive behavior during its blooming, confusing observers with illusions. Therefore, teamwork is essential for the harvest. By using a bronze mirror, they plan to reflect the illusion back onto the flower itself, while another person attacks from behind. While 2 members harvest the flower, the rest of the group will handle the surrounding monsters. Finally, as the blooming hour approaches, everyone rushes to put their plan into action. Lurin will be responsible for handling the mirror, and Linbei will be in charge of the harvesting. Su, on the other hand, will guard one side against approaching monsters. Meanwhile, Liang will position himself to watch over Su while guarding the other side. During this, Feng will take the high position, overseeing all directions. From now on, the leader instructs everyone to gather their energy and stay fully alert for the right moment. With the moonlight about to shine on the flowers, the time draws closer. Then Feng shouts again, this time instructing the group to focus on the monsters that will appear from the right and left. Both Lurin and Linbei seem unsure of their abilities. However, our hero remains 100% focused on the mission, and Shu does not falter either. Suddenly, one of the monsters appears to defend the treasure and attacks Shu. It's a giant tiger with Pegasus wings that leaves Shu utterly terrified at first sight. The girl attempts to respond with a sword attack, but Feng intervenes with his own blade to help her. This causes the girl's sword to ricochet off her senior brothers. In Liang's eyes, the movements of a golden core-level practitioner only grow more impressive. Still, he believes it's a waste, as he wanted to deal with the tiger himself. Noticing Liang's expression, Feng boasts about his strength while trying to appear humble. This leaves the protagonist slightly embarrassed, as Feng assumes he's jealous. But Liang quickly realizes the best course of action when dealing with someone like Feng is simply to agree. As night falls, monsters begin to appear one after another, and soon 3 of them rush for the protagonist. For our hero, this is simply a gift to help boost his cultivation. Thus, the boy prepares to defeat all the monsters. But Feng doesn't believe Liang can handle it alone and decides to interfere. He hurls his sword to finish off the monsters attacking Liang. Of course, Liang tries to strike first, but his attack is intercepted by his senior brothers, evaporating all the beasts in an instant. After dispatching the monsters, Feng believes he's done a good job, but Liang couldn't be more disappointed. This is because he has just lost all his rewards to his senior brother. At this moment, all the boy can do is lament the pain he feels. With more dozens of monsters approaching, Feng takes the initiative to deal with them. No longer conserving his energy, the warrior begins to annihilate the beasts from every direction. Clearly, Feng feels like a hero after displaying his power to the group. Thus, he stands tall, waiting for praise from either of the 2 disciples. But unexpectedly, no one commented on how amazing he was because our hero wants to kill the monsters with his own hands. Thus, Feng turns his attention to the girl, but she doesn't respond either. Because of this, the senior disciple feels confused, not understanding why everything is going so differently from what he envisioned. To break the ice, the boy shouts, saying that if the 2 continue cultivating, one day they might become as powerful as him. But this statement is even more embarrassing than the last, making Feng start to think he should let them fight on their own. Before anything else, Linbei announces that the Jade Essence is about to begin. Then Lurin quickly prepares the bronze mirror to reflect the illusion. At the moment the human-faced plant blooms, it sees a male version of itself in the mirror. This is enough to leave both faces of the plant completely distracted and embarrassed. Because of this, Linbei thinks this is the perfect moment to cut the flower's stem. But just as he is about to succeed, a monster appears to defend it. Linbei is terrified, and not knowing what it is, he blocks the attack. As he retreats, the boy quickly realizes that it's actually a malevolent creature that nearly took his life. Now revealing itself to everyone, Feng becomes desperate upon realizing the danger of this monster. Having encountered such a thing, he decides it must be dealt with as quickly as possible. However, even when attacked by the strongest cultivator, the creature easily dodges. And upon finding opportunity, the demon rips off one of the stems and begins to flee. Naturally, the senior brother won't let that happen, so he immediately sends his sword after the monster. With this, the demon is cornered by 4 blades that form a sort of barrier around it. This creates the best opportunity for the group to finish off the thieving demon. Without delay, all the cultivators join the battle, determined to exterminate the monster together. But even while seemingly cornered, the creature continues to wear a calm and carefree smile. This is because it doesn't even need to dodge, as it possesses the power of intangibility, leaving everyone stunned. Thus, much to Feng's frustration, the creature continues its escape, laughing uncontrollably. Quickly, the senior brother chases after the monster to reclaim what it's taken. He leaps onto his sword and begins flying, determined to face it alone. Meanwhile, our hero reflects that their situation is quite precarious, considering Feng's strength should have been enough to defeat all the monsters by now. Thus, the rookies can afford to lose focus, as they'll have to handle everything else. Regardless, the protagonist thinks that creature was truly fast, harvesting the plant and fleeing so quickly. At the moment, it's hard to say if Feng will be able to keep up with such an extraordinary being. But if he can't, our hero considers that the thing on his body might be useful. Back in the senior brother's pursuit of the thieving demon, the warrior's aura starts causing widespread destruction. Unfortunately, the falling rocks from the cliff were no ordinary stones, making it extremely hard to push through. Feng is constantly blocked by these rocks, preventing him from increasing his speed. Inevitably, the gap between them widens and breaking through the stones becomes increasingly difficult. Yet Feng is far from giving up and decides to increase his speed even in these conditions. After some time chasing, they finally reach an open area. But the demon still demonstrates enough speed to keep running. Once out of the cave, Feng can finally display the full extent of his power and chase the monster with greater speed. Without hesitation, he uses his powers to attack the monster with his Kai sword. And just barely, the demon manages to escape being completely vaporized by the attack. All this humiliation makes the senior brother increasingly irritated and impatient. The chase continues, and even though Feng attacks repeatedly, the monster dodges every single one. Realizing this, the warrior understands he's dealing with a very slippery creature, but also notes that the terrain is giving it an advantage. Suddenly, something puts the boy on alert as vines begin to move unexpectedly. Looking closer, Feng realizes this is, in fact, the demon king of this area. Meanwhile, the thieving creature flees further and further away. But the boy has no time to think, as he must now defend himself from an even more powerful monster. Faced with this, Feng realizes he no longer has any chance of keeping up with the demon. With such agility, the creature has practically already won this chase. While the warrior's aura excels in speed, it lacks agility, making it unsuitable for use in this environment. Thus, Feng becomes deeply frustrated but finds himself unable to break through the obstacles in front of him. Naturally, he begins to worry about what his master and Aniclimax will think, as the mission seems to have failed even with a Golden Core Realm member present. While Feng is lost in thought, someone else rushes past to resolve the situation. At first, the warrior doesn't understand what this thing speeding by his side is. However, the demon immediately uses its innate intangibility ability, allowing it to continue fleeing. Faced with this, the protagonist realizes that the monster is only dodging and evading without counterattacking. Soon, the boy understands that while he's dealing with a strong demon, its combat power is quite weak. If intangibility is its only skill, all Lang has to do is wait until it deactivates. Naturally, the monster can't maintain that state for long. As it begins to revert to its normal form, the protagonist captures it with a rope. At that moment, all the monster could think about was everything it had gone through to get here. Its predicament left it deeply saddened, as it considered dying in this way a humiliation. Without hesitation, our hero raises his sword to end the demon, delivering a powerful strike. In the cultivation world, asking about others' magical tools and personal secrets is highly taboo. The reason is simple. While cultivation levels are visible unless there's a vast difference, magical tools and equipment can be hidden. In critical moments, these tools can compensate for or even overcome differences in cultivation level. Therefore, when such situations occur, it's common for cultivators to eliminate their victims to keep their secrets. Some sects acquire treasures fairly, while others do not, so asking about them remains taboo. This is why using the talisman won't reveal Liang's secret regarding the White Tower. Upon returning with the Jade Flower, everyone welcomes the protagonist warmly, though Feng cannot comprehend how his junior accomplished it. Linbei, meanwhile, asks Liang to teach him his techniques, which piques Shu's curiosity. In response, the cultivator downplays it, claiming it's just a simple footwork technique. Regardless, Liang explains that he retrieved the prize using a powerful one-time use talisman. Hearing this, Feng accepts the explanation as true, seeing no reason for Liang to hide his cultivation. Xu agrees as well, noting that as the only disciple of the Silver Sword Peak, Liang has access to all his master's resources. Linbei, however, focuses on the talisman, noting that it allowed Liang to reach 4th realm speed. Understanding it as one of Liang's trump cards, Luren thinks the mission's reward won't be enough to compensate for the talisman. Regardless, everyone looks at Liang with admiration, and Feng comments that he never imagined the hero would be the one to resolve the situation. Moreover, believing that Liang used his most precious treasure for the mission's sake, the entire group is moved to tears. At this moment, Liang doesn't understand what's happening, but in everyone's eyes, he has become this sect's most charismatic disciple. Taking the initiative to compensate the protagonist for using the talisman, the junior sister announces she will give her entire share of the reward to him. She isn't the only one. Feng also feels compelled to reward Liang for his effort. Finally, Linbei embraces Liang and explains that everyone will give their shares to him, whether he wants them or not. Back on the Silver Sword Mountain, the day is sunny and the flowers are blooming. As his master had been absent for the past 2 days, Liang took charge of the residence's tasks. And despite being busy, the feeling of power that comes with being the leader of the peak makes Liang feel quite comfortable. Nonetheless, the boy remembers something important he has to do and quickly gets up to take care of it. The protagonist returned too late the previous day after saying goodbye to the disciples of the Jade Sword Peak. Now it's time to cultivate and return to the White Tower to claim the rewards from the last mission. Without delay, the protagonist activates the exchange mechanism, but this time it seems he has obtained something special. From that sphere of energy emerges a large blue light entity, leaving our hero astonished. It's explained that this reward is, in fact, a cultivation assistant that transfers all progress to the user throughout the day. However, this puppet is designed solely for cultivation, and using it for other tasks could pose significant risks. Regardless, the protagonist's eyes sparkle with excitement at his incredible luck. To him, having an assistant to boost his strength 24 hours a day is utterly amazing. With this tool, the boy's cultivation speed could double or even triple. The object, called the Zhaotian puppet, brings Liang immense joy at having something so valuable. However, he soon remembers that this isn't merely a duplication tool, as all 3 realms rely on enlightenment. It's said that achieving enlightenment in a single moment can surpass decades of cultivation. In the 3 realms of the human gate, the focus is on resources, whereas the lower-level realms prioritize cultivation. In the human gate realms, the body refinement realm is about tempering the physical body. In the ki condensation realm, the focus shifts to developing the kaisi and danshin. Currently, the hero is in the divine consciousness refinement realm, which evolves through meditation and techniques. Regardless, the daily time available for cultivation is limited due to basic needs and other practices. Moreover, Shu Mountain disciples must also complete training missions during the day. Thus, managing 4 to 5 hours of daily practice is already considered highly committed. Recently, frequent mission participation has left only 2 free hours per day, requiring highly focused practice. Therefore, simply standing idle or relaxing yields no progress in the hero's cultivation. But now things are different, as with the big-headed puppet, Liang will be able to cultivate for 12 hours a day. It's said that cultivation progress speed can increase by 4 to 5 times, leaving more time for missions. Getting straight to the point, our hero takes out a cultivation pill to enhance the puppet's power. He activates the puppet's operation and adds the chapter on Heavenly Heart Divine Consciousness. Though Shu sect cultivation methods are renowned in the immortal world for their standardization, they excel in stability and solidity. As long as members cultivate diligently to the same level, the disciple's overall strength often surpasses that of others. Now synchronizing the techniques with the puppet's body, the methods begin to operate within it. In perfect cooperation with the boy, his cultivation can become twice as stable and solid. Within seconds, our hero completes his practice and everything appears to have worked as expected. After synchronizing the techniques, there's a significant difference in the puppet's appearance compared to before. From the inside out, the puppet has completely assumed the form of the protagonist. Incidentally, Liang wonders about the instructions for using Zhu Tian again. He recalls that the puppet consumes 1 key pill during the day and 2 at night, allowing it to operate for 12 hours straight. Although the daily consumption of 3 pills isn't insignificant, it's negligible compared to the benefits. In any case, the hero thinks he can't let the big-headed doll stop and, if necessary, will slay monsters to earn more money. However, what concerns Liang is that the puppet lacks consciousness, yet its pill consumption differs at night. Because of this, he begins to think the puppet is like a worker demanding double pay for overtime. Regardless, Liang understands that even a worker like this can manipulate their salary, though he still disagrees with it. Changing the subject, the hero muses that if only the puppet were a person, he could set an impossible performance target for it. And so, Liang fantasizes about exploiting the puppet to work tirelessly, driven by the fear of having its salary reduced. In his mind, his good side protests against the idea, but his mischievous side eagerly justifies it. After all, Liang himself works overtime without receiving anything in return, so it's only natural for the puppet to do the same. Thus, if the puppet had consciousness, it would be utterly doomed under its demanding master. But these musings remain solely in the protagonist's thoughts. In any case, before leaving the tower, he ensures the puppet stays there to avoid attracting unwanted attention. As he exits, Liang reflects that he still doesn't fully understand the White Tower, knowing only that its items can be brought into the real world. Regardless, he decides not to dwell on it too much since he has other matters to attend to. After completing the mission on Manhwa Mountain, the Jade Disciples believe Liang suffered a great loss. Although the talisman is valuable, it didn't cost him anything, and in return, Liang gained a cure for numerous poisons and a Zhu Qian puppet. Additionally, he's also received various rewards totaling 50 sword coins so far. Liang has never received so much money before, and he considers heading to Tongshan Peak to show off a little. At the main plaza of the peak, the boy heads to the Danding Hall. Upon arriving at the pill shop, the receptionist seems a bit concerned about Liang's efforts, though the hero isn't buying anything for himself. Later, the protagonist visits the Chuanjian Hall for the first time, the place responsible for artifacts. With coins in his pocket and confidence in his stride, the boy is determined to leave with a purchase. Inside the shop, Liang feels there's no better sensation than being surrounded by numerous flying swords. But seeing how good the swords look, he begins to wonder how many coins he'll need. First, he encounters the unparalleled sword, priced at 300 coins. Then the Finger Mountain sword costs 200 coins more, totaling 500. And the Profound Shining sword is even more expensive, with a price tag of 800 sword coins. In the end, each sword in the shop is pricier than the last. The hero, who entered so confidently, now feels entirely deflated. Until now, Liang had never been to Chuanjian Hall, and his visit was inspired by Feng's Thunder Sword. He thought he had amassed a small fortune, but compared to the prices, 50 coins are nearly worthless. At this point, the protagonist finally appreciates the utility of the sect's standard sword, which will have to last him for several more years. Even for a Divine Realm disciple, earning 100 coins in a month is challenging, not to mention covering expenses. Because of this, Liang wonders how long it would take to save enough. Shifting his mindset, he concludes there's no immediate need to buy such an expensive sword. However, as he turns to leave, the shop attendant realizes she's about to lose a customer. She quickly rushes after him, calling for his attention. Approaching the hero, she asks if he's interested in buying a flying sword, and Liang confirms he is. The girl then asks which sword caught his eye, but Liang explains his financial situation. For her, though, this isn't an issue. After hearing his budget, she offers to provide guidance. In this case, Liang admits he has only 50 coins, but from what he's seen, the cheapest swords cost the 300. Indeed, the girl hadn't expected such a low budget. Still, she refuses to give up on the sale, explaining that the hall has just introduced a payment installment plan. Hearing this, Liang is amazed that such a modern concept exists on Shu Mountain. She explains that an initial payment can be made, with the remainder paid in increments of 10 coins over 50 months. Upon reflection, Liang realizes he would end up paying 500 coins, doubling the initial price over 4 years. Although the cost increases significantly, the extended payment period is highly tempting. Thus, he agrees that it's a good deal, much to the attendant's delight. But despite the appealing offer, he decides to decline for now and return later to make a purchase. At the moment, the hero is focused on slaying demons, believing he might earn a sword as a reward instead. The attendant, however, insists on continuing the sale, arguing that having an exclusive sword is more important than money. But the boy simply walks away without looking back until he unexpectedly crosses paths with another customer. To his surprise, Liang encounters his junior sister, Shu, at the entrance of the hall, and both are taken aback, especially Shu, who hadn't expected to see her love again so soon. The girl is thrilled to see our hero, and to strike up a conversation, Liang asks if she's also at her shop. Shu replies affirmatively, explaining that her brother allowed her to choose any weapon she wanted as a reward for completing her first mission. At this, the protagonist realizes just how different their circumstances are. Nonetheless, the girl asks what kind of sword Master Chu purchased, but Liang admits he doesn't have the money for it yet. Seizing the opportunity, Shen offers to help and quickly asks which sword the hero likes most, saying she could gift it to him. Naturally, Liang responds politely, explaining he can't accept something so valuable for free. But for Xu, the price isn't the issue. Her concern is whether the hero would even accept her help. In this moment, Liang recalls a saying about how a wealthy lady can change anything with her resources. Xu grows annoyed at the hesitation, insisting that friends give each other gifts. However, our hero, who doesn't want to accept something he hasn't earned, knows that a flying sword from the hall is far more significant than the pills she gave before. Thus, Liang leaves his junior sister to take her time choosing, saying he's heading out now. Xu, for her part, feels slightly bothered that the hero still refers to her with formal titles despite their friendship. She tells him to start calling her Zi Cheng as others do, but Liang continues addressing her the same way. Suddenly, someone places a hand on the protagonist's shoulder as if looking to start trouble. With a less than friendly expression, the boy asks if Sue is in trouble and whether she needs help. Attempting to intimidate the hero, he comments that it seems like an unfamiliar person approached her without permission. With that, he calls over 3 other onlookers to help handle this imagined problem. Naturally, the young lady steps in front of the protagonist, explaining that everyone misunderstood Liang's a friend. At this, the expression of the boy, Shang, changes entirely and he shifts the conversation, saying their meeting here must be destiny. Without delay, Shang begins boasting about his latest mission, mentioning how his father allowed him to choose any sword he wanted. Quickly, he starts invading Sue's personal space to learn more about her and keep the conversation going. Teju explains that she hasn't bought anything yet, only browse. For Shang, this is the perfect opportunity to gift his beloved a sword and strengthen their relationship. However, like our hero, Sue refuses the gift, reminding him of the value of a flying sword. Shang then questions what's wrong with gifting something to a close friend, but Sue responds that she doesn't deserve something like that either. Out of options, the boy finally gives up, but not before inviting Sue to dinner that evening. Sue, however, hurries off before the situation spirals further out of control. As she leaves, Shang attempts to tell her she's welcome to address him informally, but she doesn't pay him any attention. After being rebuffed, Shang turns to his companions, asking what they make of the situation. As a handsome and elegant young talent, he sees himself as a gem, yet Zixing continues to ignore his advances. To all his sycophantic friends, this makes no sense, so Shang asks what could be causing this. One of them suggests that perhaps the girl is in love with someone else, which takes the young master by surprise. Quickly, another warrior mentions the boy from earlier, noting that everything about him seems suspicious. For the first friend, he and their scents matched, which was true due to the flower powder used to heal Xu. But Shang was far from accepting this situation peacefully. He immediately shouted for his lackeys to investigate the name of the boy daring to compete for his beloved. Meanwhile, in another location, our protagonist is walking with the young lady. Tu-Sud explains that the person from earlier was Shang Ziliang, the son of Emperor Shang from Yunyo Peak. But since he's always so arrogant because of being the son of a master, Gexu has never been able to like him. Moreover, he constantly tries to approach her with ulterior motives, which has begun to irritate her. From a broader perspective, Liang recalls that Shang Xuan is a Confucian cultivator whose name is inscribed in the Hall of Gentlemen. It's clear, however, that his son is not following in his footsteps. As Liang reflects, something in the sky suddenly catches his attention. It could be the return of his master. Noticing this, the protagonist informs Su that it seems his master is back, and he must go to greet her. Xu doesn't object or make a scene, simply staying behind to watch the hero leave. After all, Liang departed so quickly that she didn't even have time to react. As the hero returns to the peak on his flying sword, his master drinks to hide her frustration. At that moment, the protagonist arrives and greets his master with great respect. His master asks if there were any problems during the past 2 days she was away. Liang promptly responds that there weren't, even mentioning that he completed another mission. Changing the subject, he asks if her trip was successful, but she becomes irritated just thinking about it. During her journey, she went to the Eastern Sea to hunt for any monsters causing trouble. However, while she was working, members of the Penglai sect appeared and expelled her, claiming she was disrupting the sea's ecological balance. This infuriates her, and she states that if not for her consideration for the Shu sect, she would never have submitted to such a situation. Hearing her complaints, the hero remains silent for a moment to process. He quickly realizes that his master's actions are exactly what he expected. After all, Liang knows well how his master behaves when hunting monsters. When there are monsters causing chaos, Empress Feng is always eager to eliminate the threat. But when chaos emerges, she becomes the threat. Apparently, her hunting drew the attention of the Penglai sect, which, as one of the 9 sects and the guardian of the Eastern Sea, expelled her. While the Penglai sect's actions are understandable, this doesn't stop Liang from offering his master his full emotional support. In this case, Liang doesn't hesitate to call those people rude. While his master agrees, she suddenly pauses, noting something odd about her disciple. Naturally, the protagonist is confused, so she explains that Liang is usually not this obedient. This time, however, he was the first to appear when she returned to the mansion, making her suspect he has something to say. As her disciple, Liang assures her that greeting his superior is the least he could do, but he admits he does have something to discuss. At this, the Empress urges her disciple to speak. Liang recounts his last mission, where he faced a Golden Core realm warrior. That man's cultivation was incredibly strong, yet he wasn't even the leader. Quickly, his master understands what Liang is getting at, but she remarks that he still has plenty of time to grow stronger. For some reason, this is exactly the response the hero hoped to hear. Back when the Shu sect leader initially refused to let Feng take disciples, it was primarily because she practices body cultivation. This form of cultivation is entirely different from martial cultivation, focusing on refining the physical body through Taoist methods rather than martial arts. Feng, however, possesses the Crimson Flame Phoenix body, a powerful ability stemming from body cultivation. Still, body cultivation is rare and highly dependent on luck, making it impractical to teach to students. Aside from their master's teachings, disciples can acquire skills from the Hall of Guardian Protectors. Thus, Liang's purpose in seeking his master at this time is precisely that. He persuasively explains that although he's been practicing, his knowledge of divine skills and techniques is still limited. For this reason, the protagonist asks to learn some powerful divine skills. Initially, his master doesn't fully understand what her disciple is requesting. As a body cultivation practitioner, she has no divine skills to teach. In this case, Liang clarifies that what he actually wants is to visit the Hall of Guardian Protectors to purchase some. Seeing the situation, the master dismisses Liang's request without much concern, letting him go on his way. However, Liang kneels down and explains that he'll need a bit of money to achieve his goal. This irritates Feng as she realizes the entire conversation was a ploy to ask for money. Still, our hero justifies himself by saying all his efforts are for his master's cause. Feng replies that if her disciple needs pills or magical tools, she might be able to help. But when it comes to money, she truly has none to spare. Hearing this, Liang asks about the monthly salary that peak masters receive. From his memories of a past life, the boy recalls that the original body's life was always humble, but being too young, he never gave it much thought. As he grew older, though, he noticed how much more prosperous other peaks were, and it was hard not to find it odd. Especially since he was the only one on the peak, there should have been resources available. Thus, even if Feng could only provide him with a small monthly allowance, it might eventually be enough to buy a flying sword. Regardless, Feng explains that not only is she broke, but she's also deeply in debt. Naturally, Liang doesn't understand why. Feng then explains that for someone of her cultivation level, to get drunk, only immortal-grade liquor will suffice. She adds that a single gourd of what she's drinking costs 500 sword coins. Hearing this, the protagonist is at a loss for words, realizing that his master has been consuming this since his childhood. Even though she enjoys drinking, it's hard for Liang to comprehend that it costs more than a flying sword. At this point, his master's problem is no longer just her drinking, it's her excessive spending. Nevertheless, the Empress insists that she's telling the truth and, unfortunately, has nothing to offer. After all, despite traveling the world for years, she's never owned a magical treasure or weapon, relying solely on her physical body. Feng cuts to the chase, stating that she has nothing to give or sell, only her physical body. An awkward silence falls over the room for a few seconds. Then Liang has an idea and asks if his master is available. Naturally, the Empress becomes furious at her disciple's audacity, but Liang insists it was a misunderstanding. Regardless, she doesn't want to hear his excuses and orders him to leave. Leaving the mansion, our hero feels deeply disappointed that his plan failed. Unfortunately, he realizes he won't be able to rely on Feng's help. If he wants anything, he'll have to earn it on his own, or perhaps hope to gain something from defeating a monster. Just then, Linbei appears, cheerfully shouting about how glad he is to see his brother Chu back. In response, the protagonist asks why Linbei is there and if something is happening. Linbei quickly explains that he has information about a great mission, one that requires 2 skilled disciples. When he thought of Shu Mountain's disciples, he could only think of the 2 of them. Liang asks where they're headed, and without hesitation, Linbei reveals they'll be going to Yanzhou at the Nanshan Academy. Outside the city of Yantiao and near the southern mountains border, a man mentions to his brother Shun that lately no one dares approach the lake. Because of this, he questions why his companion specifically invited him to this place. Moreover, this is where Sibiyan died, but Shun explains that if they want to investigate the matter thoroughly, this is the right place. At a certain point, a strange light makes one of the boys tremble with fear. Turning around, he notices massive spider webs in the trees. He begins to question who might be there and whether something is lurking in the forest. Terrified, he tries to convince himself that nothing happened and that the sounds he heard were just the wind. Trying to appear tough, he says the rumors make no sense to him. After all, when his friends bullied Sikivian in the past, he barely participated. At most, he called her some bad names. In response, his companion agrees sarcastically, implying that he wasn't entirely innocent. The boy then places a hand on Shun's shoulder, urging him to stop pretending to be clueless. However, the man only responds by asking if the boy still doesn't recognize him. This, of course, terrifies the boy even more. But even in his desperation, Zhang insisted he was speaking with Shun and suggested they could move out of the city, never to return. However, the man wasn't Shun. When Zhang turned to face him, the figure, with a grotesquely disfigured face, asked if Zhang Kong still didn't recognize him. Confronted with that terrifying expression, Zhang fell to the ground, utterly horrified. As he trembled in fear, the person who was supposed to be his friend began to change form, peeling off its skin before his eyes. In a frenzy, Zhang begged the spirit to leave him alone and without thinking twice ran off as fast as he could. After running for a long time, he stopped, feeling relieved to have escaped. But just at that moment, Zhang's own hands started to strangle him. Writhing in pain, the boy asked aloud what was happening and pleaded for Siju Yan's forgiveness. Yet even as he begged, the spirit consumed his body, transforming his face in the process. In Yangzhou City, our hero asks why they were invited to the Nanshan Academy. The protagonist knows that unusual cases are often handled by Shu Mountain disciples. But Confucianism is entirely different from Buddhism and Taoism, and it seems the Academy's matters fall under Confucianist jurisdiction. Lin Bei acknowledges this, assuring Liang they won't overstep, they just need to protect a student. After some time, the two arrive at the Academy, specifically where Lord Li's son, Lei Ju, resides. Lin Bei explains that 2 students have already died, and Lord Lai is worried about his son's safety. For now, as long as the case remains unresolved, their mission is considered complete. However, Liang regrets accepting the task without much thought. Despite the possibility of not encountering any monsters, Lin Bei brightens things up by mentioning that they'll be paid daily. In his thoughts, Liang reflects that the mortal world truly supports the immortal one with resources, and with the high exchange rate, this family must be very wealthy. Moments later, the family patriarch greets Lin Bei, who introduces himself and asks them not to be so formal. Lin Bei quickly bonds with the family head and his son, leaving Liang impressed by his charisma. But suddenly, something about Lei Ju, supposedly the Lord's only son, catches Liang's attention. He seems deeply troubled. Using his persuasive skills, Lin Bei reassures Lord Lai that they'll stay by his son's side 24/7. Lord Lai, however, adds a request that they keep this guard duty a secret. This confuses Liang, prompting him to ask what the Lord means. Lai explains that he will enroll the 2 warriors at the school, and while there, they are to secretly watch over his son. Lin Bei accepts the request without hesitation but asks why secrecy is necessary. At this, Lord Lai grows anxious, admitting that it's difficult to explain. Liang begins to ponder this mission to protect Lei Ju. The insistence on keeping outsiders unaware leads him to suspect the family might be feeling guilty about something. Nanshan Academy is one of the few prestigious institutions in the Southwest, known for teaching Taoist and Confucianist techniques. Though it hasn't produced many high-level students, it once had one who reached the 3rd level. However, that same warrior was later imprisoned, tarnishing the Academy's reputation. Even so, it remains the top choice for the city's elite, and today, Nanshan Academy is welcoming a new student. Upon their arrival, the teacher asks the classmates to welcome the new student Shu Liang. The teacher then asks Liang to find a seat so the lesson can begin. Looking around, Liang notices 2 available seats. Before he can sit, Lin Bei is stopped by the teacher, who tells him he isn't permitted to attend the class. Disappointed, Lin Bei reluctantly leaves the room, though not without showing his frustration. Telepathically, he asks Liang why he's relegated to being just an assistant. Liang explains it's likely due to their differing temperaments. Lin Bei still doesn't understand, but Liang reassures him that his position is actually better for gathering information. Accepting this, Lin Bei sets out to investigate among the other assistants. This, unsurprisingly, works well as Lin Bei has a knack for striking up conversations. During a class break, our hero feels quite comfortable with the nostalgic feeling of being in a classroom. After all, back then, Liang was so talented at everything that even if his teacher wanted to, they couldn't properly criticize him. In the past, the hero was pressured to prepare for exams, but Lei Ju was quite relaxed now, which made Liang think about starting a conversation. However, just as he was about to stand up, a girl appeared to ask where Chu was from. While the girl seemed smitten with our hero, he explained that he came from Xingzhou and that his entire family had moved to the city. In response, the girl complimented his choice to come to Nanshan, but Liang said that he was more worried than happy about it. Upon hearing this, the girl asked what the newcomer was worried about. Then Liang explained that he had heard rumors about this academy being haunted recently. The girl quickly understood what the hero was referring to, and to avoid causing a stir, she checked to ensure they were alone. After confirming that nothing would be leaked, she informed him that there was indeed a spirit, but Liang didn't need to be afraid because it only targeted scoundrels. At that moment, clues began knocking on our protagonist's door. In any case, the girl explained that the hero shouldn't go around telling everyone that she had revealed this. Suddenly, someone shouted Lai Chun-Xia's name, accusing her of being indiscreet again, leaving the girl very startled. Because of this, a mysterious girl stood up with a blank expression and walked toward the boy. The man questioned whether Lai Chun-Xia had made another sarcastic comment in secret, but she denied it. Then the boy told the protagonist that if he wanted to study there in peace, he shouldn't continue poking into other people's business. However, at that moment, a superior called out Yang Xiaohu's name, and now it was his turn to be startled. This happened because the girl from before stood up to question why he was being aggressive with others again. Seeing that Madame Song was right behind him, the boy didn't hesitate to compose himself. Before that, the hero questioned whether she was also a teacher at the academy because she looked so young. Then the girl continued walking to Lei Ju's desk, where she stopped to wake him from his nap. Naturally, the boy was a bit surprised to be caught in the act, but Song let it slide and started the lesson. After being reprimanded, Yan Xiao was trying to be a good student. Not only him, but everyone in the class behaved very differently compared to how they acted with the previous teacher. With just a word from the teacher, the entire class began paying attention, and she didn't even have to raise her voice. The girl, for her part, noticed that there was a new student in the room, and having some interest in him, introduced herself as Song King Ye. She informed the class that she was the poetry and literature instructor at Nanshan Academy. Little by little, Liang began to realize how special she was. Even though she was still young, she already had profound knowledge, and throughout the lesson, she explained the material in detail, yet in a simple and enjoyable manner. After class, during the break, our hero spoke with Linbai, who informed him that he had gathered all the information. Regarding Madame Song, she was a native of Jiangnan and had only arrived at the academy a few days ago. Additionally, she was about 18 or 19 years old, almost the same age as the two of them. But obviously, this wasn't the kind of information our hero wanted to know. Because of that, Liang waited to hear the rest of the information until Linbai realized this and became embarrassed. At that point, he remembered that his main mission was to investigate the mysterious case. Thus, he explained that there were many rumors about the haunting. Everything began with a girl named Sidu Yan. She had suffered at school and ended up drowning in the lake near the mountain. But something started happening 7 days after her death. 2 more students' bodies were found in the same lake, and the conditions of their corpses were horrifying. The information now suggests that a vengeful spirit haunts this place, seeking revenge against those who mistreated her. However, if there is a vengeful spirit causing problems, the situation isn't as easy to handle as expected. Moreover, for Liang, the actions within the Li family seemed very suspicious, leading him to consider the possibility that Leiju might be one of the scoundrels. However, Linbi disagreed, arguing that considering the boy's behavior, it was more likely that he was being mistreated. At the exact moment they were discussing this, the boy from earlier surrounded Leiju along with his helpers. While they waited, the boy felt compelled to hand over his money to them. With that, Yan Xiao told the boy to leave now that he had done his part. Witnessing the situation, Linbai asked if Liang would need help, but the hero said no. As they walked, Linbai questioned if the hero wasn't too worried about it. But Liang pointed out that, judging by the way Leiju handed over the money, he was probably used to it. Thus, if they intervened now without any precautions, the two of them might be exposed, and besides, they didn't know much about Yan Xiao yet. So Linbai agreed not to do anything for now as long as no one caused trouble for him. However, just as he said that, one of the bully's helpers punched him on the back of his head. Due to his personality, this was enough to make Linbai lose his temper and break the table. At the moment of the assault, the boy was quite confused, thinking someone had touched his head. Without delay, Yan Xiao approached the newcomer, saying that since Liang had just joined, he didn't know the rules yet. To clarify, one of the helpers informed him that to ensure his safety, Liang would need to pay 5 tulls of silver every month. However, Linbai was outraged by this demand, as 5 tulls were enough to support a common family for several months. Even though everyone at Nanshan Academy came from wealthy families, this was still an absurd demand. Faced with this injustice, Linbai broke the table, arguing that it would be fair to simply go out and rob someone. But the helpers weren't going to let such boldness go unpunished, so one of them hit the boy again. This was exactly what Linbai wanted, because now that he had been hit first, it would count as self-defense. Quickly, before the situation escalated, our hero intervened, asking the boy to stay calm. Without hesitation, he pulled out the required silver taels from his clothing. Liang stated that every rule should be followed, and to build a good relationship with Xiao, he decided to pay 2 months in advance. This gesture made the boy start to like our hero, and from that point on, he promised to protect him. Liang, however, asked if Xiao would continue to protect him even outside the academy. Without thinking, one of the helpers replied affirmatively, explaining that Xiao was the heir of the Black Tiger Gang, one of the main factions in Yanzhou. With that, Liang thought it best to apologize, further inflating the boy's ego, and Yan Xiao continued enjoying the respect. With all matters resolved, the young master decided to leave, and the two of them said their goodbyes. Extremely irritated, Linbai questioned why he had been stopped, since he could have dealt with them in just a few moves. Liang explained that they couldn't cause problems yet, as the Black Tiger Gang seemed influential, and this could attract the attention of the Whale Gang. Still upset, Linbai lamented losing 10 tulls of silver without receiving any reward, but the hero assured him that Master Lei would reimburse them both later. The Whale Gang is ranked among the top 10 forces and is the only one among the 9 heavens and 10 earths that is a gang rather than a sect. However, they can rival several immortal sects in strength. This is because their members are spread across the 4 seas, dominating various businesses such as maritime transport. If the Black Tiger Gang is connected to the Whale Gang, it's no surprise that Yan Xiao is so arrogant. Nevertheless, the hero decided it would be better to first check on Leiju's situation. So before the afternoon class began, the protagonist went to the boy and asked if he needed help with Yan Xiao. But the boy refused, saying there was no need because he was already used to it. However, he asked Liang to leave quickly so people wouldn't suspect they had any sort of friendship. Our hero didn't mind, but as he was leaving, Leiju spoke again. As if in a fleeting thought, he explained that he didn't care because Yan Xiao wouldn't live for much longer. Naturally, the protagonist questioned what the boy meant by that statement, but Lei Ju just shook his head, saying it was nothing important, which left Liang quite worried. The afternoon at the academy passed without any strange incidents, and after school, it was time to go home. As they left the academy, Linbai mentioned that the midday incident had been thoroughly investigated. Apparently, the Black Tiger Gang merely uses the Whale Gang's name, taking advantage of connections that don't actually exist. However, in Yanzhou City, they are indeed influential because the gang has cultivators ranging from the 1st to the 3rd realm. After all, local forces and hired ones are not the same, as even if Master Lai has money, he can't maintain strong guards for long. So, if a gang can sustain dozens of cultivators and even one at the 3rd level, they can be considered influential. But this certainly isn't something that would cause trouble for the 2 cultivators. Just as they were searching for the boy, Yan Xiao appeared with his subordinates. Quickly, our hero greeted him in a friendly manner. Xiao responded in kind, even considering recruiting Chu Liang as his little brother someday. However, our hero reminded Xiao that he had asked him to investigate the Black Tiger Gang, and that's exactly what Liang had done. In that case, the troublemaker asked what Liang planned to do now. And in the same way he was intimidated by Xiao, our hero turned the tables, demanding his money back. While walking through the school, the teacher noticed a commotion in the central area. With many students commenting about punches and kicks, it was clear that a fight was happening. Quickly, the teacher headed to the source of the shouting to find out what was going on. As a teacher, she naturally ordered the students to separate the ones fighting. She instructed the boys to make way and explain what was happening. Then one of them mentioned that the new student was involved. In this case, Song began to believe that Yang Xiao who was bullying our hero. However, the students didn't heed her request to let her through, which greatly irritated her. As a result, she shouted from a distance, warning that this was her final notice to Yan Xiaohu before she reported him to the principal for expulsion. At that moment, the students finally parted, and Ms. Song was confronted with an unthinkable scene. Yan was the one who had been beaten and almost crying from the pain. He explained that he hadn't done anything and hadn't even fought back. The situation made no sense to the teacher because Yan was already notorious for causing trouble, and he had learned martial arts from young age. Furthermore, the boy always had 2 faction members with him, but they weren't in their usual condition either. Unexpectedly for the teacher, the guards with 2 men kneeling and trembling beside Yan. In this case, the teacher was confused and began questioning where the aggressor was. She was very upset because not only had the hero caused a fight on campus, but he also tried to run away from the problem. Therefore, she called out to all the students, demanding that the responsible party step forward. With an intimidating expression, she ordered the culprits to reveal themselves. During the discussion, both Linbi and Liang were exposed by their classmates. Naturally, they hadn't expected this to happen, but now the furious teacher standing before them was their main concern. In this case, the hero apologized and used Yan's extortion for a monthly toll as an excuse for the altercation. Seeing this, the teacher understood that, unfortunately, she couldn't reprimand the student just yet. However, the more she thought about the situation, the angrier she became over her inability to act. Regardless, she warned the hero not to hit anyone on academy grounds. Liang explained that he had also wanted to resolve the matter peacefully by paying the fee. Unfortunately, his helper got angry and started a fight with the 3 boys. At that moment, Liang glanced at Linbai, hoping he would agree with his account. Buying into his friend's narrative, the boy began shouting that he had broken a bone and needed to see a doctor. Unexpectedly, this flimsy excuse was enough for the 2 of them to avoid trouble for now. On the other hand, Yan was reprimanded by Ms. Song, who said she would personally request a punishment for him. With that, the teacher suppressed her anger and ordered everyone to leave. In Yan's group, his guards were very concerned about the young master and decided to take him to a doctor. However, just as they were about to do so, a voice shouted for them to stop. Unfortunately for the guards, the voice belonged to Linbai, so the 2 immediately knelt without hesitation. However, the hero told them not to worry, assuring them that they were not unreasonable despite everything. Without wasting time, Liang asked Linbai for a sword coin and the boy obliged. The hero handed over the coin, saying it was for medical expenses, but he instructed the guards to deliver it personally to their gang leader. Obviously, the guards accepted the coin while kneeling, even though they didn't understand its significance. Liang, for his part, made a point to reiterate his request for them to deliver it to the leader until they understood. Terrified, they ran off without looking back, forgetting to take the young master with them. Embarrassed, the guards returned to fetch the boy and ran off again. With the situation resolved, Linbai questioned why Liang had given them the coin. The hero explained that he didn't want the story to drag on. Linbai understood the reasoning but still questioned why the coin given had been his. The hero replied that he still needed his own coin to resolve another matter. Later, the protagonist returned to the mansion where he was working as a bodyguard. According to what he had heard, Leju used to be a dedicated student but had suddenly changed his behavior. Leju, for his part, noticed Liang's presence in the room and was startled for not having realized it earlier. The hero placed the silver coin from before, which had been stolen, on the table. Without wasting time, Liang explained that he had retrieved it from the bully and assured that from now on, there would be no more trouble. In response, the young master commented that he had seen the fight between the two earlier and thanked them for everything. However, Liang made sure to emphasize that such actions were merely his duty as a cultivator of justice. Still, there was one more thing Liang wanted to ask since a few days ago, Leju mentioned that Yan would die. The question left the boy visibly startled, and he hesitated to respond. Thus, the hero took the initiative to ask if the comment was related to Sidu Yan, but Leju said he wasn't sure. To the protagonist, it was clear that the boy knew something, so he asked if it was because they had mistreated her. Once again, Leju refused to answer, this time slamming the table in frustration. In this case, the protagonist explained that the boy's father had hired the Shu Mountain sect on a daily basis, and that if they didn't resolve this soon, it would be worse for the family. This argument was convincing enough to make the boy reconsider. Bringing up the subject again, Liang decided to ask if the vengeful spirit was indeed Sidu Yan. Carefully, the boy replied that it might be. The frightened expression on his face made Liang suspect that Leju might have also been involved in the bullying. However, without hesitation, the boy clarified that he had never been involved in such things. Therefore, the hero asked who the people involved were. After thinking for a moment, the young master named Zhang Kong, Wu Shou, and Yu Xiaohu, and Chen Da. After that, Leju recounted the story of Sidu Yan, who had been just an ordinary girl. She wasn't a beauty, but her family was good and her life was prosperous, allowing her to live happily. However, 2 years ago, her house caught fire, and although she escaped with her life, half of her face was burned. This became a traumatic experience for her. When she returned to school, everyone focused only on her appearance, and despite her attempts to hide the scar, it couldn't be fully concealed. Among the 4 boys who mistreated her, each made fun of her in a different way. At a certain point, the girl decided to leave school, but Leju, as her only friend, encouraged her not to give up. Thus, the timid Leju and the ostracized Sidu Yan grew closer, and besides encouraging her to study, he also helped her with her tasks. Furthermore, Leju often stood up for her, which eventually made him one of the victims. They had already been friendly before the accident, but afterward, they became close friends, and little by little, Leju managed to cheer her up. What he didn't expect, however, was that one day while they were reading together by a lake, he would suddenly fall asleep. When he woke up, he found himself tied up by the very girl he had tried to help. The situation escalated and Situ even pointed a blade at him. She was so distraught that she confessed her love for Leju, saying she wanted to turn him into a monster like her so they could be together forever. Naturally, Leju tried to convince her that she was wrong, but she was completely hysterical. All she wanted at that moment was for her love to resemble her so they would never be apart again. Thanks to his efforts, the boy managed to free himself before the knife could come close to his face. Fighting for his life, he pushed Sega back, calling her crazy. When Leju escaped, he ran without looking back. The next day, however, the girl didn't show up to class, and everyone thought it was strange. But when they arrived at the lake, they found that Situ had taken her own life by the shore. Initially, Leju was deeply confused. He didn't know whether what he had done was right or wrong, but he knew that calling her crazy had triggered what happened. 7 days later, the bodies of Wu Shou and Zhang Kong were also found at the same lake. Without delay, rumors of a vengeful spirit spread throughout the academy, and the boy believed the same. It was clear to him that his old friend had returned to take revenge on everyone who had mistreated her. But he didn't know if he would also be targeted, which terrified him. The whole story left our hero deep in thought as he left the young master's room. During a walk, Liang encountered Linbei, who asked what had happened. The hero explained that at the moment, Chenda was in hiding and that for now, Yan would not be able to leave his house. If Sidu Yan truly was a vengeful spirit, the incidents would continue occurring only at the Academy's lake. Therefore, Liang informed Linbei that he would investigate the matter, while Linbei would be responsible for watching over Leju. Additionally, Linbei warned the hero of the dangers involved, but Liang was confident, believing that Situ was merely the spirit of an ordinary girl. To avoid drawing too much attention, the protagonist flew to the lake instead of using his flying sword. Upon arriving, the hero landed in a random area and immediately began searching for clues. It was evident that a night like this was particularly inviting for many predatory spirits. In this case, Liang decided to suppress his energy and patiently wait for something to happen. It didn't take long before something appeared at the edge of the lake. Using his divine sense to scan the area, the protagonist identified it as a woman. He moved to attack, but as soon as he revealed his position, his target vanished. Even for a spirit, disappearing like that was impossible, leaving Liang quite puzzled. While he was thinking, something began approaching from the treetops. Suddenly, this presence attacked the hero, who barely managed to defend himself with his flying sword. After defending himself, it became clear that his opponent wasn't a malicious spirit due to the weapon being used. The two combatants separated after their weapons clashed. The hero deduced that his opponent's cultivation level was close to his own. The quality of the jade weapon was undoubtedly superior to his sword. However, before he could think further, he got a better look at his opponent and realized it was Teacher Song. Not only did he realize this, but so did Ms. Song, who was visibly confused by the encounter. This revelation shocked the hero, but what surprised him even more was the difference in the girl's chest. In just half a night, the teacher's figure had changed significantly, becoming far more pronounced. Regardless, the two asked simultaneously if the other was a cultivator, making the interaction slightly awkward. Switching questions, they both simultaneously asked what the other was doing there. Song started to feel embarrassed and told the hero to stop copying her. As a gentleman, the protagonist allowed Song to speak first. The teacher promptly recalled that she had just seen her student acting suspiciously and asked if he was a cultivator. The hero explained that he was, in fact, a disciple of the Shu sect, hired to protect a student. In turn, Song revealed that she was from the Jamin Confucian Hall and had also been sent, but she enrolled as a teacher to avoid raising suspicion. Understanding why she seemed so young, the hero explained that he was only there to complete a mission. Changing the subject, he commented that Ms. Song must already be aware of Sidu Yan, which was precisely why he was there. Song admitted she had been observing the area for 2 days, but had seen nothing except Liang himself. Regardless, Liang suggested they exchange information to solve the mystery, and the teacher asked what he wanted to know. Without hesitation, the hero asked about the difference in the size of Song's chest. Initially, the teacher didn't understand, but she quickly grew embarrassed as she explained that she didn't want to appear vulgar in class. Realizing what she was saying, she shouted for Liang to lead if he had nothing else to contribute to the mystery. Apologizing, Liang confessed he was merely curious. He then returned to the mission's topic, and regarding the victims' bodies, Song confirmed it was likely a spirit. However, she felt it wasn't just a vengeful spirit, but something much stronger. Liang considered this a valid point, as spirits of that kind were not rational and would hardly orchestrate something as complex as luring students to the lake. A normal person who isn't a cultivator doesn't have a strong soul, meaning resentment alone wouldn't suffice. However, if someone managed to bypass that rule, the spirit's power could grow without limits. High-ranking spirits either transform into ghosts and rely on luck to gain strength, or had strong souls during their lifetime. The girl, however, did not meet either of the two conditions for high-ranking spirits, since she was an ordinary person without cultivation. In this case, Song suggested that the deaths might be caused by other spirits or possibly a demonic cultivator. Some demonic cultivators specialize in refining vengeful souls to use as tools or weapons, as seen in the sect of the Hell King. The hero then shared some information about Lei Ju, but refrained from mentioning his personal story. Liang only provided the names of a few students who could be the next targets. Hearing this, Song ensured she would check on the well-being of Chen Da and Yan Xiaohu the next day. In the 9 heavens and 10 earths, there are only 2 Confucian sects. One is the Shenlong Academy, supported by the imperial court, which makes it their primary cultivation base. The second is an independently established Confucian Hall. This is the Jiangnan Confucian Hall, originally founded by powerful individuals who gathered in Jiangnan to exchange knowledge. Someone proposed naming the location the Confucian Hall, and since that moment, it has become an honor in Confucianism. Any Confucian or Taoist recognized by the hall could have their name inscribed within it, passing their legacy to future generations. Countless Confucian scholars have made this their life's goal. Over time, the hall also developed its own legacy, transforming it into one of the 10 great sects. This entire story was shared with Linbei, who was quite surprised to learn that Miss Song was a member of the hall. Since Confucian scholars are responsible for academic affairs, the hero explained that they didn't need to worry too much. Considering this, Linbei thought for a moment and, in a rather shameless tone, remarked that he was starting to like Confucian scholars. Immediately, Liang warned that if Ms. Song found out about Linbei's thoughts, she would likely hit him with her jade staff. The next day, during the lunch break in one of the academy's side rooms, Linbei asked if Chen De was truly dead, prompting Liang to ask Song to recount what happened. After thinking it over, the girl explained that everything had been very strange. After the morning class, she had personally visited the boy's home. Upon arriving, she found his family devastated, and the atmosphere was incredibly odd. According to Chenda's family, after the deaths of his classmates, he had locked himself in his room and refused to come out. During this time, he only opened the door to receive food from his parents, who brought it to his room. The previous night, however, when his father went to deliver food once again, he found his wife already at the boy's door with a tray in hand. The husband found this very strange because it had been his wife who had asked him to deliver the food that evening. When he returned to their quarters, he confirmed that something was amiss. That was because his wife, who was lying in bed, had asked him to take food to their son and was still there resting. With that realization, the man immediately felt a sense of dread and rushed toward his son's room, expecting the worst. When he opened the door to check on his son, he found him on the floor, completely incinerated as if burned by a blowtorch. However, there was no smell or any signs of fire in the room. Additionally, the boy hadn't screamed or cried for help. It all had happened in mere moments. Ms. Song made sure to examine the body and found that the yin-kai energy surrounding the corpse was extremely strong, indicating the presence of a spirit. In light of this, a hero understood the situation and noted that not many spirits could freely change their appearance. Linbei, however, commented that imitating a human form wasn't too difficult, but transforming into a specific person was. Regardless, the hero recalled that behind the power of transformation were unique races like the Fox tribe. However, Linbei speculated that among spirits, it might be a disguised spirit, to which Liang agreed. Understanding that only one type of spirit among them could transform at will, Song theorized that the earlier students had been deceived into going to the lake. Yet, she still couldn't comprehend how Sidu Yan could have gained such great power in such a short time as a spirit. And if she wasn't responsible, Song had no idea why the spirit was targeting only those who had mistreated Situ. It was impossible to determine where the disguised spirit was hiding, making this mission potentially 100 times harder than anticipated. But with a laugh, Linbei reassured Song that she had nothing to worry about. As disciples of Shu Mountain, they had a duty to eliminate evil spirits and help those in need. Later, at the Lai residence, our hero poured himself a cup of tea. While enjoying its flavor, Linbei remained nervous and impatient. Losing his patience, Linbei shouted, demanding that Liang come up with a solution since he had brought him along precisely for his intelligence. In response, Liang reminded him that it was Linbei who had made the promise to Song, and their job was solely to protect Li Ju. Linbei then tried to convince the protagonist by asking if he didn't want to see Ms. Song's sweet smile. Unfortunately for him, all the hero wanted was to fight evil spirits. However, the presence of the disguised spirit posed a significant problem, and it needed to be eliminated as quickly as possible. Regardless of its identity, its actions followed the girl's revenge plan, so eventually it would catch it. For this reason, Liang left Linbei in charge of Lei Ju while he went to find Yang Xiaohu. Before agreeing to the plan, Linbei questioned why the hero was leaving again. After all, the last time he left, Liang ran into Ms. Song, and today Linbei wanted to come along. In response, the protagonist assured him that he had a way to identify the spirit. Understanding that he had nothing similar to offer, Linbei accepted defeat but asked the hero to bring back a midnight snack when he returned. Later, at the Yan residence, the protagonist knocked on the door, apologizing for the disturbance. Promptly, one of the guards answered but, due to the inconvenient timing, told Liang to leave. However, the hero had prepared a bribe, knowing such a situation might arise. After receiving the silver, the guard's demeanor changed completely, as if speaking to a family friend. Unfortunately, Yan wasn't home. Naturally, our hero assumed Yan was recovering at home from his injuries since he hadn't attended the academy. In this case, Liang asked where his dear friend had gone. Understanding that the visitor didn't know the young master well, the guard informed him that Yan was at the Bright Moon Tower. The Bright Moon Tower was Yanzhou's most prominent commercial alley and a favorite gathering spot for scholars. In this world, a distinction existed between prostitutes and brothels. Simple prostitution was hidden, like the giant spider Liang had defeated earlier. Brothels, on the other hand, were more like a show business, focusing on scale and socialization. Most of the time, the women would simply drink with the men, but it wasn't impossible to arrange something more if the lady agreed. However, even after spending a significant amount of money, securing such an opportunity wasn't easy. On the lobby stage of the tower's first floor, several women danced accompanied by musicians with only 5 guests watching from the audience. The second floor housed private seating areas separated by curtains. The third floor, however, was a space reserved for the bold and generous, where Yang Xiaohu belonged. Upon arriving, the hero was greeted by a young woman who asked if he wanted to go upstairs. Liang replied that he was looking for Yang Xiaohu and asked if the boy was there. Without hesitation, the woman promised to send someone to arrange the meeting, secretly admiring Liang's handsome appearance. On the third floor, one of Yan's assistants asked the hero to wait while he looked for him. However, the protagonist declined the offer, stating that he could find Yan on his own. When he reached the area where Yan was likely to be, Liang introduced himself to 2 guards, claiming to be a friend of Yan's and searching for him. The guards, however, said they had never heard of the hero and that their orders were to let no one in. In this situation, the protagonist saw no choice but to assert himself by force. Inside the hall, Yan was asking about the whereabouts of Ms. Rui and when she would arrive. One of the girls informed him that she was currently occupied but would be there very soon. Yan had spent thousands of silver tells just to speak with her, and yet, he wasn't first in line. Humiliated at the academy the day before, he had been feeling depressed, and now, even as he tried to enjoy himself, he still had to wait. Frustrated, he raised his hand to slam the table. Unexpectedly, the door suddenly burst open and Yan's 2 guards flew into the room. In response to this affront, the boy stood up, ready to confront the intruder. Facing a shadowy figure of the hero, Yan demanded to know who in Yanzhou City dared to provoke him. But of all the people he could imagine, the worst possible one appeared before him. Just a day earlier, Yan had been crying to his father for help with his revenge while the servant was delivering the sword coin to the gang leader. The moment his father realized what it was about, the first thing he did was knock Yan on the head for causing trouble. With his previous experience in mind, the boy knew he couldn't afford to offend Liang again. Without wasting time, the hero calmly stated that he was there for a visit and ordered the guards to leave, which Yan obeyed immediately. The women in the room were left baffled, wondering why the city's little tyrant was so afraid of this handsome young man. Regardless, Yan quickly invited Liang to sit at the center of the table and thanked him. As Liang sat, the women began to view him differently, seeing him as both attractive and capable. To distract them, Liang pointed to something outside the window, prompting them to turn around. In that moment, he knocked both of them unconscious with his demon-revealing block without a shred of mercy. Naturally, Yan was shocked by the scene, given that his family was steeped in gambling and prostitution businesses. Since childhood, he had seen all sorts of oddities, but this block was something entirely new to him. To clarify, Liang explained that he hadn't harmed them in any lasting way and that the blow wouldn't cause any permanent damage. Changing the subject, he warned Yan that he was in danger. However, Yan sarcastically commented that having someone like lying around was danger enough. Quickly, the hero updated him on Chen De's death and informed him that he was the last target on the revenge list. Liang also warned him about the disguised spirit, leaving Yan visibly anxious. Although Yan was a cultivator surrounded by powerful individuals, he knew a vengeful spirit couldn't harm him. But if it really was a disguised spirit, it could easily kill a low-level first-rank warrior like himself. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Yan dropped to his knees, begging the hero to save his life. Liang reassured him that saving him was precisely why he had come, and with his method for identifying spirits, everyone would be checked. Still desperate, Yan requested that Liang check the two women in the room, but to their fortune or misfortune, he had already done so. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. While Yan called for the person to enter, the hero hid himself and the unconscious women. The person who entered was the receptionist from earlier, who came under the pretext of justifying Rui's delay. Since Rui had been summoned shortly before Yan's arrival, she couldn't simply leave her prior client. Approaching, the receptionist informed Yan that he would have to wait a little longer, leaving him visibly on edge. Suspicious of everyone and everything, Yan immediately stood and ordered the receptionist not to come near him. Watching from the shadows, Liang observed as the receptionist expressed confusion, asking why he was acting this way since they'd been friends for so long. She urged Yan to trust her and mentioned that during his absence, Rui had been thinking about him. At this, Yan completely lost his composure. However, the absence of the two girls he had dismissed earlier left the receptionist puzzled. At that moment, the hero emerged from behind her. Somewhat anxiously, Yan assured her that she would see the two women soon enough. Without hesitation, the hero used his spiritual weapon to knock her unconscious as well. Unfortunately, this woman also wasn't the disguised spirit. Nonetheless, Yan dragged her over to hide her with the others. While doing so, he questioned why Liang was attracting the spirit's attention instead of staying home under guard. The hero explained that while staying home might offer temporary safety, protection could weaken over time, and even if it didn't, Yan would face daily danger. Just the thought of living a life in hiding convinced Yan to stay where he was. For now, he continued hiding the bodies until his guards once again burst into the room due to an intruder. Furious, Yan complained that while he used to be the tyrant, now someone other than Liang was causing problems. However, Yan wasn't expecting the intruder to be none other than Teacher Song, who had come to reprimand him. The moment she took in the scene before her, all three stood in awkward silence, unsure of what to say. Naturally, the teacher questioned what kind of wickedness the two were up to. In an attempt to shift blame, Yan immediately claimed that Liang had forced him to do such things to the women. Trying to explain, Liang stated that he was there to protect Yan from an evil spirit, but the teacher remained unconvinced. When she glanced at one of the unconscious women, her expression turned to disgust toward the hero. In response, Liang tried to explain that he had only been testing if the woman was a spirit and that the situation was merely an unfortunate side effect. Regardless, Yan ordered his two guards to leave the room immediately. Getting straight to the point, Yan asked the teacher why she was there. She replied that, like Chu Liang, she was also there to protect him. However, she continued to express her anger at Liang's method of identifying a spirit by attacking first. In his mind, Liang couldn't comprehend why he was always seen as a pervert, even though he was just there to eliminate spirits. At that moment, another knock came at the door, and the earlier plan was quickly put back into action. This time, however, the visitor was none other than Ms. Rudy, leaving Yan visibly excited. Entering the room, Rui asked if she had kept her client waiting too long, but Yan assured her that seeing her made all of his anger disappear. Rui moved closer, complimenting Yan and telling him that he was the only one who treated her well, unlike other men. Nonetheless, Yan remembered the situation at hand and instructed her to sit on the opposite side of the table. Smiling slightly, she asked why her client was acting so strangely today. In response, Yan gave the excuse that he wanted to sit across from her to get a better look at her face. Accepting the explanation, she saw no reason to refuse, especially since she found the arrangement more comfortable. Changing the subject, Rui asked why her client wasn't at the academy since it wasn't a holiday. A moment of silence fell over the room before Liang subtly revealed himself from the shadows. Naturally, he couldn't tell the truth, so he simply said that he hadn't felt like going. Rui reminded Yan of how he had once said he liked the new instructor so much that he'd never miss another class. Unfortunately for Yan, the very instructor in question was overhearing the entire conversation. Embarrassed, Yan shouted at Rui to stop saying such nonsense. Finding his reaction odd, Rui changed the subject to the boy's injuries. She asked if he had been in a fight, leaving Yan no choice but to admit that he had. Concerned, Rui told him she was worried, noting that she had never seen him hurt before. She added that whoever had harmed him must be awful, and went so far as to curse the hero. Yan, naturally, tried to downplay her words, asking her not to say such things. For Rui, there was no need for him to be so composed. After all, anyone who messed with the Black Tiger gang never got away unscathed. Once again, the young master begged her to stop, making it clear that his family always operated within the law. Rui's client's unusual behavior left her increasingly puzzled. At that moment, Liang appeared behind her, and Yan warned that she was about to feel a little pain. Laughing, Rui assumed her client was joking again, but in an instant, she was knocked unconscious, leaving Liang and Song to press Yan about his earlier statements. Feigning ignorance, Yan claimed it was all lies. At that moment, another person barged in, kicking the guards back into the room. This situation was beginning to seriously irritate the young master. Fed up with his guards' inefficiency, he fired them on the spot, demoting them to work as restaurant doormen. The intruder, however, wasn't a random person. It was Linbei, who had come to deliver a warning. But of course, Linbei was immediately distracted by the presence of teacher Song. In response, Liang questioned why his colleague was there and asked about Lei Ju's status. The reason for Linbei's visit was precisely about Lei Ju. He had disappeared. Both the hero and Ms. Song were baffled as to how this could have happened. Linbei explained that he had looked around and saw no movement, but when he entered the room, the window was open, and there was no sign of the boy. The hero asked if his colleague had heard anything unusual. Linbei admitted he hadn't, and he suspected the boy had run away on his own. In this case, the protagonist thought that Lei Ju might be hiding from them, but couldn't understand how he had escaped. At that moment, Ms. Song interrupted, suggesting that she might be able to find him. Naturally, the two warriors were curious to know if the teacher had a way to track him. In response, she explained that it was a Confucian ability. With graceful movements, she summoned a golden leaf inscribed with the scripture. Throwing the leaf into the air with the boy's name written on it, it began flying in his direction. Before leaving, someone needed to stay behind to protect Yan and look after the unconscious women. Linbei volunteered for the task immediately. The hero didn't argue and accepted, setting off with Ms. Song. Left alone with Linbei, Yan asked what they should do next. After a moment of thought, Linbei suggested they place another order, leaving the young master confused. Clarifying, Linbei explained that when the women woke up, the two of them could play music and dance. Yan asked if it was really okay to do that, and if it wasn't dangerous. Linbei assured him there was no need to worry since he was there to protect him. Still, considering the last person tasked with protecting him had vanished, Yan hoped this time might be different. Back in the pursuit of Lei Ju, Liang and Ms. Song were getting closer to the academy's lake. To make conversation, the hero complimented her ability, saying it was impressive to track someone with just their name. She modestly replied that it wasn't much since her cultivation level was low, limiting her ability to track within the same city. Nonetheless, Song explained that the leaf came from a book gifted by her master, which had many uses beyond tracking. This left the hero pondering how fortunate she was to have such a generous master. However, for some reason, this thought saddened him. After all, it was rare to receive such rewards from masters during missions in most sects. In Confucianism, however, where morality and knowledge held more importance than strength, such generosity was common. Despite not having high cultivation, Song's respect among her elders allowed her to receive valuable items. When they reached the mountain, they quickly spotted Lei Ju and moved to rescue him. But as they approached, they remained silent and overheard the boy crying and lamenting the deaths caused by Situ. He confessed that he was the one who had killed the girl, questioning why she was targeting others instead of him. The hero immediately understood that the boy was hiding something. On the day Situ tried to ruin his face, Lei Ju had been so terrified that he accidentally pushed her into the lake. Overcome with fear, he had run home without looking back. It took him a long time to realize that falling into the lake could be dangerous for her. But when he returned to check, a crowd had already gathered, talking about the girl who had drowned in the lake. Lei Ju insisted he hadn't meant to do it and hadn't wanted to kill her. Terrified and guilt-ridden, he had spent days running from the truth, but now he was determined to confront his fears. However, despite standing at the lake's edge for a long time, nothing had happened. Lei Ju wondered aloud if the girl's spirit wasn't there or if she simply didn't want to appear. Either way, he decided to enter the lake to atone for his sins. Even from a distance, Ms. Song realized that the boy intended to take his own life. Before Song could act, the hero stopped her from interfering. Meanwhile, in the lake, Lei Ju mustered his courage and dove deeper. Song, desperate to intervene, tried to push past Liang, but at that moment, the spirit finally began to appear. Unexpectedly, instead of attacking, the spirit entered the lake and connected with the boy, pulling him out of the water. Lei Ju was thrown onto the shore, coughing from nearly drowning, and asked if it was Situ who had saved him. Then, like a purple flash of lightning, the girl's spirit manifested before him. Seeing her again, all Leju could do was cry at the sight of his old friend. From afar, Liang and Song could sense that the yin kai emanating from the spirit was far beyond that of a typical vengeful ghost. Her solid form alone confirmed their suspicions, even though her level of power still didn't make sense. It was now certain that Sivian was a disguised spirit. Through his tears, Leju pleaded with her, saying she could do whatever she wanted to him if she would stop killing others. Unexpectedly, the spirit responded that she didn't hate him and had no intention of killing him. Confused, Leju tried to argue. The spirit yelled at him to leave. When he asked why, Situ began trembling and radiating even more energy. Suddenly, she lost control and transformed into a true malevolent spirit. As her transformation unfolded, Leju attempted to flee, heeding her earlier advice. But when her disfigured face emerged, her personality shifted entirely. Now, all she wanted was to kill the man she had once loved in life. Unable to hold back any longer, Song sprang into action to confront the monster. She activated her jade weapon and charged toward the spirit, nearly striking its face. Unfortunately, the spirit dodged, prompting Song to throw her weapon, which managed to knock the spirit to the ground. It was the perfect moment to act, but Leju stepped in front of her, shielding his old friend. Song tried to explain that Situ was already dead, and that the only way for her to move on was for her spirit to be dispelled. Despite going against the boy's wishes, Liang agreed. After all, when it came to spirits, there was no distinction between good and evil. Their duty was simply to eliminate them. While the two debated, the spirit took advantage of the distraction, reappearing behind Leju and preparing to attack Song. Fortunately, she managed to dodge, though the attacks still caused significant damage. Song believed the spirit was trying to create a diversion to escape. Wasting no time, she activated another leaf from her sacred book, sending it into the sky. The leaf's power formed a barrier around the area, dispersing the dense mist, much to Liang's amazement. In mere seconds, Song reappeared beside the boy, who was still unharmed. As she approached, she advised Leju to stay close to her. However, as she took a closer look, she realized something was wrong. Leju, noticing her hesitation, asked why she had stopped so suddenly. But standing beside him was another Leju, asking the exact same question. Both turned to look at each other, startled by the strange situation. Unsure what to do, both the imposter and the real one asked what was going on. Song, unable to discern which was the real Leju, grew increasingly alarmed. Both claimed to be the real one, acting and speaking identically. At this point, Liang arrived, and Song asked if he had any idea how to identify the imposter. Slowly approaching with his demon-revealing block hidden, Liang explained that he had some experience with situations like this. When he reached them, the hero declared that only the real Leju would know his name and asked what it was. One of the Lejus quickly replied, Chu Liang, while the other hesitated, unable to answer. The Leju, who remained silent, began to look nervous, and Liang shot him a knowing, malicious glance. Unexpectedly, however, the hero struck the one who had answered, not the one who had stayed silent. Even more surprisingly, his hunch was correct. Liang activated his imperial sword, sending it directly into the spirit's chest. In those few seconds before the spirit dissipated completely, Saichu looked tenderly at her old friend, and the two shared their final moments together. Then the spirit vanished entirely before Leju's eyes. After everything was over, Miss Song couldn't help but express her curiosity about how Liang identified the imposter, given that it had answered his name correctly. In response, the hero explained that he had never told Leju his name but assumed the spirit would know it from watching him at the academy. Furthermore, the question was simply a ruse to get close enough to use the revealing block. With that, Song thanked him for his help, and Liang gave his usual response about it being his duty as a defender of justice. In truth, he felt relieved to be thanked instead of penalized for meddling in Confucian affairs. Meanwhile, Leju remained by the lake, bidding farewell to his old friend. Liang advised him that if he truly wanted redemption, he should confess his crime to the authorities rather than trying to escape through self-harm. After some thought, Leju agreed, and even from a distance, Song seemed slightly shaken by it all. Still, she didn't let the emotions consume her, knowing the situation had already been resolved. Elsewhere, a hooded man trembled with rage, slamming his hand down to shatter a candle and scattering it across the floor. Refining a disguised spirit was incredibly expensive, and with just a few more souls, he could have been first in line for promotion. However, unforeseen circumstances had occurred, and outsiders had destroyed his disguised spirit in just a few days. Consumed by anger, the man destroyed his table with his malicious powers, shouting in fury. Now he was determined to find the people who had dared to interfere with his plans. Back at the Lai residence in Yanzhou City, our hero continued practicing his cultivation. Returning to the White Tower's room, he entered the reward hall once more. It was time to reward himself with a bit of happiness again. Some time ago, the hero had wondered if the tower might be some kind of malicious magical tool that traded treasures for expelling spirits. However, based on his observations, it didn't seem to interfere with the expulsion or reincarnation of spirits. Ultimately, the golden image extracted was just a mark, and when refined spiritually, it mirrored the form of the White Tower externally. Within the White Tower, however, only a golden, unconscious image remained. As such, Liang had come to see the tower as more of a positive energy space that encouraged him to defeat spirits. Having no further concerns about the White Tower, he proceeded to claim his reward. Upon activating the mechanism, he received a spirit exchange spell. This spell allowed the temporary exchange of spirits between two individuals for 3 breaths and was recommended for use within the same species. This time, however, the reward felt somewhat underwhelming to Lian. Straightforwardly, such talismans were often used by cultivators to store magical power, with jade talismans capable of storing up to 80%. Occasionally, jade talismans yielded miraculous results, for example, enabling complex spells to produce instant effects. But this particular reward lacked significant functionality and wasn't nearly as valuable as a white talisman. Regardless, the protagonist decided to exit the viewing space for now. Upon leaving, he encountered Linbei, who informed him he had been waiting for Liang to wake up for quite some time. Without wasting a moment, Linbei asked how the mission had concluded, and the hero explained that everything had gone according to plan. On the other hand, Linbei shared that he had also succeeded in his task, even managing to get Yan to swear to change his behavior. Liang then recounted the entire process of exorcising the spirit to Linbei. Still, Linbei found it strange that the girl's spirit hadn't targeted Yan first. In this case, he remarked that it seemed Yan hadn't been on the revenge list. After all, Yan hadn't discriminated against the girl for her appearance, even though he had extorted money from her. Yan's extortion was indiscriminate, targeting everyone equally. Ultimately, Sidu Yan's vengeance had only targeted those who directly harmed her, which made a lot of sense to Linbei. The next day at Nanshan Academy, the novice teacher was also training her cultivation. After spending so many consecutive nights at the academy, she finally found some time to rest. When night falls, a loud noise begins to echo throughout the mansion, waking Song. She quickly changes clothes and climbs out the window to investigate. Based on the sound and what she sees, it appears to be a lost child. Song approaches, gently asking the child what they're doing there. But this was no ordinary child. In her thoughts, Song reasons that since the spirit issue at the academy had been resolved, this must truly be a lost child. She reassures the child not to be afraid and invites them to follow their older sister. At that moment, the child turns and releases a malevolent spell aimed directly at her. The sensation of her spirit being struck by a heavy hammer makes Song immediately realize she's dealing with spiritual magic. After being hit, her movements become sluggish, and she realizes she needs to escape quickly. However, as she attempts to flee, hands emerge from the ground, grabbing at her. She bites her tongue in frustration, hoping her body will recover soon. But the sinister key continues to chase her, and by the time she notices, it's too late. The creature grabs her and wraps an arm around her neck. Song begins to suspect this isn't a coincidence. Too many spirits have appeared recently. As expected, the mastermind behind it all emerges. The demonic cultivator is pleased to have captured the Confucian Hall girl. Before acting further, he explains that this is all happening because of the audacity of meddling with his disguised spirit. He had promised Sidu Yan 3 victims in exchange for collecting souls for him, but his plan had been thwarted. Furious that Song was responsible for destroying his spirit, the cultivator activates a demonic power, vowing she'll pay for her actions. Song, however, doesn't back down and activates her golden book for support in the fight. The treasure can control 3 spirits, but it only manages to push them back a few steps, confirming that she's up against a formidable opponent. Facing a demonic cultivator with strange abilities, escape becomes her top priority. But, unsurprisingly, the cultivator has no intention of letting her go. He pulls a large slingshot from his robe, preparing a shot that lands directly in her chest. Song falls to the ground, unable to move. The sensation is more paralyzing than the earlier spell, even her fingers are frozen. This weapon, Soul Nail, is a tool from the Hell King sect. Invisible and intangible, it's designed to pierce the soul, preventing any ability from being used. The demonic cultivator approaches and begins manipulating Song with a mere gesture. Without wasting time, he binds her with a spiritual chain. As a last act, Song manages to drop a page from her book onto the ground inscribed with Linbei's name. In a private room, Linbei is thoroughly enjoying himself with 2 women from the earlier entertainment house. The women bicker over who gets to undress him first. One takes the lead, announcing her intentions, to which Linbei, in his typical perverted manner, urges her to hurry, claiming he can't wait any longer. Unexpectedly, the woman slaps him hard across the face, followed by several more blows. Completely caught off guard, Linbei begins thrashing until he snaps back to reality. Opening his eyes, he finds a piece of paper stuck to his face. As he reads it, Liang arrives to see what's going on. Without delay, Liang questions whether this is a lost item from Miss Song. Upon closer inspection, he notices Linbei's name written on the page. Perplexed, Linbei asks why she would send him something like this. Excitedly, he convinces himself that she must be interested in him, while Liang calmly states that she's in danger. An awkward silence falls as the two stare at each other. Finally, Linbei breaks the tension, asking why Liang believes she's in danger. Liang explained to Linbei that the item Song sent was a treasure given to her by her master, and something she wouldn't send away frivolously. He believes she must have encountered an overwhelming danger and sent the page to them because they were the only cultivators in the city. Linbei, puzzled, asked why she had written his name instead of the hero's. To dispel his illusion, Liang explained that his name was harder to write. Looking back at the page, Linbei noticed that the writing had been done hastily, confirming that Song was truly in grave danger. Linbei then asked what they should do about it. After analyzing the situation, Liang suggested they split up. Linbei would go to the sect to get reinforcements while he would attempt to rescue Song. Naturally, Linbei found the decision odd as Liang had just said their enemy was extremely powerful. Liang clarified that he would only assess the situation and asked Linbei to contact his master once he reached the sect. Linbei, however, thought the hero's plan put him in unnecessary danger. He suggested that Liang go to the sect instead as he had a better relationship with the master. But Liang refused, pointing out that his cultivation level was now higher than Linbei's. Linbei was surprised as he thought they were at the same level. To prove his point, Liang demonstrated his power, revealing that he had reached the Divine Realm's 10th stage. When Linbei first met Liang, he had just entered the Divine Realm. Now he was at the mid-stage. This revelation left Linbei confused, wondering how Liang had progressed so quickly and when he'd found the time to train. Unable to hide his curiosity, Linbei accused Liang of having a secret technique for rapid advancement. He wasn't entirely wrong, but Liang had no time to reveal his secret now. Changing the subject, Liang asked if Linbei had ever seen the city before dawn, leaving him puzzled. Without further delay, Liang urged them to stop talking and split up immediately. Outside Yanzhou's city, the demonic cultivators sacrificed several chickens to complete a ritual. In the center of the ritual was Song, powerless to defend herself. As he prepared his dark plan, the man laughed, telling Song not to be afraid. He claimed it was rare to find his soul in such a divine state, making her a worthy prize for the loss of his disguised spirit. He explained that if he brutally killed her to extract her soul, only 80% of it would remain, a waste. Thus, he was performing the ritual to absorb her soul's full potential. The item before Song was the Hell King's book. If her soul was absorbed, another page would be added, trapping her forever in the book. The cultivator delighted in the prospect, knowing that he had never captured a Confucianist before. Given her beauty, he considered turning her into a succubus spirit, but then thought it might be better to transform her into a painting spirit, as they were harder to predict. One malicious idea after another filled his mind, leaving Song utterly terrified. In her final moments, she thought about the message she had sent, wondering if it hadn't been understood or if no one wanted to help. The demonic cultivator continued his preparations, nearing the moment when he would steal Song's soul and bind it to the Hell King's book. Back at the Lai residence in Yanzhou City, Liang began inscribing Song Qingyi's name onto her golden page. He believed that channeling his energy into writing her name correctly would activate the effect. Initially, nothing happened, leading Liang to suspect a special condition was needed. He tried again, this time focusing on her image while writing. Unexpectedly, it worked. The golden page began to float and fly toward her location. Realizing there was no time to waste, Liang quickly followed the item. After some travel, the page led him to an isolated house by a river in the middle of the forest. But as he got closer, the energy emanating from the house indicated that something was wrong. Moreover, the protagonist could smell blood coming from inside the house, which made him stay on high alert. To gather some information, he activated his advanced perception ability, making the entire path to the house clearer. Inside, Liang could see the hooded man and Song restrained by demonic arms. However, just by doing this, the demonic cultivator was able to detect the presence of our hero. In just a few seconds, the situation changed completely, and now it was the protagonist who was being watched. The hooded man began attacking the protagonist even from inside the house. But the hero was not intimidated and tried to lure the man out, acting as bait until his master arrived. However, what he didn't expect was that his opponent would be much faster than anticipated. With no way to escape, the hero used his flying sword to attack, but the demonic cultivator stopped it with just 2 fingers. Even so, the protagonist had one more trick up his sleeve to defeat the man. Using a kind of portal beneath his wrist, a rope appeared and moved toward the warrior. Without a hint of fear, the man grabbed the rope and asked what it was. He then used a similar portal power and conjured a grotesque hand from his chest that grabbed the hero by the neck. With the hero immobilized, he took another spike, similar to the one that trapped Song, and pierced the boy's chest with it. Liang couldn't fight back because, in the blink of an eye, he was completely subdued. Unfortunately, this made it clear that the difference between the 3rd and 4th realms was too vast. After immobilizing the hero, the man questioned whether the boy had come to save the girl. In any case, for the demonic cultivator, it felt like he had won the lottery as he had just acquired 2 pure souls. Song, for her part, couldn't hold back her tears and felt extremely guilty for bringing Liang to this place. However, the protagonist refused to give up and continued trying to move. Seeing this, the hooded man told the boy to give up because once he finished absorbing Song's spirit, he would be next. For him, dealing with the 2 of them was easy, but since dawn was approaching, he thought it best to finish quickly to avoid drawing more attention. To save time, the man said that once the 2 of them entered the book, they would have plenty of time to get to know each other better. Thus, the soul absorption ritual began, but Liang shouted, calling the hooded man a pervert. The hero repeated it until the man heard him and became quite irritated. However, the demonic cultivator ignored the insults to focus on continuing the ritual. Yet the protagonist kept drawing attention, continuing to insult the hooded man in various ways. Still, the man concentrated again, knowing that the boy would be dead in a few minutes anyway. But Liang didn't let up and escalated his insults, calling the hooded man an orphan and saying his mother had died. With utter disdain, the hero said that for such a terrible man to be born, his entire family must have been failures or related to each other. The hooded man couldn't take the insults anymore and screamed that he would extract the boy's soul first since he was so eager to die. Before proceeding, he asked which sect the protagonist belonged to, as he had never seen someone so disrespectful. Liang didn't hold back and promptly said he was a disciple of the Shu sect. The hooded man then made it clear that the boy's death wouldn't be painless, as he planned to torture him for 49 days. Afterward, he wanted to see if the boy would still have the same audacity to talk to him like that. While the protagonist prepared his spirit exchange talisman, Song grew increasingly worried. At the moment when the spell in the Hell King's notebook approached, the hero shattered the talisman. With that, a spirit exchange spell activated, lasting for 3 whole breaths. The protagonist's spirit transferred to the hooded man's body, and the hooded man's spirit moved to the hero's body. In the end, the gamble paid off and the spirit exchange spell worked. The hooded man, on the other hand, was desperate, not understanding what was happening. He couldn't grasp why his body was in front of him and why his book was moving toward him. Even without understanding, by the second breath, his soul was already distracted from the hero's body. And even though he intended to absorb the child's soul, it was his own soul that was drawn into the book. With the third breath of the spirit exchange spell, the Hell King's book finally closes. Upon being freed from her imprisonment, Miss Song becomes desperate at the lifeless appearance of Liang. She runs toward the boy, her despair growing as she blames herself for everything. It seems that the evil cultivator in black robes is already dead. Now the soul of our hero begins returning to his original body. Finally, the protagonist returns, but he still can't speak or move, and something is dripping on his face. After a few seconds, the boy regains control of his body and notices something indeed dripping on him. When he opens his eyes, Liang sees Song crying profusely, believing her savior to be dead. To her surprise, however, our hero was not dead, leaving Song thoroughly confused. Regardless, she can now move freely and the spike in her chest has disappeared. Without wasting time, Liang approaches the corpse to confirm that everything is indeed fine. Watching from a distance, Song asks what the boy is doing. He explains that he's simply checking the hooded man's body. Song understands but questions what just happened and how the evil cultivator died. In response, the hero suggests the man might have made a mistake while using his powers. This explanation doesn't convince Song, and she becomes certain that the protagonist had something to do with the hooded man's death. Song knows that despite everything, Liang is still a disciple of one of the 9 immortal sects, but the situation remains shocking to her. In the end, the hooded man turned out to be just an ordinary demonic cultivator who possessed some porcelain items, along with the book and a spiritual restriction seal. Additionally, the man's appearance didn't match his voice, leading the hero to suspect that's why he wore a cloak. Regardless, Liang tells Song they'll split everything they find equally, but she is already satisfied to just have her life saved. The hero doesn't argue but reassures her that there's no need to worry. To Song, the protagonist seemed gentle and polite, but his sudden change in demeanor leaves her unable to understand Liang. Suddenly, the hero shouts that they need to hurry, as there isn't much time left. Hearing this, Song asks if another enemy is approaching. But to her luck or misfortune, the one coming was actually her master. After a moment of silence in the hall, the door opens, releasing a massive burst of fiery energy. From the skies, the master appears, engulfed in a surge of energy, tearing through the sky like a meteor, and striking the ground with tremendous force. Her arrival stirred up a huge cloud of dust, obscuring everything from view. Song is utterly terrified, unsure of what is happening. At that moment, the master appears, flying with fiery wings, landing right in front of the two. However, alongside her is also another Liang, but in a much worse situation than she is. Wasting no time, Feng asks where the enemy is, but our hero informs her that he has already been defeated. Hearing this, the master's first reaction is to resume drinking, as is her habit. Nonetheless, she's visibly disappointed, having come expecting a fight. Getting straight to the point, she questions whether the two were truly responsible for killing this demonic cultivator of the Golden Core realm. The hero explains that the cultist's death was entirely strange and accidental. Even so, she doesn't fully believe her disciple's words. Still, Feng knows that life is full of unexpected events, and since the issue is resolved, she bids farewell. After a few moments, it's time for Song to say goodbye to Liang, and shortly after their farewell, our hero returns to the sect to report the situation. Upon arriving, he is so exhausted that he has to sit down to take a break. However, remembering that he managed to eliminate a demonic cultivator of the Golden Core realm, Liang grows curious about whether the White Tower will reward him. When the boy kills a demonic spirit, he collects rewards from the White Tower, but he's unsure if the same applies to people. Determined to find out, the hero sets aside his laziness and goes to check, but upon arriving, he can't see anything inside the cage. Thus, Liang concludes that killing people likely doesn't yield rewards or that the system may have interpreted the act as suicide. However, this isn't a major concern for the hero, as he is resigned to learning things over time. Anyway, despite not gaining anything from the White Tower, he still managed to obtain some physical items after looting the man. Instead of exchanging these items for sword coins, the hero considers that it might be more advantageous to release all the spirits trapped in the porcelain bottles and kill them one by one. Additionally, since he cannot control these spirits, it seems best to destroy them so they can reincarnate. However, when the protagonist attempts to put his plan into action, he realizes that the porcelain bottles are empty. Liang falls into a deep depression, suspecting that there is a restriction, or that the spirits dissipate upon death. In the end, there was nothing to trade at the White Tower during this journey, but the hero suddenly notices something in the hooded man's clothing. He hadn't seen it before, but inside the cloak was a rather full pouch that appeared to hold something valuable. When he opens it, he finds only a few beads. However, these beads are extremely cold to the touch and emit a demonic aura, suggesting they might be tools for some kind of dark magic. Before reporting this to his master, something else catches the hero's attention. A golden item on the ground also appears to be a magical tool belonging to the demonic cultivator. The object is shaped like a triangular band and vibrates on its own for no apparent reason. Liang quickly concludes that since its original owner is dead, it shouldn't pose any danger. Therefore, he decides to inspect it further using his perception ability. Upon investigating, the boy discovers that this seal is, in fact, a magical item that acts as a chat group connecting 4 people. The leader of the group states that he has finally broken through to the 3rd stage of the 5 elements realm and now needs the Hellwater Beast to cultivate further. Number 59 assures him that he will do his best to assist his master. Number 60 also pledges to do his utmost as a subordinate. However, the leader quickly notices that number 58 is not responding, so he asks if something is wrong. Since it has been a while without a response, the leader suspects that something might have happened. Regardless, the man, seemingly the group's leader, leaves a message for number 58 to read when available. Liang realizes that the previous owner of this seal is this missing member who isn't replying to the messages. Considering this, he debates whether to respond, ultimately deciding to try since the device is impossible to trace and poses no danger. The protagonist decides to echo the same response as the other 2, offering his support to the leader. Unexpectedly, none of the 3 receive an immediate reply. In this case, Liang suspects the device is designed for recorded messages rather than real-time communication. As time passes without a response, Liang considers setting the seal aside to focus on other matters. At that moment, the seal begins to vibrate, signaling response. Upon returning to the Demon Cultivator's communication space, a leader inquires about what happened to 58 and whether he encountered danger. Since the boy knows nothing about the original owner, he decides to be truthful to avoid being caught. He gives a brief summary of the events, framing the Demonic Cultivator as the victor. This pleases the leader, who praises his subordinate's achievement in capturing a warrior from the Divine Realm, though the others express jealousy. The leader states that 58 has consistently achieved great feats and orders the other 2 subordinates to learn from him. Apparently, this master has reached the 3rd stage of the 5 Elements realm and might already be a senior figure in the Purple Gold Hell King sect. As for the subordinates, Liang doesn't learn much more, but after the conversation ends, he decides to inform his master. Shortly afterward, the hero approaches Feng to report his findings. First, he presents the magical item he acquired from the man in black robes and waits for an explanation. Feng identifies it as a Black Demon Thunder, a powerful explosive item that can be traded for coins at the pavilion. Hearing this, Liang's eyes light up as he marvels at the incredible items found in the Golden Core realm. Next, the hero brings out the communication seal to continue his report and briefly updates Feng on his progress in cultivation. Feng carefully analyzes both the seal and the parties involved, which proves crucial in understanding the Purple Gold Hell King sect. The Purple Gold sect was one of those that suffered the most losses at the hands of the 9 immortal sects, which led it to withdraw from conflicts. Nonetheless, Feng is very pleased with her disciple's performance. And since he has been doing well so far, she orders Liang to continue gathering as much information as possible without exposing himself. In this case, the hero questions whether what Feng wants is for him to become a secret agent under the Hell King sect, and she agrees. That said, the seal is usually connected to a person's soul. Therefore, with the owner's death, the seal should have closed, and since that is not happening, the master finds it incredible that Liang can still use it. Liang says that there was a possibility that the soul had not disappeared after death and asks if it was absorbed by the book. The woman says that situations like that were rare and that the guy was simply unlucky. The Hell King's book will be handed over to the people of the Sword Pavilion and all innocent souls will be freed. His master says that only the seal would remain and tells him not to reveal his identity when inside. She says that the purple gold would not dare return to the sect and must be hiding to recover, so she asks the young man for help in finding his hiding place. To be able to kill the Purple God Master alone, which would be a great success, Wang Shuiling could not compete with her. Shu asks if the rewards for killing the purple gold protector would be great. She says not to worry because as long as there were benefits, they would both gain something from it at a 30-to-70 ratio. While they were eating, one of the young men tells the leader that fighting was a bad idea, and the latter replies that Lang was only in the early stage of spiritual intent. He says that he was in the final stage and forging the golden core, so he asks if he wouldn't win if they fought. The young man, nervous, says that the cultivator's master was very strong. The master was the Phoenix Empress, but his father was a high-level master, so he shouldn't be afraid, yet his disciple thinks otherwise. His disciple says that if it were any other master, they would have retreated, but not with the Empress, and his master asks what they should do. He says they could either ask her to stay away from the girl or beat him up, but it would be better to act in secret. The master questions how they could do that in secret. He suggests a trick for the cultivator to suffer a small loss and leave a warning letter, but all without secrecy. The idea was to use Bai Zi, which intrigues the man. A few seconds later, he becomes happy and praises him for the idea. Now they could eat and drink to their heart's content. However, when they look at the table, all the food had disappeared. Looking at his companion, they ask if he knew where the food was. The latter, with his mouth dirty, says he didn't know, and it was as if it had vanished before they started eating. Elsewhere, at the same moment, she was cultivating. He thinks that even though the doll was helping him cultivate, he shouldn't procrastinate so much. 2 hours passed and he received no information. It seemed that when the master was silent, the place also remained so. He thinks that demonic cultivators are harsh and waste no time as they only think about life and death. While cultivating, someone sent him a message. The letter starts moving toward his table. As he begins to read it, he realizes that it was from the girl Shu. She said she was waiting for him at 5:45 at Pagoda Peak. Liang thinks that if the girl really wrote it, her handwriting was terrible. The 36 peaks of the Shu Mountain sect are actually just the influential ones, because if they counted them all, they would have more than 100. Pagoda Peak is a remote and empty peak since the demon that lived there disappeared. The young man arrives at the location near the appointed time. Checking the letter again, he starts finding it suspicious, but since he was going to face danger, he didn't mind much. At that moment in the distance, he begins to hear footsteps, which makes him curious. Bai Zi was running toward him. As the beast rushed at the young man, the onlookers cheered from afar. One of them asks how his master dared to disturb Bai Zi, and the other warns him not to attract attention. Otherwise, they could be mercilessly beaten, as they had entered his territory. The cultivator says that the young man would not just be beaten, he would be utterly thrashed. Bai Zi was charging at Shu at high speed, frightening the boys until the force of the beast's attack kicked up dust. But instead of biting him, the beast started licking the young man's face. The cultivators were puzzled by the behavior. Liang wondered if he had been defeated by something powerful and why he was being licked. Looking at the happy animal, he wonders if it was the sex mystical beast, because he had never seen it before, but it seemed to know him. The beast starts making sounds as if it wanted to talk to him. It approaches and eagerly seeks affection. The young man says it would be rude to ignore it and starts petting it to show friendship. After that, Bai Zi excitedly runs around the man until it stops and crouches in front of the cultivator, wanting him to ride on its back. Shu didn't understand why it was doing that, because if a beast did this, it meant that it recognized him. Since it was so enthusiastic, he couldn't refuse, so he decided to try. He would go slowly and be careful. If something went wrong, he might be able to find a way out. Noticing this, Bai Zi becomes very happy. The animal takes off running excitedly while he tries to hold on. It sprints rapidly, making him scream in desperation. He was going too fast. Bai Zi runs with the cultivator toward the sea, jumping until it reaches the waterfall, leaving him terrified. Behind the waterfall, there was a cave, and the animal continued jumping inside. Liang wonders if there was some kind of flaw or even an open area deeper down. Meanwhile, the animal kept going deeper into the cave. The young man notices something at the far end of the place. More precisely, a person sitting there. The one who was eating, unaware of their presence. Bai Zi gets her attention by approaching. They stare at each other as he gets closer. Sitting on the animal, all happy, he starts circling around the girl. Shu whispers to the beast to stop because they had already run enough. She finishes eating and places the bowl on the table. After dismounting, the young man apologizes and explains that it was the animal who insisted on carrying him. The girl says it's okay. Then she stands up and walks toward them. The mystical beast stops and hides when she looks at it. Liang tries to ask the woman something but is interrupted. He gets frustrated because he hadn't even said his name yet. Far from there, the trio starts questioning what was happening. One of them asks the leader if that was possible because the young man was handsome. The leader hits him and asks if he wasn't handsome too, and the young man replies that obviously Bai Zi didn't like him. The man asks the third member what he thought, but this one just says he was hungry. Irritated, the leader yells at him. He says the two of them caused too many problems. At that moment, a monster appears above them, making the young man curious because monsters wouldn't dare enter there. One of the cultivators asks the leader to leave that for later, and another asks what they should do. The leader tells them to hide so they wouldn't be defeated. Another says that the monster wouldn't hit them and that none of them would dare land on his head like that. However, the monster landed right where they were, causing a loud crash. The monster roars in anger after landing. Right after, it starts running at full speed. Where its paw had been, the shape of the young men could be seen. Inside the cave, Shu Ling introduces himself to the girl. She introduces herself as Jiang Xiaobai. She says she comes there from time to time and Bai Zi agreed to protect her, but she didn't think he would bring someone else there. Shu thinks that if the fairy wanted to remain anonymous, she should choose a better fake name. While they talk, Bai Zi jumps from behind the rock and starts running. He escapes, leaving the cultivator confused behind. Turning to the girl, he says that she must be a good person since the animal recognized her too. She tells the young man not to tell anyone what he saw there. The young man thinks that if he did, his fans would flood the cave immediately. After saying he wouldn't tell, the girl thanks him. Shu starts saying goodbye, telling her he wouldn't bother her anymore when an explosion happens, catching their attention. Xiaobai says something strange is happening outside the cave. Then she asks the young man to hide while she flies out. A huge explosion of light can be seen around the fairy's body, and the young man thinks her IQ was high. He wonders if that was the fighting style of a genius, and if he had faced the owner of the seal, he would have been killed in 3 moves. Still watching her, he thinks she gives people a sense of security. Outside, Bai Zi is thrown far away. The animal falls in front of the young men and starts growling at the monster. It was gigantic and was at the cave entrance, growling at them. Bai Zi should be in the 5th realm, but he had been beaten badly enough to be sent back. The mystical beast fills its body with energy and enraged charges at the monster. He attacks it on the face, startling it. Then he returns to the young men. Xiaobai summons her sword and a strong light can be seen around her once again. Upon seeing her, the monster becomes enraged. It then begins to release lightning from its mouth while the girl starts controlling the sword. It attacks her with great force, but Jiang creates a force field with the swords to protect everyone. The giant lizard is an adult close to the 6th realm, and its attention seems to be focused on the fairy. Liang thinks that he couldn't do anything to help, so he waits for a chance to escape. While he's thinking, the giant lizard gets closer and closer to the girl. She uses her power to launch the swords at the monster. When it opens its mouth, the fairy throws a sword inside and gets out just in time before the beast closes it. Xiaobai uses the celestial sword technique. After that, the lizard's mouth begins to shine intensely. The girl starts controlling her sword inside the monster's body to destroy it. Her sword begins to carve a hole into its forehead. Thus, the monster falls to the ground defeated. Then the fairy retrieves her sword, leaving the dead beast behind. 4th realm cultivators can compete with 5th realm monsters, and she was able to use strong techniques as well. She wonders why he is feeling sad about the fact that the girl used so many techniques. However, the giant lizard awakens, furious, and charges at Xiaobai again. The monster starts chasing the girl relentlessly. Liang manages to spot the cave entrance. He calls for the girl to leave with him, but she tells him to go first. As he runs out with Bai Zi, the girl attempts once again to attack the monster. They decide to go back to help her, but she tells them to leave because she will stop the beast. Xiaobai uses her swords to attack the giant lizard. Shu decides to help the fairy, drawing the monster's attention and grabbing some energized orbs. The cultivator throws them into the air, aiming at the lizard. They transform into shadows that begin to engulf the monster. Purple lightning starts striking the beast until it collapses, and from within it, a small creature emerges. Grabbing it, the young man wonders if that was really powerful. Originally, he only wanted to stall the lizard so Jiang could escape, but he ended up with an unexpected gain. Bai Zi becomes excited that they defeated the monster. He starts running around the young men while they check if they are okay. While saying she was fine, the young man thinks that the girl seemed very calm and that the monster posed no threat to her. That she truly deserved the title of genius for skillfully using more than one ability against the monster. She asked the young man what weapon he had used, because it was very powerful and extremely wicked. The young man says it was the Black Demon Thunder, and that he got it from a member of the Hell King sect. Jiang says that item was valuable, and that if he handed it over to the sword pavilion, he could trade it for many sword coins. When he asked his master, she called it a small magical item, and what was small to his master was big for him. The girl says she will give him coins since he helped her a lot and she couldn't let him waste his resources in vain. Trying to act strong, the young man says there was no need since they were from the same sect. She says she still needed to thank him. He then asks her to teach him some abilities, and the girl tells him not to be so ambitious. He says he wanted something simple since his master only trusted physical strength. Xiaobai asks if he was a disciple of the Phoenix Empress, and if he was, he must admire her too. Thus, Jiang tells the cultivator to be there at noon because she will teach him her abilities. The young man thanks her with a smile. Then he asks if she would continue living there. She says yes, but that he shouldn't tell anyone, and he asks if they shouldn't report it in case the monster attacked. She says she will handle it and that something strange happened that day. Her master and the Phoenix Empress were friends, and besides, the young man was not a divine realm cultivator and still saved her. She says that the young man suffered an unnecessary disaster with her, so she should tell him the story behind it. She was born with the legendary fairy physique, cultivated since childhood, and from monsters, her Her red essence was very attractive. Because of this, she always tries to stay away from the sex mountains and takes care not to get injured. Hearing the story, the young man starts thinking about a physical trait that attracts monsters. Despite all the caution for a girl, bleeding was inevitable. But the young man was so absorbed in thought that he hadn't hurt her. She then says that she hid there because monsters wouldn't dare set foot in that place since it was a pure land. Besides, she wanted to keep strangers away so she could have peace and tranquility until the young man showed up. The young man thinks that Baezi didn't seem very intelligent, so it wasn't that strange for him to act that way. She says the arrival of that lizard was strange and begins to wonder how it entered the cave. Liang asks the girl if someone outside the sect was taking action against her to cause harm. But the girl simply tells him to return and report this to his master first, and then they will plan something long-term, and he agrees. Then he asks if it was true that the girl was having an affair with Feng Chaoyang. Irritated, she says that was a senseless lie. It turns out that she had reserved a restaurant while on a mission, and the man followed her. Due to her reputation, she had to sit beside him. Turning away, she says it was uncomfortable having someone watching her eat. The young man starts thinking about the choice of tables and that his manners weren't very good. A few minutes later, he tells the girl that the rumor was actually about Jiang Yubei and not her. After that, the girl leaves, saying she doesn't know what he meant and telling him to leave because she's busy. She was returning, riding on his sword. He thinks that he was still very weak. Although the battle between the monster and the fairy lasted only a few moves, any of those attacks would have been enough to kill him. Comparing the previous fight with his own against the man in the black robe, the gap between them was enormous. The most powerful candidates for the position of disciple in the current generation of his sect were Yubei and Ziyang. Considering the conflict with the Jade Sword Peak, he wonders why his master involved him in the fight and when this would be resolved. Sometime later, he arrives at his destination. In the cave, he accidentally gained the girl's favor and blew up the giant lizard. Now it was time for rewards again. Looking at the caged monster, he thinks that this was the first time he had killed such a formidable one. Liang was excited about the kind of reward he would receive, when suddenly, the creature begins to emit a strong light. It seems that something incredible was being granted this time. A sword appears before the cultivator, leaving him confused and wondering if that was his flying sword. It was a sword of justice. When facing evil enemies, it would grant him a power boost. But even though the sword was precious, it only increased his power against enemies who had committed evil acts. The conditions for activating that sword weren't easy since, out of all his enemies, only the man in black was one of them. In other words, most of the time it would just be an ordinary sword. The next day, Chu returns to the cave and wonders how he managed to get there without Bai Zi. Upon landing, he can hear Xiao Bai and the beast arguing because it had eaten her mattress. Arriving there, he sees that the beast was trying to destroy her home. At that moment, the girl turns around and says good morning to the young man. Right on time, he asks what Bai Zi was doing. The creature drops the object it was playing with on the ground and runs toward the cultivator, leaving her irritated. Liang can feel the girl's furious gaze upon him as the animal dashes toward him. After that, Baezi goes back to playing adorably with a piece of stone. The young man tells her not to take it too seriously because he was just a child. She says that if he didn't take his studies seriously, he should expect the same. Baezi starts looking at him expectantly, and Chu asks if he wanted him to defend him. He then asks the girl why the sacred mythological beast obeys her so much. Jiang says she doesn't know, but they have played together since they were children and grew up together. Then she asks why he liked the young man. He says it wasn't because of talent since he was inferior to her, nor because of kindness since there were many kind people. Smiling, he says that the only thing he could think of was related to good looks. After that remark, the fairy starts staring at the cultivator in silence. Finally, she says that time was running out. Then she leads the young man into the cave and says that the front area was quite narrow and suitable for training. They arrive at the location and the girl tells him to start there. That day, she was planning to teach him the form of the 100 swords and asks if he was familiar with it. He thinks that although it was just a basic art, it wasn't weak and had a lot of potential for improvement. From 100 to 1,000 and from 1,000 to 10,000. If he could reach the form of 10,000, it would be on the same level as the celestial sword art. Thinking about that, he bows and asks the girl to guide him. The girl begins dictating the key points and demonstrating how to perform them. While she does, the young man notices how beautiful she is. She asks what he is doing, and he says he is listening. Bai stops and asks her apprentice to repeat everything she just said. Even though he is nervous, he repeats all the key points and extra details she mentioned. She praises his memory and says his multitasking ability isn't bad, and the young man thanks her. She tells him that he should control each sword with precision and then add more. The stronger he becomes, the more swords his form will have. Smiling, the young man says he understands. The time it takes for sect disciples to master this technique is 7 days. Jiang says she will give him 3 days to succeed. If he manages, she will teach him other abilities. Otherwise, there won't be a next time. Excited, the young man thinks he has a chance to elevate his learning and tells the girl he understands. Taking the sword he received, he asks the girl to observe his progress, then starts replicating the technique with the swords. Before they could reach the fairy, he manages to stop them and make them fall to the ground. Looking at them, he thinks it wasn't bad, but due to his will controlling each sword, It was impossible to have 100 of them. Each sword had its own will, and he only needed to give them commands. They weren't dead swords, but living weapons. So he orders the swords to act as they please, and dozens of them start multiplying around him. He commands them to follow, and they move in the direction he gestures with his hands. Impressed, the girl asks if it isn't too much. Normally, disciples start gradually. She was expecting him to fail, but he mastered it in just one day. Watching the young man control them back and forth, she wonders what this implies. If normal disciples practice for 7 days, elite ones for 3, and geniuses for 1, she wonders how much time he actually practiced. Excited, her disciple calls for her attention, saying that he understood a little, leaving her intrigued. Still unsure of what was happening, she says the young man is very intelligent. He says his progress is good because her teachings are good. He is impressed to be called intelligent since he thought that about himself when he was younger, but now he considers himself average. Learning the form of the 100 swords went well. When he said goodbye to Jiang, he scheduled another session to learn more abilities from her the next day. When he returned to his residence, he found a new letter. It was a letter from the Ming residence. It had been a while since he had heard anything about his wife. Reading the contents, the young man becomes intrigued. Miss Ming was missing. Since he had granted her a title, he had to take responsibility if something happened, so his training would have to be postponed. He heads to the Phoenix Empress's residence. His master is reading comics again. Looking at her, he thinks he has never seen the girl practicing seriously, even though her main focus is enlightenment. So he wonders what she is learning by reading comics all day. Entering her quarters, the young man tells the woman that there was an issue with the Ming family who had previously requested the title. She stands up, intrigued. Liang mentions the letter about the lady's disappearance. Both suspect that her disappearance must have been an accident because she wouldn't have caused trouble. The woman hands him a jade talisman, which might help locate her. If anything happens, he is to destroy the talisman, and she will come to his rescue. Since he doesn't have magical items, this one would save his life. Holding the crystal, he thinks that it is a life-saving magical item, a summoning spell. That being able to summon someone at his master's level at any time was much better than having many magical items. He asked the woman if she would really come anytime. She says she would be there immediately, but only if she wasn't drinking at that moment. Flying over Xingzhou, the young man thinks he cannot trust a drunk. The residents of the Ming household appear to greet the young man. One of them asks to speak inside the house. He says that with the title Chu granted to his wife, he thought they would live stably and happily. But 2 days ago, his wife started crying at night. She said that for the past 10 years, she had been afraid of exposing herself, and now that she was living in peace, she missed her parents. Because of that, he offered to accompany her, but she was afraid and didn't agree. His wife left and never returned. The man is sure she wouldn't abandon him, so he asks the young man to save her. She reassures him, saying he will do his best to find the woman and asks where her family was. The man says that they live on the outskirts of the city, but when he went to look for her, he couldn't find any trace of her. He leaves and tells him that he has a way to locate her, so there's no need to worry. The man asks if he won't stay the night. While flying, he says that he's in a hurry, and since they are close acquaintances, it doesn't need to be polite with him. In the outer area of Xingzhou on the mountain, the tracking crystal was calling out to the young man as he flew over the mountain on his sword. It was guiding him toward the entrance of a cave. The cave entrance was closed off by a large wooden door. He grabs the handle and starts knocking on the door. A fox opens the door, asking what that was. Liang introduces himself and says that he is there looking for Miss Ming, then asks if the fox could help him. Upon hearing that he was from Shu Mountain, the fox becomes frightened. It turns around and runs off, calling out to its majesty and saying that trouble was arriving because the cultivator was there. In its panic, the fox runs away, leaving the door open and the young man confused behind. A little while later, the king of the demon cats appears to introduce himself. He asks the young man what he is doing in his cave so late at night. Shu apologizes for the intrusion and explains the girl's disappearance. Getting closer to the young man, the king says that he doesn't know who the girl is. He says that his cave is full of good demons who don't cause harm. Smiling, the young man shows the crystal, saying that it is a tracker that points to her being there. The king comments that the crystal must be wrong and that, although they don't cause harm, if he insists, he won't stand idly by. He says that he is not there to cause trouble and asks to enter and search for her, but the man refuses. Liang takes out a rope, still smiling at the man. The latter asks if this is an attack. As he gets increasingly tied up, he starts shouting for the young man to spare him. Desperate, he thinks that if this incident were spread, he wouldn't be able to live among his people anymore. Still smiling, Chu asks once again if he may enter and search for Lady Ming. Turning to the others, the king orders them to quickly take the young man to see his sister. They both arrive near a door, and the man says that his sister is inside. When he opens the door, he finds the woman tied to a tree trunk. Turning to the young man, she becomes excited to see him. He greets her and tells her to sit down and talk, leaving the man embarrassed. The three sit at the table, and the young man asks the girl what's going on there. She looks at her brother and says that when she returned, she discovered that their parents had passed away. But her brother had created a new cave and become the king of the mountain, so she went there to find him. When she entered, she ended up encountering him and the king of another mountain who was there as a guest. The Tiger King, upon seeing her, insisted that he wanted to marry her. Since she refused the proposal, her brother tied her up there. Shu looks at the Cat King and sarcastically says that this is his type. The latter slams the table and shouts that the young man knows nothing. He starts explaining how their parents died in a battle with other demons. He comments that he was only there so that the cat tribe in the Eastern Mountain could have a home. At that time, there were only about a dozen demons and weapons, and he worked hard over the years to survive. He met the Tiger King at Hidden Forest Mountain. His abilities were far superior to his own, and he was willing to cooperate. He thought they were friends, but the tiger fell in love with his sister, and if they got married, he would protect them. But if they didn't, they would likely be attacked. Liang asks the man if he didn't tell the other that she was married. He says he did, but the king became even more enthusiastic. The man says he didn't want to force his sister, but before leaving, the other said he would return for the wedding. In 3 days, the tiger would be back, and if he didn't see the woman there, he would be furious. Intrigued, the cultivator asks if he didn't mention the protection of Shu Mountain. He says he knew, but he didn't dare do it because they feared most cultivators. He was afraid that someone would die there and that they would be investigated and suppressed. Shu thinks it was normal for them to have that thought due to the ongoing battle between humans and demons. Placing his hand on the king's shoulder, he says that, at least in his sect, people are descendants. Standing up, the man asks the young man to take his sister that night because they would be wiped out by the Tiger King the next day. Turning to the others, he says that he doesn't know if they will survive just by leaving that land. The demons' search for a new habitat will be accompanied by bloody wars. They need resources and shelter. Liang asks how many demons were under the Tiger King's control and what his cultivation level was. The Cat King says that he had been cultivating the Tao for hundreds of years and could be in the 4th or 5th realm, with 100 demons under his command. He thinks that the Tiger King's strength should be greater than that of the lizard and wonders if he could defeat him, just as Xiaobei did. This time he had a trump card, his red sword. So he asks the cat if his problems would be solved if he eliminated the Tiger King, but the man starts stammering. Talking with Chu Liang, the man questions whether he wants to destroy the hidden mountain tribe in the forest. The protagonist then responds that he has a certain degree of confidence in his abilities and can resolve the major problem the man has. Analyzing the young man, the Cat King reflects that since he is a disciple of Shu Mountain, he is capable of securing a title for his sister. So he decides to accept the offer but asks the young man to untie the rope first. They reveal the hidden mountain in the forest. A group walks among the trees and heads toward the other people present. Shu Liang's eyes shine at the sight of the number of wild demons in the area. The young man thinks that if the White Tower collected them all, he could become very rich. Whispering, the man accompanying him says that the jurisdiction of the area is very strict and that no one can simply wander through that region. But the young man, quite calm, says he will take that information into consideration and asks his friend not to be too nervous. Taking the advice, the man agrees and starts adjusting his clothes. Shu calls out to the man and says that relaxing and opening up have 2 different meanings. He explains that he was adjusting his attire only to retrieve the gift he would later give to the Tiger King. Leading the group, the man instructs everyone to eat healthily and in abundance, warning that if there are leftovers, they should be taken with the group. The protagonist thinks that the majestic king of the mountain took out a pearl and began crying, concluding that it was truly difficult for the cat tribe. Later, the groups begin to approach the Tiger King. Beside the leader of the cats, the monarch says that if he works hard, the tribe will grow and become stronger. Addressing everyone present, the king thanks them for the gifts received and offers drinks and food. While waiting, the protagonist wonders how many lives the Tiger King has taken. Suddenly, someone announces that the divine envoy has arrived. He is accompanied by other men carrying a large wooden box. Whispering, the Cat King and Chu Liang question who that person is and whether there is a specific demonic aura in the area. The Cat King says he doesn't feel anything, that everyone is just silent, and that he too feels afraid. In front of the divine envoy, the king says he is blessed by his presence and apologizes for not welcoming him properly. Unbothered, the young man says that he heard about the monarch's wedding and for that reason came to deliver a gift. He orders his subordinates to open the large wooden box they are carrying. A great golden light floods the area, leaving everyone extremely surprised. The gift is the Mountain River Halberd, an ancient classified divine weapon. And since the king is a worldly hero, he has the aptitude to wield such a weapon. Present at the event, the protagonist wonders about the origins of that envoy and how he could possess such a sacred item. Still conversing with the king, the envoy says that he encountered a genius human along the way who wasn't very intelligent, and he ended up winning that weapon. With the weapon in hand, the Tiger King thanks him for the gift. Seizing the moment, he decides to announce the latest news of the kingdom. He explains that he gathered all the demons in that place for a reason, and that besides getting married, he has another important announcement to share. The king explains that while wandering through the forest, he spoke with other demon kings about uniting the Hidden Forest tribe. With this, he could provide a great future for everyone and decides to explain what he means. Then he passes the speaking role to the divine envoy. The man begins to speak, stating that he comes from the Mountain of 7 Realms and has traveled the world delivering simple messages to people, concluding that the divine will return. They explain that this title represents an ancient and supreme being and that the 9th realm, Tongsuan, has always been legendary, with very few ever reaching it. 3,000 years ago, there was an unparalleled demon king who reached this supreme realm. He became the first demon god of the Tongzhuan realm in the world and the only one at that level. Because of this, the cultivators of the world faced a catastrophe. The explanation continues, stating that the demon god was massacring them in all directions and many immortal sects were unable to stop him. Faced with absolute power, there was nothing they could do, and the demons began to conquer the world under their god's leadership. In this terrible crisis, 7 elders from the Tianyuan realm on Shu Mountain, armed with the artifacts, suppressed the demon tower. At the cost of 6 elders, the demon god was finally sealed within the tower. This battle established the tower's status as the #1 artifact in the world. According to legend, even though the tower suppresses its demons, it cannot destroy them, only seal them. In the years that followed, many clans tried to break into Shu Mountain to open the tower and release their demon god. But all those who attempted to do so without exception ended up trapped inside the tower. This continued until about 500 years ago, when the artifact disappeared. Returning to the special envoy's speech, he says that 3,000 years is a long time and humanity has already forgotten, but the demons have not. He explains that he comes from a distant island in the west and that his mountain belongs to the 7 demon kings. For this reason, he has remained firm in his commitment to reviving them, never losing hope of welcoming back their god. The envoy states that the Tiger King sent some people to explore the land, and now they need groups to venture into human territory. Since they are waiting for the return of the demon god, they must prepare a response for him. He goes on to say that anyone who wants to join the group only needs to follow the established steps, and if they don't want to, they will not be forced. Many people listening to the speech raise their hands, signaling that they want to join the journey. Also wanting to participate, the protagonist thinks that the initial plan was to resolve a marital dispute, but this was an unexpected gain. Shu Liang looks at the young man beside him and wonders if the demon might suddenly change his mind and reveal himself. The man then tells the young master that they must act quickly, and that if they wait any longer, it will be time for the tiger to toast the wedding. As the two decide to leave the area, the tiger announces that he has other matters to attend to and asks everyone to enjoy the dinner. Around the table, Shu says he will start moving at that moment and that when the tiger returns, his companion should just hold his position. He leaves the designated area and observes, thinking that according to the plan, he could stab the king, who would have already been poisoned beforehand. Shu concludes that the patrols along the path are not strict, so there shouldn't be any issues. While he is deep in thought, something catches the protagonist's attention. A man with the body and face of a bull approaches and asks for the password, to which Shu responds with 1. Then he adds, the Tiger King rules the sky and the earth. He thinks that before his enemy attacks, he will take the initiative and strike first by launching a great summoning spell to his master. The bull says everything is fine, leaving Shu a bit confused. Then the young man realizes that he was actually correct when he said the password, even though he had no idea that was the real code. Observing the scene, he notices that the bull man goes to another nearby group and is also asked for the password. Repeating what he just heard, the young man says, the Tiger King rules the sky and the earth. But the password is wrong and he is immediately attacked by the group who call him a spy. The young man tries to defend himself, saying that the kitten tricked him. However, it is already too late, and everyone wants to attack him while one of the men asks which mountain or cave he comes from. Trying to escape unharmed, he replies that he is from grandmother's cave, and that only makes things worse as they now believe he is human. Hearing the commotion, Shu wonders if the bull was actually a person as well. Transforming and throwing off the bull costume, he turns into a strong man and reveals his true face. With the revelation, the situation becomes even more complicated, and everyone gives the order to kill him. But with just a single strike, the young man unleashes immense power and eliminates all the attackers in the group. Shu notices that he is executing techniques and martial arts very proficiently and assumes he must be in the 4th realm as a disciple of a sect. Then he remembers the ancient artifact and believes that this young man is the one whose halberd was stolen. Walking through the area, something catches the young man's attention. There are various treasures and coins being displayed in the congratulatory gift warehouse, and the young man wonders if his weapon is there. A voice emerges, calling him a bold human, and it asks how the young man dared to enter the hidden mountain forest to cause trouble. The Tiger King appears, wielding his halberd, and stops in front of the young man. Without thinking twice, the king tries to kill the intruder. But without a trace of fear, the human faces him head-on and calls him to attack. A massive explosion occurs in the place where the tiger and the young man are, while the young man demands that his weapon be returned. Both grab onto the weapon, struggling to see who will keep it. Suddenly, the human is thrown far away and crashes into a stone wall. The king takes advantage of the moment of weakness and attempts to eliminate the man once and for all. But gaining immense strength, the muscular man manages to rise again and charges at his opponent. The situation makes the tiger nervous as he cannot understand how a mere 4th realm human is physically overpowering him. Determined, the king declares that he has not yet unleashed his full power, and for that reason will not be easy to deal with. With a roar and the great ability of the beast, the human becomes paralyzed and unable to move. He is drawn into the king's mouth, but he manages to use his strength to keep the tiger's mouth open. Shu watches the scene and realizes that the young man is in trouble, understanding that he needs to help him. The protagonist activates the red-edged sword and commands the 100 swords form to attack. With that attack, the tiger realizes that another human is present and notices that another attack is happening simultaneously. Shu knows that his power may not be much, but is still capable of hurting the Tiger King. But something catches the king's attention, and he questions whether Chu is trying to intimidate him and whether he really calls it 1,000 swords. The protagonist is confused because his attack changed from 100 swords to 1,000, and he celebrates the increase multiplied by 100, wondering if this is the amplifier effect when attacking evil beings. Either way, he commands the weapon to kill the enemy first. Then the Tiger King begins to be hit by various attacks and simultaneous strikes. On the ground, the human who had a bull form watches in shock at the power of that attack. He realizes that not every sword is that powerful, but when multiplied by hundreds or thousands, its limit is impossible to estimate. The young man notices that thousands of flying swords pierce and spin, their powers stacking, and the swords aid one another. Observing the scene, he wonders if the Tiger King has been torn to pieces by the sword formation. But the bigger question is about who the mysterious friend who helped him is. His curiosity goes further, wondering how the young man is so accustomed to using such a powerful weapon in mere moments. And he concludes that the young man is very strong and define a great role model for this generation. Introducing himself, the young man says he is Yun Chaxian and thanks his new friend for the help. After hearing who the protagonist is, he says that he has already heard of the Shu Mountain sect. Later, as they walk together, the man asks his new friend if he wants to hear how he lost the halberd and begins telling the story. He says he could never have imagined that the young man he was following was so cunning. The two made a bet, and the masked man said that neither of them could leave a circle drawn on the ground while using weapons. Chaxian agreed and stepped into the circle to wager against the young man. But after delivering the first strike, his opponent stepped outside the designated area, stole the halberd, and ran away. Yun even tried to say that his opponent had lost, but the man responded that his points would only count if he was caught. The protagonist recalls the special envoy telling how he acquired the weapon. Without wasting time, Chaxian asks if Chu has any intentions of hunting down the opponent with him. The question catches the young man by surprise, and he becomes a little thoughtful. Yun says that the envoys are treacherous and cunning, especially in their plan to harm humanity, but with his own power, he couldn't handle it alone. However, with the young cultivator's strength, they could manage to take down that opponent. Chu asks if his cultivation is extraordinary and is told that it is. The other human says he has never seen someone with as much power as he demonstrated that day, and that's why he was so impressed. The mountain city is revealed. They begin observing the space, and the protagonist takes it all in. He grabs the violent Tiger King's essential pill in his hands. It's a high-quality pill containing the essence of the Tiger King, and whoever takes it can enhance their power through the beast's energy. It increases vitality, sleep, and a man's virility. Observing the pill carefully, the protagonist wonders if this time it will permanently increase physical strength. Determined, the young man places the powerful object in his mouth. He begins to transform and reflects on how strong that pill is. The young man starts sweating and making strange noises with his mouth. Chu concludes that it's a bit difficult to consume that item and says he feels thirsty. Suddenly, Chaxian enters the room and says he heard some noises and came to check if everything was okay. But the young man says that he is fine. Yun apologizes for disturbing the protagonist, leaving him confused. Later, the two stand in front of a house, and the young man asks if that place is where Chu sensed the opponent. Chaxian says that he felt the man's presence there and would go in immediately to seize him. However, the protagonist asks the young man to wait and hands him a weapon. Doubtful, Yun asks why the young man is using the handle of his halberd. Focusing, Chu says that the environment is too quiet, and he senses that something is wrong. But the man asks if that isn't expected at this time of night. The protagonist says he simply used his perception to explore the front of the garden and found it completely empty, something very strange. The two jump behind some crates and wait while they observe. Not long after, a group of officials arrives at the location. As expected, the place was a trap, and the authorities storm the house. Upon entering, some of them are caught in a spell and scream desperately. One of the officers says the area is clear and affirms that everyone can move forward. After entering, the group realizes that there are corpses inside and that no one is alive. Chu says that something highly suspicious happened, and he is thankful they didn't enter the house earlier, or they would have been found by the officials and blamed for the crime. Yun wonders why it feels like all the traps were set specifically for the two of them. Thoughtful, the protagonist believes that the man must have received news from the hidden mountain forest and tracked the young man's path. Irritated, Chaxian says that if he is being watched, he won't be able to find and take revenge on his opponent. The next day, the two ask the attendant for news. He says that last night, a horrible massacre occurred in the city, and 17 members of a family were murdered. One of the victims was a medicine seller, and as a result, some valuable medicines were stolen. Immediately, they suspected the killings were for money, and the governor ordered the city to be locked down. Additionally, a large reward was offered to anyone who finds the killer or the stolen medicines. Trying to track the man down, Yun says he can no longer follow his trail, but Chu reassures him, saying that their opponent won't continue being so clever with the plan. And he states that since the city gates haven't been opened since the crime occurred, he must not have escaped and is still within the city. He also asserts that the man wouldn't dare do anything reckless and use territory, meaning there's a chance to find the killer in the city. Curious, Given asks where they could find the opponent. The protagonist begins thinking and says that there is always a way. Q thinks that the two young men have already joined forces, but their perspectives are still limited. And he concludes that if he wants to investigate this, he must seek help from his dark allies. A great demon appears, and someone informs him that a subordinate is seeking information about a golden lotus in the mountain city. The other man says that the exact location is unknown and doesn't understand how it would be possible to ask for help from the allies. In the mountain city, the moon palace is revealed. They explain that they have heard the elder of the village is in the 5th realm and ask him to accept a small gift. Quickly, the man thanks them and says he will take the gift to the elder, explaining that resources like the golden lotus are difficult to obtain. Additionally, the old man explains that many elders are concerned that if the plan succeeds, all humans will be exterminated. The envoy laughs and says that in an era where humans have saints, they are heading toward extinction, and that the 7 kings who help before the return of the gods are allies, and once the god returns, they will be granted an entirely new world. Then the elder concludes that the group's concern is whether the god is a fraud. Far from there, the demon questions whether there are any clues about the golden lotus flower and says that if he obtains it, he could advance from the 3rd stage to the realm of the 5 elements. The man says that he asked a colleague near the mountain village if the lotus really exists, but he doesn't know anything about it. Additionally, he mentioned that if he wanted news about the mountain city, he would need to go to Erning's tavern. Looking at Soldier 58, the Demon King says that the young man has worked hard, and regardless of whether the search is successful, he would like to express his gratitude. In response, 58 says that there is no need to be so polite, and that all of this is simply part of his duties. In the mountain village, a boy asks what his lord would like to order. Shu Lang observes what is being offered and says he would like 2 jars of immortality. 30 minutes later, the vendor returns, apologizes for making the boy wait, and says he will take him to retrieve the order right away. The two walk to a place with a red carpet. In the location, there is a girl, and she asks if the young man really came to see her. Seated, the girl says that the boy ordered immortality and introduces herself as Gu Erniang. She says that if the protagonist has any questions, he can simply ask her, but the boy will have to pay a price for each answer. Thoughtfully, the girl states that if he wants to buy news, he must pay, and says that everyone in the city follows the rules. Chu says that she doesn't need to worry and that he will follow the rules. Once again, Hu Erniang says that if he has any questions, he can ask her. Then the young man explains that he would like to know where the divine envoy who committed a crime in the city is. The girl says that she cannot answer that because she does not know who committed the crime or where the envoy is. The protagonist thinks that being well-informed does not mean being on mission, and that it is normal not to have answers to certain questions. He decides to change the question and now wants to know to whom the divine envoy gave the golden lotus of the infernal sea. Herning says that it seems the young man is deeply interested in that divine envoy, so she will tell him everything she knows. The girl says that all she knows is that the oppression of the Third Valley over the village of black magicians has recently intensified. She explains that 17 demonic villages in the southern region have united to form an alliance with the demon clan to fight against the righteous. Then they sent an envoy to meet with the demon clan. Shu reflects on the village of black magicians. The boy decides to ask where the clan's envoy is. Without wasting time, Erning says that he is in the Full Moon Palace. Grateful, the protagonist says he has no more questions and leaves the place. But before he leaves, the girl asks how he will pay for the 2 answers she gave him. He replies that he knows the exact location of the human jade essence flower that is about to mature, and that he can provide that information. The girl says that the flower has value, but it only covers 1 question, not 2, even if he retrieves and delivers it to her. For the second question, Shu suggests that the girl say what she wants in exchange. Quickly, she shows a golden money-devouring insect that she raised, and she asks for the boy's help in assisting the insect to increase its rank within 3 days. Knowing that the insect needs money to evolve, the young man wonders where he could obtain the necessary amount. The gambling house is introduced and Chu is there. He thinks that he saw a random entrance on the street and entered unnoticed. The young man accompanying him asks what he would like to play, but he says that he doesn't know how to play any of the available games. He states that he only knows mahjong, which he played with his elders during New Year's, and the man tells him that there is a mahjong room in the establishment. Chu says that he doesn't have much money with him and isn't sure if it will be enough to participate in the gambling. Even so, he is welcome and enters the designated room. Nearby, the young man who was accompanying the protagonist approaches another man and asks if he will receive a reward for having robbed the boy. After some time sitting at the table, Chu is surprised to realize that he won the game. They confirm the information and say that he is quite lucky, while the others say they want to keep playing more rounds. The protagonist says that his opponents are nice as he won, and yet they were happy for him. Convincing the boy to keep playing, they inform him that everyone has commitments with the house and that they will still be happy even if they lose to him. After another round, Chu realizes that he has won the game again. Around the table, everyone continues playing another round of mahjong. The protagonist notices that the feng shui of the place is good and that after finishing counting, everything was perfect. Suddenly, one of his opponents stands up, says he is not feeling well, and claims he needs some fresh air. But he goes to talk to Lord Ju, who is perplexed to see that 3 people cannot defeat the little boy. He says that something is wrong, but Ju does not want to hear it and says that he spent a lot of money building a magic cycle to prevent cultivators from winning. Determined, the powerful man believes that the protagonist is a master and therefore decides to meet him personally. Without wasting time, the man approaches the table and says they should not wait for the other player, as he will replace him. Another round takes place, 30 minutes pass, and once again, Chu wins another game. He apologizes to his opponents, who begin to reflect on how the boy is so good at what he does and how skillful he is. Ju believes that the young man does not know how to count the cards but simply memorizes them all. So he suggests that the boy leave the place since he has won a lot of money. The protagonist is confused and asks if he was not allowed to win there. Then he decides to leave the place, stating that he was only there to have fun and does not understand the reason for the anger, leaving all the money behind. Before letting the boy go, the man asks his name and says that they might be friends in the future. He responds by lying about his name and says he is called Go Jin. As he leaves the place, people ask him what happened to the money, while the coins start to disintegrate on the table. Ju is furious, wondering how that child came to his place just to turn money into scrap. Quickly, he orders a check on the coins in the cashier, but there too, everything is turned to dust. Crying, the owner of the place calls the boy a thief. Far from there, many chests filled with the stolen coins are shown. Chu says that as a just person, seeing a gambling house go bankrupt is very satisfying. With that much money, he is able to evolve Erning's insect, thus completing his deal with the girl. Later, he and Chaxian return to the fortress of the Black Magician's village. They wonder if the Demon Clan's envoy is in the Full Moon Palace, and the protagonist says he is 80% sure. Jumping, the boy tells his friend that he will investigate and that, if anything happens, he will call for help. Inside the palace, he notices that there is a completely empty room and that no one is nearby. So he decides to call Brother Yun to come up as well. Suddenly, something begins to happen, and the protagonist wonders if it is a mental attack. The boy is quickly assaulted and questions whether it is someone from the Black Magician's village. He notices that there is someone nearby and thinks that he must stop the situation immediately. Then he activates a spectral glimpse and orders his weapon to do whatever it wants. Launching many swords toward his opponents, the adversaries become confused about what is happening. An elder enters the hall and says that he has already heard about the boy and knew that he used extreme powers, so he must be a genius. He says that he is just a 4th realm Black Magician. Thoughtfully, Chu believes that the man is being very polite given that the boy is only a 3rd realm cultivator. The elder says that since he dared to come to the boy, he thinks he is on the right path. Then he states that throughout his life, he has used his magic to kill low-level people, and that it would not be unfair to do the same to the young man. With that, the power of the Forbidden Land is activated. The swords launched by the boy fall to the ground. Laughing, the elder asks if he can no longer use his power. But the young man says that there is something interesting. The old man says that even if the young man is a talented cultivator, here he will be nothing more than a defenseless mortal. And that is why he chooses to deal with the protagonist instead of Chaxian, since Chu might be stronger, but he is fragile. Hearing all that, the boy questions whether he is really fragile. But the elder continues, saying that when he was young, he increased his abilities by fighting tigers and leopards. Even a martial artist would not be a match for them. Then, he orders his subordinates to kill the boy. However, he notices something strange in the young man's gaze. He reflects that the boy has lost his magical power, yet he does not show any sign of fear, and that the young man seems to be mocking him. Annoyed, he questions once again whether the protagonist intends to remain calm, and he decides on his own to attack the boy. But Chu manages to dodge the men coming toward him, leaving everyone confused about what just happened. Looking closely, the old man realizes that the boy has disappeared, but he is actually behind him, ready to counterattack. By the time the elder notices, it is already too late. He is attacked, and red liquid splatters all over the environment. Powerful, Chu stands still in front of the other subordinates, who show great fear over what just happened. Even so, they decide together to attack the boy. Without fear, the boy prepares to defend himself. He counterattacks and manages to get rid of the men who also wanted to kill him. Afterward, he thinks that Yun's cultivation strength is greater than his, so the young man could have gone to help him earlier. And he begins to wonder why the young man did not do so, and whether he had perhaps encountered an enemy or the divine envoy. The protagonist decides to check the situation before taking any action, and when he looks, he notices strange movements from his friend. Chaxian is using his weapons to fight against a tremendously powerful monster. He tries to hit the opponent, who turns out to be stronger and taller. Chu considers activating the form of 1,000 swords. It is revealed that Yun's opponent is the divine envoy. Noticing the protagonist's presence, the enemy realizes that the situation is bad and wonders if the black magicians were defeated so quickly. The adversary knows that the boy of 1,000 swords is terrifyingly strong and is unsure how long he will be able to keep defending himself. Even so, the masked envoy has not yet triggered the special effect of the sharp red sword. Observing the scene, he knows that the protagonist can obviously break his power, but does not understand why he hasn't done it yet, and he wonders if they are playing with him. With his attention focused on the sword-wielding young man, he forgets about Yun Chaoxian's presence as he approaches. The martial artist leaps and tells the monster to take his great halberd. Without fear, the envoy says he is ready to take the blow. Upon being struck, a great explosion occurs and a cloud of smoke fills the environment. Observing the scene, Chu realizes that the opponent is a disgrace and that now he will no longer be useful. He calls Yun to check the precious items that the adversary had previously stolen. The two begin to examine what the young man was carrying, and while Chaoxian removes the enemy's mask, Chu looks at the green leaf of life. Then, the martial artist approaches and thanks the protagonist again for his help. But Liang says that even if he hadn't shown up, his friend would have been able to handle the situation. While they talk, Yun thinks that the boy gave him the opportunity to kill the monster and did not want to steal his spotlight. He embraces the boy, says that he is wise, and that he is fully committed to their friendship. After that, they went to look at the envoy's corpse again and unexpectedly found the lotus flower they had been searching for. They explained that this was the greatest gain of the journey, and that it could be useful later. The involvement of the Shu Mountain sect and Big Dipper was revealed when Chu and Yun found the official government of the city and were greeted. After verifying what the divine envoy had done in the city, the government offered each of the young men a reward of 500 tulls of silver. Chaoxian says that the protagonist helped a lot and therefore he wanted to give his reward to the boy, but he does not accept it. Concerned about the future of their friendship, Yun says that the world is vast and that, after parting ways, they do not know when they will meet again. But he says that next year, the protagonist will be the representative of the Shu sect at the Immortal Sects Conference in the capital. The boy agrees and thinks that he really would like to meet Yun again. Then he reflects that the most outstanding young disciples of the Immortal Sects participate, and that the ranking also holds great significance for the sects. He wonders how he could face Sister Jiang in that situation. So the young man says that he will need to work hard to improve his skills and get closer to being the sect's representative. On an ordinary morning, Shu decides to return to Shu Mountain. They explain that the protagonist planned to buy koi with the prize he received and was eager to nurture himself and have good feng shui. The young man goes to a shop and says that he would like to buy the product, but does not see any outside. Desperate, the vendor apologizes and says that he is not selling koi at the moment since the product comes from the Jinhua River, which has been infested by bees, and that with those insects around, no one dares to go and retrieve the product. Liang introduces himself as one of the disciples of Shu Mountain and believes that the attacks were carried out by monsters, saying that he has the remedy. After leaving the vendor with the product, the boy says that he himself will go to the Jinhua River to see if he can catch the koi. At the location, he manages to use his powers to drive away the bees and clear the area. Beyond the forest, inside the mountain, there is a small cave, and while tracking the fleeing venomous bee, the young man finds its hive. It is explained that the entrance is very narrow, leaving no space for a person, while the venomous bee escapes through the crack. Observing a fissure, the protagonist thinks that it is very deep and that he cannot see the end, which could be a problem. Using his perception, he realizes that he cannot sense how large the space is and decides to set this matter aside for now. He then decides to refine venomous bees and tests the honey tea. Upon returning home, he notices many origami pieces on the table and wonders why they are there. Among them, there is a letter from Lady Jian and several from Lin Bai. The protagonist decides to respond to his sister and tell her about his recent experiences, as well as to thank her for her teachings. Shu knows that without the woman's help, that journey would not have gone smoothly, so he decides to ask when she could help him again. As for Brother Lin, he says that he is preparing for the middle stage and that the next time they meet, he will no longer be weak. Before he realizes it, he has already responded to several letters sent by the young man. Shu decides to go to his master to report the status of the mission. A girl appears reading a book and says that the work is cruel. She says that the relationship between the male and the female was ruined. Emotional, the young woman continues talking about the book and the stories she just read. Then Shu interrupts her and says that he is sorry for what just happened. Quickly, the woman regains her composure and asks about Lord Ming's disappearance, and he explains. After telling her everything, the young woman asks him to take care of himself and states that it is time to return the jade talisman. Upon hearing those words, the boy begins to sweat coldly. The master questions him again about whether he will not return it now that he has resolved his own matters. He asks if she had not said that the item would be a lifesaver for her disciple. In response, she says that she has been nervous these past few days, afraid that she would not be able to hurry when she received a call for help. And she concludes that she has been waking up at 5 a.m. every day, and that she will develop neurosis if this continues. Shu is confused by everything he is hearing. He says that he remembered to bring a drink for the woman he saw in the mountain, and that it tastes very good. She observes and questions what it is and whether the boy is trying to drunk her. Determined, the woman takes a large gulp of the drink. Her eyes shine, and she says that it is wonderful, and that she has never tasted anything as delicious as that liquid. The protagonist asks if she really liked it, and the young woman says that it is not bad. Then he says that he will buy more next time and leaves the place, saying that he needs to take care of some matters. With that, the master completely forgets to ask about the jade talisman. Shu goes to the second floor of the sword hall after dealing with the woman. A man says that if he wants to refine that item, he will have 2 sets of formation patterns for flight and defense, but it will cost 100 coins. The young man says that he hopes the refinement is successful, and the man responds that he has experience. He then promises the protagonist that he will refine and maximize the power, but the risks of doing so are high. Thinking, Shu reflects that he is the kind of person who, despite being young and having failed many times, still keeps receiving requests. And he thinks that the elder of the hall is being very optimistic about his disciple and therefore must believe that he has merit. Liang reflects that although the leaf is somewhat precious, it is not very important. He suggests 70 swords in exchange for allowing the boy to refine the item. With this proposal, he realizes that the young man has not received a request for some time and that he is eager for the chance to refine weapons. Determined, the man states that there is no need to worry and that he will do his best. Walking through the city, Chu realizes that the cost of refinement has nearly depleted his savings. He thinks that even though he is powerful, he cannot escape hunger, cold, and poverty, and that this is a difficult reality. Later, upon returning home, he notices a new letter on the table. When he reads it, he sees that Sister Jiang responded very quickly and has scheduled a meeting with him later. The pagoda peak is shown that morning. Xiao Bei's was busy somewhere at that moment. A handsome third realm boy was walking through the area. Jiang appears reading a story when she is interrupted by the young man, who says that he missed her. She puts the book aside and says that the boy truly wants to learn new skills. The protagonist asks if he is not supposed to follow in the footsteps of his elders. The girl agrees and states that she will teach him a difficult lesson, ordering him to be prepared. Both head toward Pagoda Peak and sit down. Jiang thinks that she has always believed herself to be the most gifted and better than the rest, so it is normal for the boy to be surprised. After spending a day in a mediocre comparison of cultivators, she concludes that self-confidence can be either significant or minor. And the reason Chu Liang can cultivate freely must be that he learned the form relatively late. As the first lesson, she decides to teach the talisman sword form. Jiang thinks it is a difficult teaching and that it will test the boy. Upon hearing this, the protagonist wonders if the woman really thinks highly of him, as that is a unique and highly advanced technique. It is explained that in the sect, it is a mandatory course for disciples of the Golden Core realm and requires mastery of the 5 elements realm. The young woman asks if the boy has confidence in learning it properly. He replies that with Jiang teaching him, he naturally has confidence. Sister Jiang says that it is a difficult skill to learn, but unlike immortal abilities, there is no need to understand the laws of Tao. And she adds that here, no one needs to have a high cultivation level, only perception. The girl begins to explain and give lessons on the principles and how to use the talisman sword form. She explains that as power becomes sufficient, a form can combine with other talismans and create 10 or even 1,000 swords like that. Curious, the girl asks if the young man can make talismans. Shu does not quite know how to respond and remains silent. Meanwhile, Jiang thinks that she only practiced that form when she entered the Golden Core realm. But she knows that even if the young man starts now, in 12 days it will clearly be impossible for him to learn to make talismans. Therefore, she feels that she has won this time. The young woman wonders why she cares about this situation, where the boy is clearly just a junior disciple. Shu thanks her for the great explanation and offers her a drink he bought in the mountains. Upon tasting it, the girl is enchanted by the flavor of the liquid, and her eyes shine. Observing her, the protagonist notices that she really liked the drink. Then he realizes that this is quite popular among women. Thinking about earning coins, he says that he can bring more of that drink if the girl does him a favor. At the Red Cotton Peak Market, a poster advertises the delicious beverage. A group approaches and is delighted to see that Jiang is there. Everyone is happy, saying that she looked, waved, and smiled at them. Then the girl approaches, asks what the drink is, and requests to taste a little. Shu agrees and serves her. She tastes it and says that it is not bad. Quickly, she orders 2 jars of that incredible liquid. The two say their goodbyes, and the protagonist asks his friend to take care of herself. After the woman's purchase, all the people in the city approach asking for that drink. In total, 20 jars of ginger honey were sold quickly. The protagonist apologizes to those still in line and says that the stock is sold out but asks them to return the next day. He believes that he will not be able to return since the bees he captured last time are the only ones he has. But even so, he managed to earn coins. Once again, he goes to the shop that sells koi. He greets the vendor, shopkeeper Chen. Shu is shocked to see that the man has not yet recovered and thinks that the medicine should have already taken effect. But the man says that 2 days ago, his wife went to get a doctor for him, discovered what had happened and gave him a beating. The man admits that he was wrong, that he is middle-aged, and that he faces many difficulties in life. He says he is sorry but believes that it may still be a side effect of the medication. Still talking, the vendor says that he even tried to go get koi. But when he went to the river, the bees had returned. But Chu says that it is fine, that he was also concerned about it, and then he went to investigate the appearance of the insects. Curious, the man asks what the young man will do if they return. And the protagonist simply states that he will have to deal with them every day. Grateful, the vendor says that it is an honor for the city to have a hero like the boy. Later at the Jinhua River, Chu is there, throwing some potions toward the bees. He notices that the fierce and venomous insects are not as ugly as before and even seem cute, and he compares them to flying coins. As Liang jumps and celebrates, a fish watches him and quickly goes to inform its elder at the bottom of the river. She warns that the cultivator is back in the area and is killing all the venomous bees that she worked so hard to place in the river. Frightened, the fish asks if he is really there again and does not understand why the boy keeps coming back. Crying, the little fish asks what they should do now and whether they will have to relocate if there is no solution. The elder tells her not to panic and says that a cultivator must be busy and will not return every day just to kill bees. She also states that she will protect the Koa clan with her magical power. Still desperate, the little fish asks what will happen if he does return every day. But the elder remains calm, saying that humans simply want to train and gather resources, and with patience, they will defend the river. Feeling more at ease, the little fish says that her master is right. In his room, Chu takes a sip of the drink and says that he really wants to go kill bees every day. After drinking the delicious liquid, he decides to go study. Focused, the protagonist thinks about the essence of the talisman sword and how it combines with the others. The young man goes over all the teachings that Jang gave him but knows that he needs to sit down and learn in his own way. Chu knows that he has only 1 month to learn how to make talismans, so he decides to start reading books. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.